Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy back again with more crazy Reddit stories, and trust me, today's lineup is wild. We're diving into 7 insane stories I found, and each one's got that perfect mix of chaos, drama, and no way that actually happened energy. First up, he tried to gaslight me into quitting, and I turned the tables. Yeah, that's some workplace drama straight out of a movie. Then we've got going viral ruined my life, which sounds like a social media nightmare, and my girlfriend's best friend threw me down the stairs and tried to burn my house down. Like, bro, what even? But the one we're kicking things off with is I got bullied in high school, but my college project made me famous. Sounds super motivational, total underdog vibes. And hey, if you want to skip around, timestamps are below and in the description so you can jump to any story you want. Alright, grab your snacks, get comfy, and let's roll with the story one. I got bullied in high school, but my college project made me famous. If you've ever been the quiet kid everyone pretended didn't exist, this story's for you. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's the sound of someone watching, learning, and waiting. My name's Emily Hart, and for most of high school, I was the ghost that haunted the back rows. Not the cool kind of ghost people whispered about, just the one nobody noticed unless they wanted to laugh at something. I wasn't emo or dramatic or rebellious. I was just quiet. The kind of quiet that made people uncomfortable. The kind of quiet they mistook for easy prey. Every morning, I'd walk through the glass doors of Ridgeview High, clutching my sketchbook like a shield. Everyone had their groups, the cheerleaders with their perfume clouds, the jocks tossing footballs down the hallway, the band kids rehearsing in stairwells. And then there was me, slipping between them like static no one tuned into. I remember the first time Ava noticed me. She was everything I wasn't: blonde, confident, and glowing with the kind of self-assurance that made teachers overlook her cruelty. Her Instagram bio literally said, "Future Media Queen." She was surrounded by her usual orbit of friends, laughing about something on her phone when she turned and said, "Oh my god, is that a sketchbook?" Like I was holding a dead rat. That was the day I stopped sketching in class. Ava wasn't just popular, she was the sun, and everyone else revolved around her, including Dylan, her boyfriend, the golden boy quarterback with a smile that could make teachers melt and bullies feel justified. And I, unfortunately, became their favorite side activity. It started small whispers, snickers, little jabs about my thrift store jeans, or my habit of doodling in the margins. Then came the nicknames: Art Girl, Charcoal Chick, Ghost. Dylan once called me the Glitch because I wore a pixel art hoodie I designed myself. It stuck. For 2 years, I was Glitch Girl to half the school. You'd think teachers would step in, but when the bullies are the ones running student council, captaining sports teams, and charming parents at open houses, you become invisible for real. Even my art teacher, the one person I thought might understand, once told me, "Emily, maybe if you smiled more, people wouldn't misunderstand you." Yeah, because apparently my face was the problem, but I didn't fight back. Not because I couldn't, but because I knew they wanted a reaction, and I refused to give them that satisfaction. So I buried myself in the only place I ever felt seen: my garage. It was my sanctuary. The air always smelled like solder and coffee, and the walls were covered with sketches, code snippets, and broken screens. My dad worked at an electronics store, so I'd scavenge old parts and turn them into projects. That's how Vision Frame was born. Not that I called it that yet, just a messy prototype built out of junk tablets and projector lenses. The goal was simple but crazy: to take my hand-drawn sketches and project them into interactive 3D visuals using light mapping and motion sensors. Basically, turning imagination into reality. Nobody knew about it. Not my parents, they were too busy arguing about bills. Not teachers. Definitely not Ava or Dylan. It was my world, my rebellion, my proof that silence didn't mean nothingness, it meant creation. But even the quiet ones get tired of being stepped on. Senior year, everything boiled over. Ridgeview High hosted something called the Senior Showcase, where students could display their talents: music, art, tech, whatever. It was like our version of a talent show, except colleges were watching. I'd been planning for it since junior year. I wanted to show something that would make people remember me, not as Glitch Girl, as Emily Hart, the girl who made light move. For months, I worked late into the night refining my projection software. I had to teach myself new coding languages, rebuild sensors, and beg the robotics club for spare batteries. Half the time, the machine glitched out like a possessed toaster, but when it worked God, it was magic. My sketches lifted off the page like ghosts caught in a beam of light. I'd draw a flower, and petals would bloom in midair. I'd sketch a bird, and it would flutter across the wall. For the first time in my life, I believed I could show something beautiful enough to shut them up. The week before the showcase, the rumor started. Someone had found out I was presenting an art tech project. I knew who Ava. She loved sniffing out threats to her spotlight. She was presenting a social media awareness campaign, which was basically an excuse to show off her curated selfies on a PowerPoint. But still, she wanted all eyes on her. "Hey, Glitch Girl," she said one morning, leaning on my locker with that perfect fake smile. "Heard you're doing some techie thing at the showcase. That's cute." Dylan laughed beside her. Yeah, maybe your little cartoons can fix the Wi-Fi. I didn't respond. Just closed my locker and walked away. But my silence only made her smirk wider. That's the thing about people like Ava, they mistake calm for fear. Showcase day arrived. The auditorium buzzed with energy, cameras flashing, parents cheering. My slot was second to last, right after Ava and before the closing band act. I sat backstage, palms sweating, staring at my project setup. A compact projector rig, a custom laptop, and my sketchpad linked via sensor pad. Everything was ready. At least I thought it was. When Ava went on, the crowd went wild. She had slides full of perfect photos, a speech about self-image and empowerment, and a fake tear halfway through. People clapped like she was the next Oprah. I almost rolled my eyes. Then it was my turn. Lights dimmed. My name was called. Next up, Emily Hart with an interactive art projection demonstration. I stepped on stage, heart hammering. My setup glowed softly as I spoke into the mic. I've always believed art isn't just something you see, it's something you feel. So I built something that could bring that feeling to life. I drew a quick sketch on my pad, a butterfly, and like a dream, a glowing 3D butterfly appeared above it, wings shimmering with motion. The crowd gasped. For the first time in my life, people weren't laughing, they were mesmerized. I felt tears sting my eyes. I'd done it, until the screen glitched, then flickered, then went black. Confusion rippled through the crowd. I pressed buttons, rechecked cables. My laptop froze. The system completely crashed. My sketches disappeared. I tried rebooting, but instead of restarting, a loud pop came from the rig. Smoke rose from the sensor pad. Gasps, laughter, whispers, and then a voice. "Oh no!" Ava called from the front row, hand over her mouth. "Did the poor glitch girl's machine just break?" The crowd chuckled. Dylan howled with laughter. The teachers tried to hush them, but it was too late. The spell was broken. I felt my chest tighten, heat crawling up my neck. I wanted to scream that I didn't know what happened, that it worked perfectly yesterday. But when I looked down, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A USB stick jammed into my laptop side. I hadn't put it there. I yanked it out, and on its label were 2 letters, AV, Ava Vaughn. My hands trembled. I knew it, then she'd sabotage me. Maybe she got to my laptop before the show. Maybe during setup. Maybe she had Dylan distract the stage crew. But it didn't matter. My dream was burning on stage, and nobody cared. The laughter got louder. Someone shouted, "Guess she glitched again." The crowd erupted. I stood frozen, staring into a sea of faces that would forget me by tomorrow. But not me. I would never forget them. I walked off stage without finishing, ignoring the pity looks from teachers. I could hear Ava laughing behind me, whispering to Dylan, "Told you she'd choke." He replied, "Guess she should have stayed invisible." That night, I sat in my garage surrounded by silence. My laptop was fried, the code corrupted, the sensors melted. My entire project was gone. Months of work erased in seconds. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, staring at the dead machine until the tears finally came angry, bitter, unstoppable. Not because they ruined my project, but because they ruined my moment. The one chance I had to show I mattered. And yet, somewhere between the sobs, a thought cut through. They wanted to make sure I was invisible. I looked at the charred remains of my device and whispered to myself, then I'll make sure one day they'll never look away again. That night, I started over. I pulled out a fresh notebook, drew a line across the first page, and wrote 3 words at the top. Version 2 begins. While the world slept, I was reborn. I didn't know it then, but that broken showcase would be the spark that set everything in motion. Ava and Dylan thought they'd buried me. They didn't realize they just built the stage for my revenge and my rise. Because the invisible girl they laughed at wasn't gone. She was learning how to burn brighter than all of them. After the senior showcase disaster, I stopped talking to everyone. Graduation came and went like a blur. I didn't attend the ceremony. My name got called over a microphone, and I wasn't even in the gym to hear it. I was in my garage, surrounded by fried circuits and notes scribbled in ink and anger. I had one plan: leave Ridgeview. Leave the whispers, the laughter, the memory of Ava's smirk. Start somewhere where Glitch Girl didn't exist. That place was Caltech. The day I got my acceptance letter, I cried harder than I did on that stage. It wasn't just about getting into one of the hardest tech schools in the country, it was about proof. Proof that all those nights of coding and sketching under a flickering bulb meant something. Proof that the girl everyone ignored was finally going somewhere they couldn't reach. At least that's what I thought. Caltech wasn't what I expected. Everyone there was brilliant. The kind of people who could build robots in their sleep or solve algorithms on coffee-stained napkins. For the first few weeks, I felt like an imposter sitting among gods. But I didn't care about fitting in anymore. I came with one mission: rebuild. Vision frame. The project had haunted me since that night. Every glitch, every spark, every cruel laugh, it burned in the back of my mind like unfinished business. I started from zero. I saved up from a campus job at the computer lab, used recycled components, and recoded everything from scratch. This time, I didn't just want it to work. I wanted it to breathe. My dorm room looked like a mad scientist bunker wires hanging from the ceiling, sketches taped to every wall, coffee cups balancing on textbooks. My roommate, a fashion major named Sierra, thought I was insane. "Girl, you've been up for 3 days," she'd say, tossing me protein bars like I was some lab animal. "Whatever you're building, better make you rich." "I don't care about rich," I'd reply, soldering a circuit board under the desk lamp. "I just want it to work." The new vision frame wasn't just projection tech anymore. It used motion sensors, neural mapping, and environmental lighting to let people interact with their art. Imagine sketching a tree and seeing its leaves sway when you moved your hand, or painting water and watching ripples follow your fingers. It was immersive, emotional, alive. But even with progress, I couldn't escape the voice that told me I'd fail again. Every time the screen flickered, I'd see Ava's smirk. Every time code crashed, I'd hear Dylan's laughter. That trauma doesn't leave easily. It turns into fuel or poison. I had to choose which one to drink. By the end of freshman year, I had a working demo, rough, unstable, but mesmerizing. One night, I projected a glowing phoenix from my sketchpad. It spread its wings and burst into golden light across my dorm wall. Sierra gasped from her bed. "Emily, that's unreal." "Yeah," I said softly. "It's real enough to burn." Sophomore year changed everything. The university announced its annual Tech Innovation Challenge, a 3-month competition where teams developed products that could redefine modern creativity. Winners would get funding, mentorship, and a shot at a startup launch. I knew I had to enter. It was the perfect stage to bring Vision Frame back to life and maybe to finally bury my high school ghost. The only problem? The rules required teamwork. And I wasn't exactly team material. When the registration opened, I sat at my laptop for an hour staring at the partner field. I didn't know anyone who'd want to work with me. I was the quiet girl who kept to herself, ate alone, and answered lab questions with 2-word replies. But then an unexpected message popped up on my campus portal. From Ethan Wells. Subject: Innovation Challenge Partner. Heard you're entering. I saw your vision frame prototype at the student showcase last month. It's insane. I'm an engineering major. I can help stabilize your hardware if you're interested. Ethan Wells. I knew the name. He was one of those people everyone liked without trying. Tall, laid back, sharp-witted. Not a typical coder. More like the guy who built skateboards out of drones for fun. I hesitated before replying. My instinct screamed, don't trust anyone. But then I remembered if I wanted Vision Frame to rise, I couldn't do it alone. So I said yes. Working with Ethan was different. He didn't talk down to me. He didn't interrupt. He didn't act like my ideas were weird. He just listened. The first time I showed him my project, his jaw actually dropped. "You made this?" "Yeah." "Alone?" "Yeah." He laughed, running a hand through his hair. "Holy sh... *T, Emily. This is like Iron Man meets Van Gogh. I thought you were exaggerating." For the first time in years, I laughed too. We became an odd duo, the perfectionist and the improviser. I was meticulous, coding line by line, documenting every glitch. Ethan was chaotic genius, fixing one problem while accidentally creating 2 new ones. But together, we built something extraordinary. We upgraded the sensors, improved light rendering, and integrated gesture tracking. Slowly, Vision Frame evolved from a personal dream into something real, something powerful. But behind all that progress, a shadow started creeping back. One afternoon, during a meeting with the competition board, I saw 2 familiar names on the participant list: Ava Vaughn and Dylan Parker. My blood ran cold. They were here, at my university. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Then I saw their team name, Framefluence. Their pitch, a revolutionary visual engagement platform that merges art and digital storytelling. My stomach turned. It was Vision Frame, dumbed down, commercialized, and dressed in influencer glitter. Ava was majoring in media and marketing. Dylan was studying business and communications. Together, they were building an image, not an invention. But the world didn't care about truth. The world cared about popularity, and they had that in spades. Ethan noticed my reaction. "You know them?" I took a deep breath. "Yeah, they're the reason I built this in the first place." He didn't ask for details. He just nodded and said, "Then let's make sure you win." The next few weeks felt like a fever dream. Everywhere I went, I saw them in the labs, at the campus cafe, flashing their smiles for their vlog cameras. Ava's voice echoed through the halls, all honey and poison. "Oh, hey, fancy seeing you here. Still doing your little art thing?" I'd force a smile. "Still doing my big tech thing." "Yeah," Dylan smirked. "Don't take it personally when we win. You know how this works. Some of us have the it factor." "You're right," I said quietly. "And some of us have the work ethic." They laughed it off, but that line stuck with them. I saw it in Ava's twitching grin. Meanwhile, Ethan and I were pulling all-nighters. He'd bring energy drinks. I'd bring ramen. We coded until sunrise. Testing, failing, fixing, breaking, laughing. Somewhere in that chaos, I started to trust again. One night, we were sitting on the lab floor, surrounded by cables, when Ethan said, "You know what your problem is, Hart?" I looked up. "Do I even want to know?" "You build walls higher than your projects." I snorted. "Maybe because people keep trying to break what's inside." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, but I'm not them." Something in his tone made me look away because part of me wanted to believe him. The Innovation Challenge semifinals arrived like a storm. Our presentation was simple but stunning. I drew a sketch on the pad, a city skyline, and as I moved my hand, the buildings came alive. Lights flickering, cars moving, clouds shifting. The judges were silent, awestruck. Then one of them whispered, "It's beautiful." We made it to the finals. So did Ava and Dylan. They presented a flashy, influencer-driven demo, lots of buzzwords, expensive branding, and videos of them talking about the art of connection. It was smoke and mirrors, but it worked. The crowd ate it up. Still, something shifted after our presentation. People started whispering about our project, not theirs. Clips of Vision Frame began circulating on campus. Someone uploaded a short video of me drawing a bird that flew across the wall. It hit 200K views in 2 days. I didn't even know who filmed it. The caption just said, "When art meets light, this girl just built magic." Suddenly, people I'd never spoken to were stopping me in hallways. Professors were emailing me. A startup blog asked for an interview. Ava noticed too. Her fake smiles turned sharp. Her Instagram stories started throwing shade. Some people steal attention. Others earn it the hard way. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because every night our lab was glowing literally. Vision Frame had become something alive. Ethan and I had coded a new AI feature that adapted visuals to sound and mood. When music played, colors shifted, patterns moved like they were breathing. It was hypnotic. It was art. It was mine. The night before the finals, Ethan and I stood in the empty lab, staring at the projection of a phoenix, the same one I'd drawn years ago in that broken garage. It flared in gold and crimson, wings stretching across the ceiling. He looked at me and said, "You realize this is it, right? You're not the invisible girl anymore." I smiled. "I never was. They just weren't looking." He grinned. "So what's next?" I turned toward the glowing bird, watching it flicker in the light. "Next, I make sure they never forget my name." The finals were packed students, professors, even local tech investors. Cameras everywhere. Ava strutted onto the stage like she was hosting a fashion show. Dylan hyped the crowd, tossing in buzzwords like revolutionary and global synergy. Then it was our turn. When I stepped on stage, my hands didn't shake this time. I wasn't that terrified girl anymore. I looked at the crowd, saw Ava's forced smile in the front row, and felt something shift in me power. I drew a single line on my pad and the room filled with light. Shapes unfolded, danced, became stories. I didn't just present technology, I told a story with it. A story about silence, fire, and rebirth. When it ended, there was no applause for a moment, just stunned quiet. Then, thunder. I didn't need to look at Ava to know she was burning inside. After the event, students flooded our table. "How did you build that? Can we try it? That was insane." Ethan leaned toward me and whispered, "Looks like you're famous now." I laughed, almost in disbelief. "Not yet, but soon." Because I could feel it, the shift, the spark, the beginning of something unstoppable. They had followers. I had fire. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone extinguish it. You ever notice how the same people who laughed at you suddenly start whispering your name when success shows up? Yeah, that was my life sophomore year. When my project Vision Frame got selected for the National Innovation Expo, everything flipped. 1 month before, I was still that quiet girl sitting at the corner table in the student lounge, messy bun, oversized hoodie, and my laptop glowing like a lifeline. Now, professors were quoting my work in lectures, tech blogs were asking for interviews, and the same classmates who used to forget my name suddenly wanted to collaborate. It was intoxicating and terrifying at the same time, because deep down, I knew what happens when people start noticing you. They don't just watch, they plot. And when your past happens to include a pair like Ava and Dylan, plotting was their Olympic sport. It started small, subtle. A girl from another department messaged me. "Hey, random question, did you actually code Vision Frame yourself or get help from some AI tools?" At first, I laughed it off. Of course I wrote the code. Ethan and I spent hundreds of hours building and debugging every inch of it. But then another message came. Then a rumor in the cafeteria. Then someone posted on the student forum. "Crazy how Emily Hart's project looks a lot like that new AR prototype Ava and Dylan are working on." That's when it clicked. They were doing it again. Same manipulation, same whisper campaign, different stage. Ethan noticed it before I did. He walked into our lab one night, holding 2 coffees and a look that said, "You're not gonna like this. Em, you might want to see this." He placed his laptop next to mine and played a short clip Ava and Dylan's presentation trailer for their new innovation that had just been uploaded to the university's YouTube channel. My stomach dropped. They called it VisiStream. The interface looked identical to mine, same 3D sketch converter, same motion tracking UI, same goddamn color palette. Even the demo animation was eerily similar. I could feel the heat rise to my face. My hands went cold. They stole it," I whispered. Ethan nodded grimly. "Looks like it. Probably from your backup folder on the shared campus network. I told you that drive wasn't secure." I felt dizzy. My mind flashed back to high school, to Ava spilling paint on my art project, to Dylan mocking me in front of the whole auditorium. And I realized something bone deep. They weren't just bullies anymore. They were thieves in designer sneakers. For 2 days, I didn't eat properly, barely slept. I just sat in the dark, watching that clip over and over, trying to figure out how far they'd gone. Then I found out. They'd submitted VisiStream for the same national expo. I had same category, same prize, same everything. I almost laughed at the audacity. It was like watching your worst nightmare wear your skin. Ethan tried to calm me down, but he knew it was pointless. I wasn't angry in the screaming, throwing things kind of way. I was quiet, focused, the kind of quiet that made people nervous. "Ethan," I said one night, my voice steady, "we're not reporting them yet." He frowned. "Why the hell not? We have proof they stole your files." "Because the expo finals are live streamed." He blinked. Then slowly a grin spread across his face. "You're planning something, aren't you?" I turned my laptop toward him, code scrolling across the screen. "They want my spotlight?" I said. "Let's make it blinding." The next 2 weeks were a blur of caffeine, sleepless nights, and cold determination. I went through every line of code, added encrypted signatures, embedded invisible timestamps, and created a new visual sequence that no one had seen before. Every element from the data logs to the source files was backed up across 3 drives, one hidden in Ethan's locker. Then I prepared my ace, a dynamic reveal that could only activate in real time during my live demo. If they tried to copy me again, it would expose them instantly. The night before the expo, I couldn't sleep. Not because of nerves, but because of clarity. High school, Emily would have cried herself to sleep, maybe written a sad post online about being wrong. College, Emily was different. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I was hunting justice. And the universe, for once, was giving me the perfect stage. The Innovation Expo was massive, held in a convention center packed with cameras, investors, and over 500 competitors. Ethan and I arrived early, setting up our booth with our logo vision frame, where imagination becomes reality. And guess who set up right across from us? Ava in her perfect white blazer and polished smile, Dylan in a designer hoodie pretending to be casually genius. When our eyes met, she smirked. Emily, wow, what are the odds we'd both make it here? Her voice dripped fake sweetness. I just smiled back. Yeah, crazy how that works. They went first. Their presentation started with inspirational music, fancy graphics, and Ava's well-rehearsed PR voice. VisitStream isn't just technology. It's creativity in motion, designed to bridge imagination and innovation. I stood at the back, arms crossed, watching every second. When they ran their demo, the audience gasped. It worked perfectly, my original code in action, just rebranded with their logo. For a moment, it hurt. Like watching someone else raise your child and call it theirs. But then, I saw the flaw. They hadn't realized that the source code had an invisible tag. My tag. They wrapped up their presentation, soaking in applause. Dylan bowed dramatically. Ava waved at the cameras. And that's when I stepped forward. Excuse me, I said into the mic, walking onto the stage. Sorry to interrupt, but I believe that's my project you're showing. The crowd went dead silent. Ava froze. Dylan blinked, confused. Then Ava laughed nervously. What are you talking about? I walked to the display screen, plugged in my drive, and opened my version of the software. Within seconds, the interface came alive, sleeker, faster, and brighter than theirs. See this? I said, pointing to a hidden menu. This is the encrypted signature I added 6 months ago. Every genuine vision frame build has this line of code. I hit run. The screen shifted, displaying my name, creation date, and version number. Then I pulled up their demo file, extracted it, ran a comparison, and projected it on the big screen. Perfect match. Gasps filled the room. Dylan tried to blurt out, "That's fake. You must have edited." I cut him off with a calm smile. "Funny, because your version still has my debug notes inside the code. You might want to learn to delete comment lines next time." A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Ava's face turned pale. I stepped closer, lowering my voice, but everyone could still hear through the mic. "In high school, you destroyed my art project for fun," I said. "Now you try to destroy my career. But see, this time, I came prepared." Then I clicked Run Demo. The lights dimmed, and my full vision frame sequence began, sketches turning into live 3D holograms across the stage, each one morphing into moments from my journey. The bullied girl sketching alone in the corner, the spilled paint, the tears, then fire, transformation. When the animation in there ended, the audience stood up and clapped. Loudly. Reporters swarmed the stage, judges conferred in whispers, and Ava and Dylan, they slinked off like shadows at sunrise. Later that night, when the results were announced, Vision Frame won first place. But it wasn't the trophy that mattered. It was the look on their faces when they realized the girl they used to call invisible had become untouchable. After the ceremony, Ethan found me standing by the exit, watching the city lights through the glass. "You did it," he said softly. I smiled. "No, we did it." He hesitated, then added, "What's next for you?" I looked down at my reflection, confident, calm, no longer afraid. "Whatever comes," I said, "I won't hide anymore." You know, people love redemption arcs, but they rarely talk about what comes after. When the applause fades, when your enemies vanish, when you're left staring at the world you finally earned. That's when you realize revenge was never the goal. It was the beginning. Because in high school, they made me invisible. In college, they tried to erase me. But now, the world couldn't stop looking. The night after the Innovation Expo felt like the quiet after an earthquake. Not peaceful, just heavy. Still, the kind of silence that hums before the world realizes it's changed. Because when I woke up the next morning, my phone looked like it had caught fire. Hundreds of notifications, emails, mentions, a dozen unread messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, I thought my alarm glitched. Then I opened Twitter. The top trending hashtag in the US wasn't about politics or celebrity gossip. It was #VisionFrame. And right below it, #EmilyHart. Someone had uploaded the entire expo incident. My confrontation with Ava and Dylan. The live proof, the crowd's reaction, everything. It had millions of views overnight. Headlines flooded in. Student outsmarts bullies in live tech showdown. From invisible to invincible, the girl who exposed the fakes. College innovator destroys competitors who stole her project with style. It was surreal. Me, the quiet kid who once hid behind sketchbooks, suddenly everywhere. For a while, I didn't even know what to feel. There was pride, sure. Vindication maybe, but mostly disbelief. Because I hadn't planned to go viral. I didn't stage it for attention or drama. I just wanted my truth to be seen for once in my life. And now, the entire world had seen it. The first few days were chaos. Journalists emailed nonstop. Tech companies wanted interviews. One PR agency even offered to rebrand my story for sponsorship deals. But I said no. I didn't want to be a headline girl or another sob story turned brand. I wanted people to know why I built Vision Frame, not just how I'd won. So when a conference organizer from California called and said, "We'd love you to give a TED Talk about integrity and innovation," I almost dropped my coffee. Me? A TED Talk? I'd spent half my life terrified of public speaking, and now they wanted me to talk to the world? But then I remembered that moment on stage facing Ava and Dylan, the way my voice didn't shake, the way silence had finally listened. So I said yes. 2 weeks later, I was on a flight to San Francisco. Ethan sat next to me, grinning like a proud coach. He'd been with me through every late night, every bug fix, every breakdown. "You ready?" he asked. "No," I said, smiling nervously. "But I think that's the point." The TED stage was blindingly bright. My hands were shaking when I stepped out. The audience blurred into a sea of faces, strangers waiting to hear what the girl from the viral video had to say. But when I started speaking, it felt natural. I talked about creativity, about integrity, about what it feels like to be underestimated, to be the quiet one who never fights back until she has no other choice. And then I said the line that would follow me for the rest of my life. They told me I was too quiet to make an impact, so I built something that spoke louder than they ever could. The crowd rose to their feet. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing that for once, people weren't clapping at me. They were clapping for me. After that, life became a blur of invitations and opportunities. Microsoft reached out for a collaboration. A design firm wanted to license Vision Frame for interactive exhibitions. A venture capitalist offered funding to turn it into a startup. I remember laughing when I saw the email subject line. Vision Frame could revolutionize creative education, because that's all I'd ever wanted for art kids like me to have tools powerful enough to make the world take them seriously. So Ethan and I started small. A 2-person startup in a rented studio apartment near Pasadena. No fancy offices, no press releases, just 2 laptops, instant noodles, and a dream that refused to die. We refined Vision Frame, turning it into an accessible software-hardware hybrid for artists, animators, and educators. Soon, small schools started buying licenses. Then, art collectives, then museums. Every time a student sent me a message saying, "Your project helped me bring my imagination to life," it hit deeper than any trophy ever could. Meanwhile, Ava and Dylan disappeared from campus life almost overnight. Word spread fast after the Expo scandal. The university opened an ethics investigation. Their internship offers were revoked. Sponsors dropped them. Eventually, they withdrew from school for personal reasons. No one missed them. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice, settling itself quietly. Months passed. Vision Frame grew. We hired a team, got featured on Forbes' 30 Under 30. But fame never felt like fireworks. It felt like quiet sunrise after years of rain. Soft, earned. And somewhere between product demos and interviews, I found something I didn't expect: peace. One night, I sat on my balcony, scrolling through old photos. High school art fairs, my thrift store outfits, that one picture of me sitting alone on the bleachers. And I started typing. Not a tweet, not a PR post, just a story. I titled it, "I Got Bullied in High School, but My College Project Made Me Famous." I poured everything out: the pain, the fear, the moments that nearly broke me. But I didn't write it for pity. I wrote it for every kid who felt invisible. For the ones who get laughed at for dreaming differently. And at the end, I wrote, "To the quiet ones, still getting mocked in hallways, you don't need to change who you are. You just need to build something louder than their hate." Then I hit post. I didn't expect it to go viral. Again. But within 24 hours, the story was all over Reddit. Thousands of comments, messages from strangers saying it gave them hope. One user wrote, "My little sister is being bullied right now. I showed her your story. She wants to build her own app now." That one broke me in the best way, because that's when I realized something. All those years of being mocked, ignored, underestimated, they weren't wasted. They were fuel. A year later, my old high school invited me back for a guest lecture. When I walked through those familiar hallways, it felt like walking through a memory, only lighter. The same lockers, the same posters, but the whispers were different this time. Students pointed and smiled. Teachers hugged me. And there, hanging in the main hall, was a banner that said, "Welcome back, Emily Hart, Vision Frame founder." The same auditorium where Ava once humiliated me was now packed with students cheering my name. As I stood on that stage, I caught sight of the exact corner where I'd once cried, clutching my ruined sketchbook. It didn't hurt anymore. It felt poetic. I gave my talk about creativity, courage, and the long road between being mocked and being celebrated. And I ended it with a line I hadn't planned but came straight from the heart. They once said I'd never be remembered. Now, they spell my name right on every banner. The room erupted in applause. But I wasn't crying for the applause. I was crying for the girl I used to be, the one who thought silence meant defeat. When the event ended, a shy freshman came up to me. She was holding a sketchbook, hands trembling. "Miss Hart," she said softly, "I get bullied for drawing all the time, but your story makes me want to keep going." I smiled, kneeling to her height. "Then keep going," I told her, "because one day they'll watch you the same way they watched me and they'll wish they hadn't laughed." She nodded, eyes shining. And in that moment, I realized the full circle was complete. These days, people still ask me, "Emily, don't you ever miss your old life before all the fame?" And I always say the same thing. I don't miss being invisible, but I do miss the version of me who dreamed quietly, who kept going when no one believed. She built everything I have now. So no, I'll never forget her, because she's the reason the world listens today. And if anyone reading this feels like they're stuck in that same quiet corner I once was, just remember this. They can ignore your words. They can mock your silence, but they can't stop what you're building in it. The girl who wouldn't stay silent. That's what some magazine called me once. But really, I was never silent. I was just getting ready to speak loud enough for the world to hear. Story 2. My girlfriend's best friend threw me down the stairs and tried to burn my house down. Now he's in prison. I never thought I'd be that guy. The one whose girlfriend's best friend was the beginning of his worst nightmare. You know those posts you see on Reddit titled, "My girlfriend's best friend hates me for no reason," or "The guy she told me not to worry about"? Yeah, that was me. Except mine didn't just hate me. He ruined my life before I even realized what was happening. But let's start at the beginning. When I first met Maya, I was 24, working as a freelance graphic designer in Portland. I met her at a coffee shop where she worked part-time while studying to be a nurse. She was this mix of calm and energy, soft-spoken but sharp, funny without trying too hard. She had that kind of smile that made you forget where you were. She spilled my latte on my sketchbook that day and offered me a free drink as an apology. I didn't even mind. I asked for her number before leaving. That one accidental spill turned into 2 years of a relationship that, at least for a while, felt perfect. She moved into my apartment about a year in. We weren't rich, but we had a rhythm. Late night food runs, lazy Sundays, watching trash TV. She'd hum while folding laundry and I'd pretend to be annoyed, but honestly, I loved it. The first time she mentioned Robbie, I didn't think much of it. "He's like my brother," she said casually one evening, scrolling through her phone. "We've been friends since college. He helped me through a lot." I nodded. "Cool. Everyone's got that one friend who's basically family." But the first time I met him, something just felt off. It was at Maya's birthday dinner. She'd invited a small group of friends to a restaurant downtown. Robbie showed up late, loud, confident, wearing this smug grin like the world was his. He hugged Maya like he hadn't seen her in years, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I stuck out my hand when she introduced us. "Hey man, Caleb." "Robbie," he said, giving me that too firm handshake. You know, the kind meant to prove something. "So you're the guy keeping my girl busy these days, huh?" He said it jokingly, but it didn't sit right. Maya laughed it off, but my stomach twisted. Over dinner, he kept slipping in comments. "Oh, Maya never eats onions, but she'll eat them for you. I can't believe she watches horror movies now. You changed her, man." Everyone thought he was being funny. I saw something else. Possessiveness disguised as humor. When the check came, Robbie snatched it before I could even reach for my wallet. "Nah, don't worry about it, bro. I got this. Maya deserves the best, and you're her +1 tonight." That last part stung. +1. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he was just being protective. A few weeks later, he started popping up everywhere. If Maya and I made plans for the weekend, Robbie would somehow already know. "Oh, you guys are going to the coast? Mind if I tag along?" He'd show up with his camera, taking pictures of Maya for his photography page, which, surprise, only ever featured her. He texted her late at night. At first, she'd laugh and show me, "Robbie, can't sleep. Just watch that dumb show you love." But after a while, she stopped showing me. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and saw her phone light up. A text from Robbie. "You awake?" She didn't respond, just turned her phone over. When I asked about it in the morning, she said, "He's going through a breakup. He just needs a friend." I wanted to trust her. I did trust her. But the more time passed, the more it felt like I was competing for space in her life. One afternoon, I got home early from a client meeting. I walked in quietly, thinking Maya was still at work, but I heard laughter from the living room. She was there, with Robbie. He was sitting on the couch, feet up on my coffee table, holding her phone. Maya was beside him, leaning in close, laughing at something he showed her. When she noticed me, she smiled. "Hey babe, you're home early." Robbie smirked. "We were just watching videos. You've got a nice place, man." "My place." I nodded stiffly. "Yeah, I know." He didn't even bother getting up, just sat there like he owned the room. I went to the kitchen to grab water, trying to calm down. When I came back, he was hugging her goodbye. Arms wrapped a little too long, hand on her back. I stood there, silent. He didn't even glance my way when he said, "Later, bro." That night, I brought it up. "Babe, does he have to come over when I'm not home?" She frowned. "What? He's my best friend. You trust me, right?" "I do. It's him I don't trust." Her expression hardened. "Robbie has never done anything inappropriate. He's just protective. You're reading too much into it." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was insecure. Still, something in my gut wouldn't let it go. A few days later, I went out for groceries. I was scrolling through my phone while waiting in line when I saw a post on Robbie's Instagram. A photo of Maya sitting on a park bench smiling at the camera. Caption, "You're the only person who gets me. Always." I stared at it for a full minute before my brain caught up with my anger. When I showed Maya later, she brushed it off. "He posts emotional stuff about everyone. That's just his personality." Right, everyone. Except that everyone in his feed was only her. The worst part wasn't even Robbie himself. It was how he slowly got into her head. He'd joke about me being too serious. He'd text her things like, "You could do better. I don't know if he really gets you like I do." I didn't see those texts right away, not until much later, but even without them, I could feel the shift. Maya started getting distant. When I'd ask what was wrong, she'd sigh and say, "I just need space." Space? From what? I hadn't done anything. A month later, she invited me to Robbie's small housewarming party. Against my better judgment, I went. Maybe it was a chance to make peace. When we arrived, Robbie greeted her with a hug that lasted way too long. I stood beside them, awkwardly, waiting for him to let go. "Glad you made it, Caleb," he said finally, patting my shoulder. "Maya told me you were worried I didn't like you." I froze. "What?" He grinned. "Relax, man, just teasing." Throughout the night, he kept pulling her away, introducing her to people, dancing with her, whispering things that made her laugh. Every time I tried to join in, he'd find a way to make me feel out of place. At one point, I overheard him telling someone, "She deserves someone who keeps up with her. You know? Not everyone can handle her energy." The way he said it, like I wasn't even there, made my blood boil. When we finally left, Maya seemed irritated. "You were quiet all night because your friend treats me like a ghost," I said. "Do you not see that?" She crossed her arms. "You're overreacting." Weeks passed. Things got worse. He started buying her gifts, a bracelet for her birthday, flowers when she got promoted, a hoodie that she wore constantly, his hoodie. When I said it made me uncomfortable, she rolled her eyes. "He's just thoughtful. You're being jealous." That word, jealous, became her shield. But it wasn't jealousy, it was instinct. Every time I saw Robbie's name pop up on her phone, my chest tightened. Every time she smiled at a message and turned her screen away, something inside me sank. I started questioning myself. Was I paranoid? Was I really that insecure? But then came the night that erased any doubt. It was late, around midnight. I couldn't sleep, so I went to the kitchen for water. That's when I heard voices outside the apartment door. Maya's voice, then Robbie's. They were standing in the hallway, talking quietly. I cracked the door slightly and saw them. Robbie's hand on her shoulder, his face inches from hers. She looked upset. "I just don't know what to do," she said softly. Robbie leaned closer. "You don't need him, Maya. He doesn't see how amazing you are. You deserve better." My heart dropped. Before I could react, she started crying. He hugged her, tight, longer than comfort should last, and whispered something I couldn't hear. She didn't pull away. I stepped out, and they froze. Robbie slowly let go. "Oh, hey, man," he said, like nothing happened. Maya wiped her tears quickly. "Caleb, it's not what you think." I looked at her, then at him. "You should leave." He smiled faintly, like he enjoyed the chaos. "Sure, bro, whatever you say." He walked past me, brushing my shoulder deliberately. The door clicked shut, and I stood there in silence. Maya didn't speak for a full minute. Finally, she said, "You can't just assume things." "Assume what?" "I heard him telling you to leave me. He didn't mean it like that." I laughed, but it wasn't the funny kind. "How exactly did he mean it then?" She looked down. "He's protective. He's seen me hurt before. He just doesn't want that to happen again." I stared at her. "Protective? Maya, he wants to be with you." She shook her head frustrated. "You're wrong." But deep down, I could tell even she didn't fully believe that anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything. The looks, the hugs, the texts, the whispers. It all fit too perfectly. I remembered the first time I met him. The smug comments, the too long hugs, the subtle jabs. I'd brushed them off as insecurity. But I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Robbie didn't want to be her friend. He wanted to erase me. And for the first time since meeting him, I realized something terrifying. He might actually succeed if I didn't do something soon. That was the night everything changed. I didn't know it yet, but that friend she said not to worry about, he wasn't just a threat to my relationship. He was about to become the worst thing that ever happened to me. I used to think manipulation was subtle, that it crept in slowly, unnoticed. But what I didn't realize was that once it takes root, it spreads like poison. And by the time you recognize it, you're already too late. That's how it felt with Robbie. Oh, after that night in the hallway, the one where I caught him hugging Maya, whispering things that made her cry, something inside me snapped. I couldn't unsee it. Every smile, every late night text, every inside joke between them, it all looked different now. It looked like betrayal waiting to happen. The next morning, Maya acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed softly, and told me she was running late for work. I watched her tie her hair up in a messy bun, the way she always did when she was stressed. "Are we going to talk about last night?" I asked. She froze for a second, but kept her back to me. "There's nothing to talk about." "Really?" I stepped closer. "You were crying in the hallway while Robbie told you to leave me." Her voice turned sharp. "He didn't say that." "I heard him, Maya." She turned around, eyes flashing. "You're twisting it. He was just checking on me." "You think everyone's against you lately, Caleb?" I took a breath, trying not to raise my voice. "No, I think one specific person is against me, and he's winning." She slammed her mug down so hard coffee splashed across the counter. "Enough. Robbie has always been there for me. You're acting paranoid." And there it was, the wall. The invisible barrier he'd built between us, brick by brick, lie by lie. That night, she didn't come home until late. She said she'd gone out for dinner with a friend from work, but I could smell Robbie's cologne when she hugged me. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, smiled weakly, and went to bed. Sleep didn't come. I lay there staring at the ceiling, hearing Robbie's voice in my head, the smirk, the sarcasm, the fake charm. He wasn't going to stop. He wasn't satisfied with just being the wedge between us. He wanted to destroy me. So I decided to confront him directly. I texted him the next morning. "Me, we need to talk. In person. Robbie, LOL. About what? Me. You know what? Robbie, chill, man. I'm free later if you want to embarrass yourself." That last line told me everything about how this was going to go. Still, I drove over to Maya's apartment later that evening. I didn't tell her I didn't want to start another argument. She was at a night shift at the hospital anyway. I just wanted to clear the air. Maybe if I got through to him, maybe if he saw I wasn't backing down, he'd stop. It sounds stupid now, thinking I could reason with the snake. When I arrived, his car was already there. The door was slightly open, like he'd been expecting me. I stepped inside. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like it was just another casual night. He looked up with that smug grin. "Well, if it isn't Maya's favorite guy." "Cut the crap, Robbie," I said, closing the door behind me. He laughed. "What's wrong, Caleb? You look tense." "I know what you're doing," I said. "The gifts, the late night texts, the whispers. I'm not stupid." He stood up slowly, walking toward me. "And what exactly am I doing?" "Trying to turn her against me. You can stop pretending to be her friend. You want her." He tilted his head, smiling. "So what if I do?" My jaw tightened. "She's with me?" He took a step closer, voice dropping. "She was with you. Past tense. You think she doesn't complain about you? You think she doesn't vent to me about how boring you've become?" My chest burned, but I didn't take the bait. "You're lying." He chuckled. "Am I?" "She tells me things, Caleb. Things she doesn't tell you. Like how she feels trapped, how you don't get her anymore, how she wishes she'd chosen differently." That hit me harder than I wanted it to. He could see it too, that tiny flicker of doubt behind my anger. "See?" he said softly. "You already know I'm right." I stepped closer, my hands shaking. "You're not right. You're just manipulating her." He smirked. "Maybe, but if it's that easy, what does that say about your relationship?" That did it. I grabbed his shirt. "You stay the hell away from her." He didn't even flinch. "What are you gonna do? Hit me? You think that'll make her love you again?" "Again?" I said through my teeth. "Oh, come on, Caleb. You feel it, don't you? She's slipping away, and you can't stop it." He pushed my hand off his chest, brushing his shirt like I was dirt. "She deserves better," he said quietly, "and I'm gonna make sure she gets it." That's when I lost it. I shoved him back. Hard. He stumbled a step, then laughed, actually laughed. "There it is, the temper she's been talking about." "What?" I froze. He smirked. "Oh, you didn't know? She's been telling people you've got anger issues, that you scare her sometimes." I guess she wasn't wrong. My stomach dropped. That was his plan all along, to make me look dangerous, to push me until I snapped, then use it against me. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door. He stepped closer instead. "Make me." For a moment, we just stared at each other. The tension in that room was thick enough to choke on. Then, before I could move, he lunged. He shoved me in the chest, hard. I stumbled back, hitting the edge of the stairs behind me. "Robbie, stop!" He pushed again, harder this time. My foot slipped, the world tilted, and then everything went black. I don't remember hitting the bottom. I just remember pain, sharp, breath-stealing pain shooting up my side, the sound of my head cracking against wood, the air leaving my lungs. When I came to, I was on the floor staring at the ceiling. My ribs screamed every time I tried to breathe. My vision blurred. I heard footsteps. Robbie leaned over me, his face unreadable. "Should have stayed out of the way," he said quietly. Then he walked away, just left me there. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. A dull beep echoed beside me. My side was wrapped in bandages, and my head throbbed. A nurse leaned over. "You're awake. Don't try to move too fast. You've got a mild concussion and 2 cracked ribs." "What happened?" I croaked. "Your friend brought you in," she said. "He said you fell down some stairs during an argument." I felt my stomach twist. "He brought me here?" Before I could say anything, the door opened and there he was. Robbie. He had the nerve to smile. "Hey, buddy. You scared me there for a second." I glared at him. "What the hell did you tell them?" He sat in the chair beside the bed like he owned it. "Relax, man. I said it was an accident. You were angry, we argued, and you slipped, that's all. You pushed me." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You're confused. Head injury, you know? You tripped. Everyone saw how unstable you were lately. No one's gonna believe you." My pulse spiked. "You're sick," he smirked. "Maybe, but I'm smart too. You think Maya's gonna believe you? She already thinks you've got a temper. I made sure of that. Why are you doing this?" "Because she deserves someone better than you," he said, his voice low, almost gentle. "Someone who doesn't hold her back." I wanted to scream, but every breath hurt. He stood up, patted my shoulder like we were old friends, and whispered, "Rest up, champ." Then he left. A few hours later, Maya showed up. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "Caleb," she whispered, rushing to my side. "What happened?" I looked at her, my throat dry. "He pushed me, Maya. I swear to God, he pushed me." She froze. "Robbie told me you tried to hit him, that you lost it." "What?" "No. He..." "Stop." Her voice cracked. "I don't know who to believe anymore. You've been angry for weeks. You keep accusing him of things. I can't do this." "Maya, please," I begged. "You know me. I would never hurt anyone, least of all you." Tears streamed down her face. "I want to believe that, but it's too much." She took a step back, shaking her head. "I think we need a break." "A break. Not, I'll stand by you. Not, we'll figure this out. Just a break." I felt something inside me crack deeper than my ribs. "Maya," I whispered. "He's manipulating you." "I can't talk about this right now," she said softly, and then she turned and left. Just like that. The days that followed blurred together pain meds, silence, and the constant hum of machines. No one visited except my sister Emma, who brought food and quiet company. When she asked what happened, I told her everything. Every twisted word, every manipulation, every lie. She didn't doubt me for a second. But the hospital staff, they looked at me differently, like I was just another guy who lost his temper. Robbie had gotten to them first. He'd won. When I was finally discharged, I sat in the car outside the hospital for a long time. The air felt heavy. I didn't know where to go. My apartment felt empty. Now, her things were gone. Her scent lingered like a ghost I couldn't get rid of. I checked my phone. No messages from her. No apology. No questions. Nothing. Just a text from an unknown number. "Told you not to mess with me." No name. but I didn't need one. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. That was the moment I realized I lost everything. My girlfriend, my reputation, my peace, and the man responsible was still out there smiling, walking free, playing victim. But what he didn't know yet was that I wasn't done. He thought he'd broken me. He hadn't seen what I become when I've got nothing left to lose. You ever feel like your life has already been wrecked enough and then somehow the universe decides you still owe it more pain? That's what the weeks after the fall felt like. The bruises healed faster than my pride ever did. Every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see Caleb anymore. I saw the guy who lost everything to a manipulative psychopath and didn't even have the strength to defend himself. But I was trying. Physical therapy twice a week, short walks around the block, forcing myself to eat something other than instant noodles. I deleted social media for a bit. Every time I scrolled, I'd see Maya smiling in new pictures. Sometimes Robbie was there, standing in the background like a damn shadow that refused to fade. At first, I thought I was paranoid. Maybe I was just stuck in the trauma. But then things started happening that I couldn't explain away. It started small. My car tires were slashed one morning. I remember standing in the driveway staring at them like, really? This too? No one around? No cameras nearby. Just 4 flat tires and the faint smell of gasoline that didn't make sense. I called the cops, filed a report, and they gave me the standard, probably random vandalism speech. But my gut told me otherwise. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. Stay quiet and stay away from her. I froze. No name, no clue, just that one line. I blocked the number, but the messages kept coming from new ones. Threats, mockery. Stuff like, you should have stayed down the stairs. Maybe next time you won't get up. I tried convincing myself it was some cruel prank, but then one night, while I was lying in bed, I saw a silhouette outside my window. It was past midnight. The streetlight barely caught a figure standing by the edge of my yard just watching. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and yelled, "Hey, who's there?" The figure turned, slow and deliberate, before disappearing into the darkness. When I checked the security app from my front cam, the feed was blank. I found the wire cut clean the next morning. That's when fear started settling in for real. It was around 3:12 a.m. when it happened. I woke up coughing, eyes stinging. Smoke. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I smelled it. Acrid, heavy, real. I ran to the window and the glow of orange flames licked the side of my porch. My heart stopped. I grabbed the extinguisher, ran out barefoot, and started dousing it like my life depended on it, because it did. The porch railing was half melted plastic and the wooden steps were blackened and cracked. It wasn't a random fire. Someone had poured accelerant. The cops came. They found a burnt rag soaked in lighter fluid near the porch and said it looked intentional. No fingerprints, no camera footage, no suspects. And yet I didn't need evidence to know. I knew who it was. Robbie. That smug, manipulative bastard who'd taken my girlfriend and turned her against me, now trying to take away the rest of my sanity. But this time, I wasn't going to play victim. Detective Hall was the one who took over after the arson attempt. She was a tough, middle-aged woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When I told her about Robbie, the push down the stairs, the breakup, the stalking, she didn't dismiss me. She listened, really listened. "If what you're saying is true," she said, "you need to document everything. Every message, every visit, every little thing out of the ordinary." So I did. I started keeping a journal every time a strange car parked across the street too long. Every noise, every coincidence. I even bought motion lights and a new set of Wi-Fi security cameras that backed up footage to the cloud. For a while, nothing happened. The quiet almost made me hopeful. Then came the day I saw him again. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was washing my car, finally feeling somewhat normal again, when a familiar voice cut through the sound of running water. "Hey man, long time no see." I turned, and there he was, Robbie, leaning against his car across the street like it was just another sunny day. He smiled that same fake, lazy grin that used to fool everyone. "Why are you here?" I snapped. He shrugged. "Maya lives nearby. I was just driving through. Didn't think you'd still be here." I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. "You know exactly what you did. Stay the hell away from me." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "You should be careful, Caleb. People might start thinking you've got anger issues again." My fist clenched, but I remembered what Hall said. I pulled out my phone and started recording. His smile faltered for a second, then he smirked. "Oh, recording me now? Cute. You think anyone's gonna believe your little victim story?" He turned and walked back to his car like nothing happened. That night, I sent the footage to Detective Hall. She told me it was good evidence, not enough for arrest, but a solid start for a restraining order, and I was going to file one. The week after that was hell. My trash cans were knocked over, my mailbox smashed, and someone left a dead squirrel on my porch. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. One evening, when I went to get groceries, I noticed a car following me, same black Honda Robbie drove. When I pulled into the police station parking lot, it sped off. That's when I knew this wasn't paranoia. It was a warning. Hall told me to stay cautious, maybe even crash at a friend's place for a bit, but I didn't want to run anymore. I was done living in fear of that psychopath. And then came the final straw. It was late, around 11 p.m. I had just locked up for the night when I heard the sound of gravel crunching outside. At first, I thought it was an animal. Then I saw a movement near my porch. When I opened the door, Robbie was standing there, hoodie on, eyes wild. "You think you can just ruin my life?" he hissed. I didn't even have time to respond before he charged. We crashed against the porch railing, the same one that had half burned weeks ago. He swung first, his fist catching me across the jaw, and I stumbled back, barely staying upright. "You took everything from me," he screamed. "You made her leave me. You're insane," I shouted, blocking another swing and shoving him back. The fight was messy. Desperate, two guys, fueled by rage and pain. He grabbed a piece of wood from the porch and swung it at my head. I ducked. It splintered against the wall, and I tackled him to the ground. We rolled, punching, kicking, until I finally got the upper hand and pinned him down. The sirens came before I even realized I'd called 911. When the cops arrived, they found Robbie bleeding from the nose, shouting about how I had attacked him. But this time, I had proof the cameras. The whole thing was recorded. Robbie was arrested that night. Arson, assault, trespassing, all added to his record. He tried lying again, but this time his web of manipulation didn't hold. Maya showed up at the station. She looked broken. She didn't say much, just whispered, "I'm so sorry," before walking away. Detective Hall told me I'd done the right thing, that not everyone gets justice this cleanly, but it didn't feel clean. It felt hollow, like I'd finally beaten the monster, but part of me had burned down in the process too. I still check my locks twice before sleeping. I still flinch when my phone pings at night. But I'm healing. I learned the hard way that evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles, cracks jokes, and tells your girlfriend she's too good for you. I lost a lot, but I gained something to prove that when people show you who they really are, you believe them the first time. And that's when my fear turned into fury, the kind that doesn't destroy, but rebuilds. Because Robbie may have started the fire, but I made damn sure he burned for it. After Robbie's arrest, I thought that was it. I thought justice would just happen. You know, like in the movies, bad guy goes to jail. The end. But real life, it's messier. He got out on bail. Of course he did. He had money, friends who vouched for his good character, and that fake charm that could sell sand in a desert. The cops told me to stay calm and let the process work. But I'd been calm for too long. I knew if I didn't push this case forward myself, he'd twist everything again, just like he always did. So I decided it was time to set a trap. It started with a phone call from my sister, Emma. Emma's 3 years younger than me, but sharper than most detectives I've met. She's a data analyst for a cybersecurity firm, the kind of person who can find someone's deleted tweets from 2010 in 5 minutes flat. She said, "Caleb, if you want this guy nailed, you need evidence that even the best lawyer can't talk around." That's when the plan began. Detective Hall agreed to work with us unofficially off record at first. She couldn't entrap Robbie directly without a warrant, but she could advise us on how to collect legally usable evidence. We built a strategy board in my living room, printed text, screenshots, timestamps, photos. Every interaction between Robbie, Maya, and me was pinned like pieces in a twisted puzzle. And damn, the picture that started forming was worse than I'd imagined. Emma went through Maya's old social media posts, cross-referencing them with Robbie's. That's when she noticed something strange. Whenever Maya and I had a fight or disagreement, Robbie had posted cryptic quotes about fake friends or protecting people from toxic men. He'd been seeding doubts about me for months, even before the stairs incident. We also found anonymous Reddit comments under throwaway accounts defending Robbie, trashing me posts that lined up perfectly with times I'd argued with Maya. The manipulation ran deep. But what really broke it open was a mistake, Robbie's mistake. It was a Saturday night. I was sitting on my couch, exhausted, trying to edit a report for Hall, when my phone buzzed with a new voicemail. Unknown number. I hit play and froze. It was Robbie's voice, slurred, angry, laughing between breaths. "You think you can play me, Caleb? You think Maya's ever gonna believe you after what I told her? Man, I made her break up with you. I told her you were unstable. I told her about the stairs. She bought every word. Ha! God, she's so gullible." He coughed, muttering something about making him pay and finishing what he started. Then, they'll never believe him. I made sure of that. The message was just under a minute long. I replayed it 5 times, heart pounding harder with each listen. That was it. That was the nail in his coffin. When I brought the voicemail to Detective Hall the next morning, she played it twice, jaw tightening. "This," she said, "is gold. But it's not enough. We need context corroboration." So we got to work building it. Emma used metadata to trace the voicemail's timestamp and match it with Robbie's location data from social media posts he tagged himself drinking at a bar downtown that night. We combined that with prior text messages I received from unknown numbers, and guess what? The timing lined up perfectly. Same days, same language style, same phrasing. The pattern was undeniable. Now we just needed Maya to see it. I hadn't spoken to Maya since the night at the police station. I wasn't sure I wanted to. The breakup had left a scar I wasn't ready to touch. But Emma convinced me otherwise. "If she's still under his spell, she's another witness he's controlling," she said. "We need her to see the truth, not for love, for justice." So Emma messaged her privately, pretending to need closure for her brother's sake. Maya agreed to meet at a cafe downtown. I didn't go. I couldn't. But Emma recorded everything, legally, in our state, since she was part of the conversation. When Maya showed up, Emma laid it all out. Screenshots of texts Robbie had sent from fake numbers, the voicemail confession, photos of tire marks outside my driveway, timestamps that placed Robbie near my house the night of the fire. She said Maya's face went pale, then tears, then silence. "He told me Caleb attacked him," Maya whispered in the recording. "He said he pushed Caleb in self-defense. I believed him because he cried when he told me." Emma's voice stayed calm. He's been manipulating you, Maya. The voicemail proves it. There was a long pause before Maya said, "What have I done?" When Emma came home that night, she just hugged me. "She knows now," she said softly. "I think she's going to help." I wasn't sure I wanted to see her again, but a few days later, she came by my house anyway. She stood at the gate, hesitant, holding a small paper bag. I almost didn't open the door, but curiosity won. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying for days. "Caleb, I'm so sorry," she said, voice trembling. "I didn't see it. I should have, but I didn't." She handed me the bag. Inside was the bracelet I'd given her on our anniversary, the one she used to wear every day. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive her. Another part wanted to scream. But all I said was, "It's not about us anymore, Maya. It's about making sure he never hurts anyone else." She nodded slowly. "Then let me help." That's when I realized I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. Detective Hall arranged the sting operation. It had to look natural, believable. We knew Robbie still believed Maya was on his side. That arrogance was going to be his downfall. Maya texted him from her old phone, the same one he didn't know was being monitored under a warrant now. "Maya, can we talk? I'm confused about everything. I just need to hear it from you." "Robbie, of course. You know you can trust me. Meet me where we used to hang out at the park near your old place." Hall's team prepped hidden surveillance at the location. Microphones, cameras, and plainclothes officers nearby. All we needed was Robbie to talk. And he did. It was cold that evening. Maya wore a wire under her jacket. I watched the live feed from Hall's unmarked van nearby, palms sweating. Robbie showed up, hands in his pockets, fake smile plastered on like always. "I've missed you," he said softly. "You shouldn't talk to Caleb. He's dangerous." Maya tilted her head. "Is that why you pushed him?" He froze. "What? You said it was self-defense, right?" she pressed. "But you also said he never touched you first." Robbie's eyes narrowed. "You're not recording this, are you?" She shook her head, pretending to wipe a tear. "No, I just need to understand. Why did you do it?" And just like that, his ego took over. He smirked. "Because he didn't deserve you. You think I'm gonna let some wannabe hero take you from me after everything I did for you? I had to show him who was in control." "So you admit it?" she asked quietly. He laughed. "Yeah, I pushed him. Big deal. Should have pushed harder." That was the moment Hall gave the signal. Officers swarmed in. Robbie's expression went from smug to horrified in a heartbeat. They cuffed him right there while he screamed, "She set me up. This is entrapment." But the damage was done. The confession was clear. The evidence airtight. When the dust settled, Hall looked at me and said, "You did it. You got it." Robbie was charged with assault, arson, stalking, and obstruction. The voicemail, the footage, the confession, it all came together like dominoes falling into place. Maya gave an official statement. She even testified later that Robbie had emotionally manipulated her for years, isolating her from friends and gaslighting her into believing I was abusive. It was all in the open now. As for me, I felt something strange when it was over. Not triumph, not even relief, just quiet. The kind that comes after a storm destroys everything when you're standing in the wreckage, realizing you survived, but nothing looks the same anymore. That night, Emma and I sat on the porch, the same one he'd once tried to burn. She nudged me with a beer can. "So, what now?" I looked out at the empty street, the cold air settling over the yard. "Now," I said softly, "now I start living again, without fear, without lies." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Because monsters like Robbie can burn your house, your reputation, your heart, but if you fight smart and stay true to the truth, they can't burn your soul. And mine was finally free. When I walked into the courthouse that morning, I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for closure. But the truth? Closure isn't something that just happens. You don't wake up one day magically over it. You have to fight for it step by step, truth by truth, until the lies stop echoing in your head. And that's what today was about. The day I finally faced Robbie in court. It had been 6 months since the sting. 6 months of statements, hearings, and waiting. Every court date pushed further back, every delay chipping at my patience. But today was the big one. Final arguments, testimonies, and sentencing. I sat in the witness area beside Detective Hall and my sister Emma. Maya sat across the aisle, her hands shaking as she clutched a small notebook. She hadn't worn makeup in weeks. Her eyes looked hollow but focused. Robbie was brought in, wearing a county jumpsuit. But even then, he still had that same smug smirk like none of this mattered. Like he'd somehow find a way out again. He glanced at me, lips curling into a whisper I didn't need to hear to understand. "You'll never win." But this time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry. I was ready. The prosecution started by painting the timeline from the first accident on the stairs to the fire, the threats, and the sting operation. They played the voicemail, Robbie's drunken voice echoing across the courtroom, every syllable, every cruel laugh. I made her break up with him. He should have stayed down. You could feel the tension in the air. Even the jury shifted uncomfortably. Then they played the video of the confession from the park, the moment Robbie bragged about pushing me. Because he didn't deserve her. His smirk vanished. He turned red, then pale. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw the crack in his armor. When Maya took the stand, the entire room went silent. She looked at him, then at me, then down at her hands. "I believed him," she said softly. "He told me Caleb was dangerous, that he was protecting me. But I see now that Robbie was the danger all along." She recounted how he controlled her, isolated her, monitored her texts, even guilt-tripped her into cutting off her friends. He wasn't protecting me. He was owning me. Her voice cracked, then not from sadness but from shame. "To Caleb," she said, eyes glistening. I'm sorry, and I let his lies blind me. You didn't deserve any of it. I didn't look away. I just nodded once. Because forgiveness, like closure, isn't something you say. It's something you eventually feel. And in that moment, I felt it starting. When the defense began their cross-examination, Robbie couldn't hold it together. They tried spinning the unstable ex narrative again, that I was jealous, that I'd provoked everything. That's when I laughed. Quietly, and that laugh set him off like gasoline meeting fire. You think this is funny? He snapped across the courtroom. You ruined everything. You made her hate me. His lawyer tried to calm him, but he shoved the man aside and pointed right at me. You're the reason I lost her. You're the reason I'm in here. You're nothing. The judge slammed her gavel, shouting for order, but Robbie kept yelling every word, digging his own grave deeper. You think they'll believe you over me? You're a loser, Caleb. A pathetic loser who couldn't even keep his girlfriend. He lunged, but officers were already moving. They restrained him before he reached the stand, cuffing him again as the room erupted into chaos. And the best part? The whole thing was being recorded official court footage. The prosecution didn't need to say a word after that. Robbie had just confessed to his obsession and aggression in front of the jury. When they called me to the stand for the final statement, I didn't prepare a speech. I just spoke. When someone shows you who they are, I said, believe them. I didn't. I thought I could reason with him, that I could make things right, but you can't reason with obsession. You can't negotiate with jealousy. It eats everything: your peace, your trust, your sanity. I paused, glancing at Maya, then Robbie. He didn't just hurt me physically. He made me doubt who I was. And for a long time, I believed I was the problem. That's what people like him do. They twist reality until you can't see straight. My throat tightened, but I kept going. I'm not standing here because I'm brave. I'm standing here because I had people who helped me fight back. My sister, the detective, even Maya once she saw the truth. And to anyone who's ever been gaslighted, manipulated, or made to feel small, you're not crazy. You're just dealing with someone who can't stand not having control. You could hear a pin drop. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. He tried to take everything from me. My love, my safety, my sanity, I finished. But in the end, he only destroyed himself. And with that, I stepped down. It took the jury less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: assault, arson attempt, harassment, and obstruction. Robbie's face went blank. Not angry, not scared, just empty. Like he finally realized that his lies couldn't save him this time. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in state prison with mandatory psychological evaluation and a restraining order that would last long after his release. As the bailiffs led him away, he looked at me one last time, but there was no hatred, left only defeat. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter somehow. The clouds had cleared and the late afternoon sun hit the steps just right, warm and real. Maya walked up to me slowly. Is it really over? I exhaled. Yeah, it's over. She hesitated. I don't expect forgiveness, Caleb, but thank you for fighting back. I smiled faintly. You don't owe me thanks. Just make sure you never let someone like him control your life again. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away down the steps, not toward me, not toward anyone, just forward. And that's what I wanted for both of us. Later that evening, Emma and I sat in the same spot we always did, the porch that had once been blackened by fire, now rebuilt, stronger. She handed me a cup of coffee. You finally got your justice, she said. I looked out at the quiet street, the sound of crickets humming in the background. Justice, yeah, I said. But it's not about winning, it's about surviving, she smiled. And you did. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry or broken. I just felt still, whole. Robbie's voice, his threats, his lies, they were all gone now. Locked behind concrete walls where they belonged. And me, I was free. Free from the noise. Free from the guilt. Free from him. He tried to take everything from me: my love, my safety, my sanity. But in the end, he only destroyed himself. And that was the coldest, most satisfying justice of all. Story 3. He tried to gaslight me into quitting. Here's how I turned it around. I used to love my job. Kinetic Labs wasn't perfect. No company ever is. But for 3 years, it had felt like the place I was meant to be. I was 27, a project manager with a solid team, a desk by the big window that looked over downtown Seattle, and enough caffeine in my bloodstream to qualify as half human, half latte. We built small-scale AI tools for logistics companies, and I actually woke up excited to solve problems. That was before Ethan Price arrived. He came in after a strategic restructuring, which is corporate language for someone high up played chess with human lives. My old boss, Janet, got transferred to a new division, and Ethan was brought in as our lead consultant. His title was deliberately vague. Consultants can be heroes or hatchet men, but the rumors said he turned around a failing branch in Chicago. When he first walked into the bullpen, he looked like every LinkedIn success post rolled into one. Fitted navy suit, sleeves rolled to the perfect length, confident smile that said, I know exactly what I'm doing. He shook everyone's hand, remembered names immediately, and somehow managed to make eye contact that felt personal. I'll admit it, I was impressed. Everyone was. Rachel, right? Janet said, you're the engine that keeps this place running. He said it with a smile that was just charming enough to be disarming. Compliments like that make you want to live up to them. The first few weeks were fine, great even. He scheduled one-on-ones, asked smart questions, praised my documentation style. He told me he wanted me to take more ownership of client presentations and said things like, you and I are going to make a great team. I believed him, Why wouldn't I? Then little things started to change. At first, it was subtle. So subtle that if you told me I was being manipulated, I would have laughed. He'd forget to CC me on client emails. Meeting invites would go out and my name would be missing. When I asked about it, he'd smile like I just misread something. Oh, that one wasn't relevant to your area. Except it was. Entirely. Then came the rewrites. I'd send in reports and he'd tweak a few words, then present them as his own. In front of all upper management, he'd casually mention, I pulled together that data analysis Rachel helped him with. It stung, but I told myself not to overreact. Maybe he was just trying to find his footing as the new boss. I'd seen good managers stumble at first. The first real crack happened during a Monday stand-up. We were discussing timelines for the Phoenix project, a big client rollout that was basically my baby. Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, and said, Rachel's been a bit optimistic with her estimates, so let's pad those numbers by 2 weeks. The room went quiet. My jaw literally dropped. I'd spent weeks coordinating that schedule, cross-checking every dependency, and he'd never said a word about being optimistic. Actually, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, the estimates are based on the client's required delivery date. He cut me off with a chuckle. I know, Rachel, don't worry, no one's blaming you. We all learn to think more realistically over time. The way he said it, light, teasing, paternal, made everyone laugh awkwardly, and suddenly I was the over-serious one defending her homework. After that, something shifted. My team, people who used to back me up, started checking with Ethan before looping me in. He never outright told them not to, but he'd drop casual comments. Let's not overwhelm Rachel, she's juggling a lot. Or, I'll handle that, Rachel's focusing on the Phoenix deadlines. It was like being wrapped in bubble wrap and slowly suffocating. By month 2, I was second-guessing everything. I'd type an email and hover over send, wondering if my tone was too aggressive or too soft. He'd make small corrections. Maybe use fewer exclamation marks. It reads emotional. Until I barely recognized my own communication style. I started keeping a notebook. Not for work tasks, but for, reality checks. Little things I wanted to confirm I hadn't imagined. April 3rd. Ethan told me to move meeting to 2 p.m. Calendar invite still shows 1 p.m. He said I must have misheard. April 6th. He said I missed the client call. Found out later he changed the invite last minute. April 9th. Complimented me on being resilient under stress. Hadn't mentioned any stress before. Reading it back made my stomach twist. Each entry felt small, harmless on its own, but together they painted a picture that looked eerily deliberate. When I finally confronted him, it was after one too many misunderstandings. I caught him in the hallway and said, Can we talk? I feel like there's been some confusion about responsibilities on Phoenix. He gave that patient teacher smile again. Of course. What's on your mind? I've noticed a few things. Meeting times changing without notice. Comments in front of the team that make it sound like I'm not keeping up. He raised his hand slightly as if calming a skittish animal. Rachel, you're reading too much into things. You're doing great. If I tease you in meetings, it's just to keep the energy light. You know how people get stressed? It doesn't feel light, I said quietly. It feels undermining. He paused, then sighed like I disappointed him. You're one of the most competent people here, but you can be intense. Don't let that get in your head. Remember, perception matters. That phrase, perception matters, lodged in my brain like a splinter. I walked back to my desk feeling small, embarrassed like I'd made a scene. And yet, he never denied changing meetings, never apologized, never said he'd stop. He just reframed it until I was the problem. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling of my tiny Capitol Hill apartment, replaying the conversation, wondering if maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was too sensitive. Then I opened my notebook again and flipped through the pages, line after line of small contradictions, patterns. No, I wasn't imagining it. After that hallway conversation where Ethan smiled and told me I was too intense, his behavior didn't mellow. It became more surgical. The charm stayed. He knew how to keep everyone's guard down, but the edges of it went razor sharp in private and surgical in public. He escalated, and he did it in a way that left me gasping for air and doubting if I'd ever been able to breathe normally at work again. It started with deadlines. On paper, our timelines were reasonable. On my whiteboard, everything mapped out with dependencies, buffer days, and realistic contingencies. I'd spent nights aligning client expectations with engineering capacity. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan started assigning deliverables that didn't exist in the original scope and giving them timelines that would be laughable if they hadn't been attached to performance reviews. Rachel, can you have the Phoenix migration prototype ready by next Tuesday? I told the client we'd get them an initial demo. He said it like he was asking a favor. It was actually a demand. I looked at my calendar. Tuesday was in 4 business days. The prototype meant coordinating 3 engineers, QA, and a live data sandbox we didn't already have. I told him the honest truth, it wasn't feasible. He smiled, that same trained smile, and said, doable, trust me. Then he forwarded a rewritten email to the client with a CC list that omitted the engineering leads and me. He wrote, per our conversation, we will deliver the prototype by Tuesday. The client responded with enthusiasm. My inbox filled with research requests, access permissions, and version control merge conflicts all addressed to me. When I pushed back calmly with a checklist of what we needed, Ethan made his next move. Public humiliation with a wink. In the status meeting that Friday, with our CTO on the call, he leaned forward and said, I think Rachel is being a little too conservative here. We can ship this faster if we stop over engineering. He did it in that sing-song way that diluted cruelty into constructive feedback. But the words landed in the team like an anchor. The engineers started emailing him directly about streamlining scope, skipping the careful triage I'd been doing. In the next sprint, features were reprioritized without my input. Tasks I'd assigned were reassigned to others, and when things went sideways, as they will, when timelines are unrealistic, he'd shake his head at me in passive disappointment. We should have caught that, right, Rachel? It was the kind of undermining that's invisible if you're not looking for the pattern. It's the kind of undermining that makes your brain go, did I actually miss that, or did someone move the piece while I wasn't looking? Then came the edited reports. I'd spend hours drafting client-facing analysis charts, rationales, risk assessments. I sent a clean PDF and a day later found a version in the shared drive with different phrasing, softer language, missing caveats, and a line that made our team look overconfident. He'd present it in a client call as a document we'd agreed on, giving me a perfunctory, "Great work, Rachel," before moving on to take follow-up questions. When a client later asked for clarifications about assumptions the edited report had removed, his eyebrows would lift with faux surprise and he'd mutter, "I thought we'd covered that," leaving me scrambling to patch an implication I hadn't made. Rumors started circulating, seeded so artfully I almost admired it. Someone mentioned in a casual Slack thread that I'd seemed a little off in a meeting last month. Another time, during a lunch, someone said, "You know how stressful these cycles are? Maybe Rachel just needs a break." Like clockwork, Ethan would offer with paternal warmth, "If anyone needs time, we can discuss reallocation of responsibilities temporarily." His phrasing always left an impression of care, while simultaneously isolating me. I began to see my inbox and calendars as booby-trapped terrain. I slept less. Sleep, when it came, was a jittery short thing that left me worse than before. The anxiety moved out of my chest and into my skin. I'd get a prickling in my palms when my phone buzzed. I started keeping it face down so I wouldn't see who was messaging. At home, my apartment became a quiet interrogation room. I would replay meetings over and over, not to find solutions, but to find the moment I'd made a mistake. My brain turned every overlooked Slack message into evidence of incompetence. I'd wake up convinced I'd forgotten a deliverable, only to discover a fabricated, missed deadline that Ethan had carefully constructed by rewriting a timeline and forwarding it to the client with a different timestamp. The physical symptoms came next. My heart would pound in the middle of the night until I felt like I couldn't draw a full breath. On several mornings, I'd sit on the edge of the bathtub and feel my hands go cold and numb. One afternoon, in the elevator, the lights went fuzzy and I realized I was having a full-blown anxiety attack. I pressed the emergency button and the security guard, bless him, helped me to the lobby and sat with me while I tried to regulate my breathing. I remember thinking, through the haze of panic, how embarrassing it would be to tell anyone that my workplace had brought me to this. HR became the place where hope went to die. I expected more from HR. In my naivety, I thought there'd be a person somewhere in a gray office who would listen, take notes, ask precise questions, and act. Instead, my first meeting with HR felt like a procedural requirement for a box they'd already decided to check. "We've had a few interpersonal complaints this quarter," the HR rep said, folding her hands. "Can you describe some specific incidents?" I did. Dates, emails, the edited reports, the meeting where he'd said I was too intense. I showed her the calendar invites that had been altered, the messages that implied my instability. I told her about the anxiety attacks. I told her I was scared. She clicked her pen and said, "Okay, it's important we maintain a collaborative environment, and sometimes these things are just personality conflicts. We'll have a facilitator come in and do a workshop on team dynamics." "A workshop?" I asked. "But it's standard," she said. "We suggest mediation first. You're both valuable to the company. These things can often be resolved with communication." Her words were polite and neutral, but the message was clear. We weren't going to rock the boat. There would be no investigation. There would be no immediate action. The company's ethos, at least in that moment, was to favor stability over disruption. And I, the person whose blood pressure had tripled in the elevator, was suddenly told that my suffering might be remedied by a team-building exercise. A week after HR's little pep talk, Ethan emailed the execs a glowing note about the Phoenix timeline, citing his leadership in realigning expectations and keeping the team motivated. It was the kind of corporate speak that reads as mastery when you're on the outside and as betrayal when you're in the middle of it. He'd taken credit for moving the project forward while continuing to sabotage the groundwork I'd laid. I began to pull away from people. Not dramatically, there were no big fight scenes, no fiery resignations, but a retreat into silence. Friends asked why I'd stopped going to trivia night. My sister texted to see if I was okay. I lied. Mostly, I told myself I needed to focus. That was the polite script of someone trying to survive a slow-burning professional assault. Keep your head down, keep doing good work, and maybe it will pass. But Ethan's tactics didn't pass. They intensified. He started a whisper campaign. He'd call me emotional in front of one person and difficult to manage in another. He'd say to a client, Rachel is very passionate about this, sometimes to a fault, and follow it with a smile that implied that passion equaled instability. When a project slipped because one of the new features required more back-end time than we'd estimated, he sent a follow-up that placed the blame on late deliverables and ambiguous ownership. He left out the parts where he had reassigned 2 key tasks without updating the Jira tickets or informing the QA lead. Rumors caught like dry leaves. They curled and blackened and burned. One Tuesday morning, I opened Slack to find a thread from a product manager I'd worked with for years, asking if I was handling things okay and if I'd considered taking some time. The message was kind, but it felt like a shove. Another teammate, someone who'd once been my staunch ally, began to glance at Ethan before offering commentary on my plans. People were being polite at my expense. I made another HR appointment. This time I came armed with documentation, a timeline I'd created with copies of original emails, screenshots of edited documents, timestamps of calendar changes, and even a couple of recordings of meetings where Ethan contradicted himself. I remember the weight of the folder on my lap, how solid it felt like armor. If I couldn't convince them with my voice, maybe the paperwork would. The HR woman frowned slightly as she paged through the documents. For a heartbeat, I thought, maybe this will be different. Maybe someone will listen. Then she sighed. This is very thorough, Rachel, but you must understand, proving intent is hard. It could be interpreted as miscommunication. She leaned back. We'll consider mediation again. Perhaps some one-on-one coaching for team leads. The sentence landed with the clarity of a verdict. Mediation. Coaching. Phrases that sound like progress but are actually bureaucratic dampeners. I left the meeting feeling hollow. On the elevator down, a colleague who had been in the lobby asked how it went. I said, they'll look into it. I wanted to say they won't, but I didn't have the emotional energy to be that honest. There were nights I imagined walking into the office at dawn, clearing my desk, and leaving a resignation letter where Ethan could find it. The thought of it made my chest feel like it had been hollowed out and refilled with quicksilver. Resigning would be a relief in the short term. It would stop the attacks, the spreadsheet manipulations, the faked emails. But I realized then, in the quiet terror of the choice, that resigning was exactly what Ethan wanted. He wanted me to leave so he could sweep in with his rewritten story and the budget lines he'd padded to make himself look like the hero. He wanted the space to be his without anyone who knew the underlying seams. And then, almost accidentally, I found a breadcrumb that would change everything. It was late. I was scrolling through old emails, not looking for anything in particular, more like soothing myself with sameness. I landed on a chain from months ago, a forwarding trail of logistics data and budget notes. My finger hovered over the trackpad and then, without thinking, I clicked through the forwarded header. There it was, an email Ethan had accidentally forwarded to a distribution list instead of saving as a draft. He was typing to an individual on his private account, and because of a misclick, the message went to the company list. The header showed from ethan.price@personalmail.com to team@kinetic labs, subject, reorg notes, internal. My stomach dropped when I read the sentence that followed. Rachel is a temporary inconvenience. Once I have the Phoenix budget reallocated to my slate, she'll be out of the way. Worst case, HR will make her choose time off, and that will be the end of it. I sat there and reread that line until the words blurred. Temporary inconvenience. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. It was the clearest evidence anyone could want that this wasn't about miscommunication or personality. This was strategy. He had a plan. Marginalize me, manufacture instability, wait for me to stumble or be pushed, then take the spoils. For a moment I felt lightheaded. Then a furious, sharp clarity took over. The panic I'd been living with condensed into an incandescent, manageable thing, anger. That line in the forwarded email was the pivot point. It was proof that none of this had been organic. It was proof that the late nights, the panic attacks, and the mediated HR meetings were part of a design. I downloaded the email, saved screenshots, and then, because rationality had to meet this new evidence, I started to map everything around that line. Dates, calendars, who got what version of the deck, the times Ethan took credit, the moments he'd smirked when someone suggested I take a step back. This was no longer amorphous. It was a web with a center, and I had found the center. That night, I didn't sleep, but it wasn't the hollow, frightened wakefulness I'd known for weeks. It was a wakefulness that had a purpose. I made a plan, not a fully hatched revenge plan. Not yet, but a decision. He wanted me gone. Fine. If he was playing a game I wasn't aware of, I'd learn the rules. If he was sowing doubt, I'd harvest evidence. If he was building a narrative that I was the unstable one, I'd build a counter-narrative that was airtight. I remember standing by my kitchen counter with my laptop open, the city lights of Seattle winking like accusatory stars outside my window. I typed one sentence into a new empty document, and then added another, letting my hands move with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. He wants me gone? Fine, but I'm not leaving. I'm going to make him wish I had. It wasn't a vow shouted for drama. It was a small, deliberate, ironclad promise in a quiet apartment. I started with the easy things. I backed up every document to a personal encrypted drive. I printed out hard copies of critical timelines and slid them into a folder labeled Phoenix Archive. I exported Slack logs that showed who had been looped in on what and when. I asked an IT friend, someone who sat on the outskirts of the company, to advise me on retrieving old versions of files and metadata. Then I made a list of the people who actually knew what I knew. The QA lead, who had complained when features were reprioritized. The engineer who had been asked to cut a corner and had pushed back. The product owner who'd seen versions of the deck before Ethan edited them. I started thinking about how their testimony could align into a coherent story. I thought about timestamps and small confirmations, the tiny things that make a legal document sing. But more than evidence, I started to rebuild my internal architecture, where the past few months had made me cower and doubt. The idea of not letting him win made me ambitious in a new way. I began to imagine not only survival, but a kind of reclamation of my reputation, my role, and the narrative of how this project had come to be. I didn't sleep that night. I wrote lists until my eyes burned. I printed copies of the forwarded email and put them in an envelope labeled, "Do not open unless needed." The envelope felt heavy in my hands. It was both an accusation and a talisman. The chapter of my life that had been erosion was ending. A new chapter, however cautious and fraught, had to begin. I would not be a casualty in someone else's resume. I would not leave the field because a predator thought I was inconvenient. I closed my laptop and finally allowed myself to breathe. The breathing was different this time. Not the shallow gasp of fear, but measured, purposeful inhales. The panic didn't disappear. The anxiety didn't vanish. But with a plan forming and evidence in hand, the terror had a face. And when fear has a face, it can be met and sometimes defeated. I slept a little that morning. When I woke, I opened my calendar and scheduled 2 meetings, one with the QA lead and one with the engineer who'd been reassigned without notification. I would be careful. I would be strategic. I would not tell everyone what I was doing. I was no longer just trying to survive. I was strategizing an answer. If this chapter had a theme, it would be this. When you are being undermined systematically, the instinct to run is as natural as breathing. But sometimes, the only thing that makes sense when they push is to stand and document everything so carefully that the story unravels on its own. I didn't know how long it would take or what it would cost me. I only knew that leaving would be losing by someone else's rules. And I don't lose. First things first, I spent a long weekend cataloging Ethan. Not just the obvious things, the timeline manipulations, the edits, the forwarded emails, but smaller patterns. How he started sentences when he wanted to sound authoritative, the laugh he used to cover when he'd been dishonest, the way he name-dropped senior people to lend gravity to his lies. People who manipulate professionally tend to have rhythms. Once you know the rhythm, you can anticipate the beat. Ethan's rhythm was all about performance. He'd perform competence in public, humility in private when he wanted to coax, and outrage when he needed a scapegoat. He craved validation and audience to applaud his quick decisions. And he was lazy about the fine print. He would swagger through the room and forget the details. That combination ego plus sloppiness was my in. The plan was not to out-charisma him in the open. That would have been stupid. And also, I'm not him. My advantage was evident in the element of surprise. So I created roles for myself. Public Rachel, agreeable, occasionally flustered, deferential enough so Ethan would underestimate me. Private Rachel, meticulous, patient, and methodical. The first thing I did was perform. At meetings, I let him take the limelight. When he interrupted to explain something I already knew inside out, I nodded and asked a clarifying question that made him feel smart. "Oh, do you mean the Q3 sandbox reprioritization?" I'd ask, sounding genuinely puzzled. He'd puff up and walk me through the part I'd already documented, and the team would watch his confidence grow. In public, I repeated the scripted praise, a careful great framing, Ethan, or "thanks for walking us through that," even when that framing had erased my work. There were 2 reasons for this. 1, when you feed a manipulator validation, they relax. They stop checking the fine print. 2, when you act uncertain and deferential, your behavior looks less like a threat and more like someone trying to be helpful, which made HR and neutral parties less likely to trust the quiet person who later came forward. It's a strategic paradox. Behave less like a threat so the liar gets sloppy, then collect what he leaves behind. I started keeping everything in 3 formats: screenshots, timestamps, and witnesses. Screenshots were obvious. I grabbed versions of Google Docs, Slack threads, and calendar invites the moment they appeared. I used the download as PDF feature on anything that looked like it might get rewritten. I also learned to use the version history on Google Drive, that little menu that developers rarely look at. A document with changes shows a map of authorship. If someone edited my work and changed the tone, version history would show it. I took screenshots of each significant revision and annotated them. Those annotations read like a detective's notebook. Who changed what when and why the change mattered. Timestamps were gold. I screenshot emails with headers showing the send time and the time zone because Ethan liked to forward messages at odd times to reshape perceptions. I set up a simple habit. Every time a meeting invite came through, I checked the last edited metadata and saved it. It sounds obsessive, and it was. Obsession was required. Witnesses were the softest and most human of my tools. I started quietly reconnecting with people who'd been nudged away from me. The QA lead, Maya, who I'd once shared a donut and a rant with, was the first. We slipped into a short, private coffee chat, and she let me know she'd noticed the feature reprioritization and felt pressured by the unrealistic deadlines. She hadn't wanted to create waves. Who does? But she remembered things exactly the way I remembered them. The engineer, Omar, who had pushed back when asked to cut a safety step, confirmed he'd had his task reassigned without notice. Little confirmations like these turned into a chorus. None of them were dramatic. They were steady, quiet, and based on memory and procedure, everything Ethan had been trying to erode. The IT ally, Liam, was the most crucial. I met Liam through a late-night Slack thread about bad coffee in the kitchen. We bonded over a shared disdain for the vending machine. He's the kind of person who looks bored in photos and is terrifyingly precise when he speaks. After a few small favors, like asking if he could restore my local folder to an older version, we started to talk more. I didn't go into the whole Ethan is trying to ruin me saga at first. You don't do that. You ask a neutral question and you see if someone answers with competence and discretion. Liam's answer came over a sandwich at a food truck. You know you can recover deleted drive versions if you have the admin logs, right? And metadata never really dies. He said it like it was obvious, which of course made it obvious to me that he was the person I wanted on my side. He was careful. We met in off hours. He showed me how to pull audit logs and how to see every edit to a shared doc, even if someone tried to cover their tracks by saving over it. He taught me how to check the X headers in email to see the path a sent message took. He set up a secure folder on an external encrypted drive where I could save evidence without the risk of it being altered by others on the company network. I told him only what I needed to unblock the technical obstacles. He asked only what he needed to help. I trusted him because his work was the kind of quiet, exacting thing I understood at a professional reference level. With Liam's help, I recovered some of the edited docs I thought were gone. One version of our Phoenix pitch deck showed text I'd written about risk mitigation. The version Ethan circulated removed the risk section and swapped it for aggressive delivery claims. In the metadata, his account appeared as the editor who'd removed the caveats. In another instance, an internal email chain showed he'd asked a vendor to commit to a delivery date before our engineers even confirmed feasibility, and then later blamed the delay on unreliable partners. It was sloppy, and I loved that it was sloppy. I also started recording conversations legally gray territory depending on jurisdiction, but in my state, one-party consent is permitted. I wasn't cavalier about it. I audio recorded one-on-ones where he'd gaslight me, and I labeled every file with the date and topic. Those first recordings were short, mostly them offering some syrupy reassurance while contradicting it later. One audio I replayed enough times to memorize the cadence. In it, he said to my face, "You're reading too much into small things," and then later in an email, wrote he didn't recall any discrepancies. The recording and the email together were a small, delicious contradiction. The more I collected, the bolder I became in small ways. I let Ethan bask in his performance while I arranged the backstage. I complimented him in public like a skilled understudy. He loved it. He began to use me as a prop, the eager, slightly uncertain PM who needed to be guided. I played that role expertly because it made him careless. There was art to pretending to be less competent than you are. You can't overdo it. That would look like desperation. You keep the essentials tight. Always meet client expectations. Always deliver what's required to keep your credibility intact. The show is about underplaying while you gather the receipts. A turning point came at a company dinner, the sort of awkward, half-fancy meal where upper management clinks wine glasses and people talk in sentences they're reserved for LinkedIn. Ethan loved those events. He used them to knit himself into the narrative of leadership. He'd always been performative in public, and this night was no exception. We sat at a long table, the kind that forces closeness, and I took a seat opposite him because I like to watch people when they thought no one was watching. Halfway through a course I'd forget later, he started telling the story of the Phoenix project like it was his brainchild. He dropped names of people it supposedly started with and emphasized the audacity of the timeline he'd established. I saw him lean into the version of events that erased my authorship, no surprise. But then, in the fog of his storytelling bravado and with the wine loosening his tongue, he got careless. He laughed loudly and told a small, flippant anecdote about how easily people can be made to look incompetent when you nudge their calendars and reword their docs. The table went quiet for half a second, then someone laughed, and he winked like it was a joke. I was already recording. I had my phone face down, audio on, lap hidden by my blazer. The clip was shaky because I tried to look casual and failed, but you could hear the sentence clear as a bell. You'd be amazed how often someone will step out on their own when enough people start saying, Maybe you need a break. He chuckled, as though that was a cleverly cynical observation. He meant it as a joke. I'm sure he did. His words were a match. In them, I heard both the plan and the glee. It was the audacity of it that made my skin crawl and something in me ignite. That clip was the sort of thing that would be hard to dismiss. Out of context, it might sound like clumsy comedian banter. In context, alongside the email I'd found, the document edits, and the witness notes, it was an anchor. Proof not of miscommunication, but of intent. I copied it to my encrypted drive that night and sent Liam a one-line message. Save the dinner audio, he confirmed. Backed up, timestamps intact. With evidence stacking, I started to prepare the narrative I would tell, not publicly, but to the people who would be in a position to do something. Stories are how humans understand complex systems, and the story I needed to tell wasn't one of emotional distress alone, it was one of operational misconduct. The hard facts had to outnumber the emotions. So I practiced telling the story in operational terms. On these dates, this document changed from A to B. The metadata shows X. The consequence was Y. No rhetoric, no accusations without backup. The more I walked the facts through out loud, the calmer I felt. It's easier to be brave when you can point to something on a timeline and say, there, that's the lie. There were moments of real danger in this phase. Ethan sensed something. You can read people's micro adjustments. He asked me to stay late a few times and sat in the conference room while I worked. He'd offered to help me with the deck, and I'd let him rearrange a slide while my hand hovered over the keyboard with a screenshot already saved. He started asking questions about who had access to drafts. He inquired with prim interest about whether I'd shared my archive materials. Those questions were veiled threats. He was circling the good deer. I also became more visible and less isolated in small ways. I sent quick check-ins to my team that were mundane in tone. Quick sync at 10 to confirm deliverable owners, but had the effect of pulling people into small collaborative rituals where it would be awkward for Ethan to retcon the record. I never accused him in a meeting. I simply made the meeting notes thorough and public. I used the transparency he disliked as a weapon. If he changed an email, there would be a meeting note that said otherwise. If he tried to shift blame, there would be a timestamped reply that contradicted him. As the weeks passed, he got bolder and sloppier. His overconfidence was now almost contagious. He began to brag to colleagues about how he'd smoothed the Phoenix timeline and tightened the team. Once, in a hallway conversation meant for 3 p.m. but overheard by 3 people, he said, "Sometimes you have to encourage people to take a vacation, it's good for retention, and then things naturally reset." He laughed and added, "It's an art." That exact phrasing, "it's an art," started to thread through his offhand remarks, as if he were teaching a master class in sabotage. I collected these as well. The people who heard him, their recollections, and the times. People are unreliable as witnesses in isolation, but consistency from multiple people becomes hard to explain away. The more people who remembered the same bizarre, petulant phrase, the less plausible his joke defense became. There were small victories that felt more like breathing. A vendor who'd previously been coaxed into an unrealistic delivery spoke to me privately and confirmed Ethan had promised them a scope that didn't exist. The vendor did it awkwardly, not wanting to pick a fight with the person who wrote the check, but the nod was there. I had another engineer quietly provide his local repo logs showing that a commit had been removed that contained my original risk assessment. Those logs were technical, but they were clean. They smelled like truth. One night, I sat at my kitchen table and laid out printed versions of the evidence. The emailed line about me being an inconvenience, the screenshot of the deck edits, the transcript of Ethan's dinner quip, the chat logs showing who was looped out, and the statements from 3 colleagues. It looked like a messy file folder, but for the first time, it looked like a file folder that could do something instead of simply being a reliquary of my suffering. I called a lawyer friend not for litigation, not yet, but for counsel. She told me something that was both practical and oddly calming. You don't want to bring weapons to a negotiation. You want to bring receipts. That became a mantra. Receipts, receipts, receipts. I didn't want to move too fast. I'd seen rage make people sloppy. There was a temptation to run out to senior management and spill everything like a confession, hoping they'd be appalled enough to act. But institutions are messy. They like predictable, docile narratives. I needed an indisputable, coherent case that could survive the inevitable attempts to reframe it. And the best way to do that was to make my moves too boring and detailed to be dramatic. So I waited and gathered. I let him brag. I let him rewrite slides he thought no one saved. I let him micromanage while I saved his fingerprints. Towards the end of the quarter, it all started to line up. The vendor missed a deadline he'd promised, the engineer's removed commit caused a versioning problem, and the client asked for clarification on a claim Ethan had made that wasn't in the original scope. He tried to rely on charm in a client call, and in that call, he leaned heavily on a talking point he'd created. We are stepping in to lead delivery because of unforeseen obstacles. The client, irked, asked for specifics. Ethan sputtered and waved his hands. He looked human for the first time. Not the confident protagonist he'd staged himself as, but someone without the details. I didn't ambush him that day. I let it happen. He crumbled in small increments. The important part wasn't a spectacular collapse. It was a slow unspooling that made his pattern obvious. Standing in my apartment that night, I felt the odd mixture you get when a long conspiracy starts to look like a lined up set of dominoes, part dread, part exhilaration. I had the documentation, I had witnesses, I had technical logs that could tie intentions to actions. The man who'd spent weeks eroding my authority had left a trail of edits, quotes, and brags that pointed directly at him. But I still didn't strike. Not yet. There would be time for an elegant reveal. What I did instead was one more small, cold thing. I saved copies of everything in 3 places: the encrypted external drive, a secure cloud account only I could access, and with Liam's blessing, a redundant copy on a drive he kept entirely separate from the company network. The redundancy wasn't paranoia, it was prudence. People like Ethan sometimes respond unpredictably when cornered. Evidence disappears for reasons that aren't always technical. Redundancy meant safety. When I closed my laptop that night, I thought about how gaslighting works. It isn't about denying the existence of events, it's about reframing them so consistently that other people begin to accept the reframing. My job wasn't just to prove Ethan had lied, it was to reconstruct a version of events that could hold up to scrutiny. A narrative backed by timestamps, voices, and signatures. I had also fulfilled another small, private thing. I had reclaimed my own voice. Under the pressure, I'd almost lost it. Now, as I prepared to bring everything into focus, I felt something else grow, not violent, not loud, but a cold, purposeful conviction. Those close to me started to notice a different Rachel. Not defeated, not brittle, but quieter and more directed. Maya stopped offering those awkward, pitying overtures and instead sent me a message. If you want me at the meeting, I've got your back. Omar became more proactive in standing up for procedure. Small human gestures like that felt enormous. They were the difference between a solo battle and a collective correction. I imagined how it would feel when the pieces were finally laid in front of people who could act. I didn't picture a dramatic firing or an immediate victory speech. I pictured a careful, irreversible, unmasking a meeting where the facts would be irreversible because they would not be anecdote, but proof. I pictured Ethan, for once, being the person left trying to explain the chaos he'd manufactured. So I kept collecting. I kept pretending to be the small, deferential Rachel in public. I let him flinch himself into arrogance. I let him joke about making people take vacations. I let him think he'd warped the narrative beyond repair. He thought I was breaking down. What he didn't realize was that I was building a case strong enough to destroy him. I've replayed that morning in my head more times than I can count. The light was cold through my apartment blinds, the kind that makes everything look sharper, like the world itself was holding its breath for something to happen. I hadn't slept much the night before. Not because I was anxious, but because I was ready. For months, I'd been watching Ethan manipulate, twist, and sabotage me like it was his personal sport. For months, I'd been quiet, meticulous, letting him think he was winning. But that morning, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting, I was acting. And I had a 68-page document to prove it. Behavioral Manipulation and Project Misconduct, an Internal Review. That was the title on the cover page: simple, professional, devastating. Inside were 14 sections. Chronology of incidents. Every lie, date stamped. Document manipulation evidence. Screenshots, metadata, file paths. Witness statements from Maya, Omar, and 3 others. Audio transcripts. His "it's an art and temporary inconvenience" comments. Emails proving intent. HR negligence timeline. Recommendations for corrective action. It wasn't just an expose, it was a blueprint for accountability, and I wasn't sending it to HR. Not this time. HR had already taught me what they were good at: protecting the company, not the people. So I went higher. I scheduled an email delivery to the VP of Operations, the General Counsel, and the Chief People Officer, timed perfectly to arrive at 9 a.m., right as they sat down for the weekly executive sync. The best part, Ethan wasn't on the invite list. He'd actually bragged 2 weeks earlier that he was too busy for those bureaucratic Monday meetings. That arrogance was about to become the most poetic mistake of his career. When I clicked send, I didn't feel fireworks. I didn't feel adrenaline or revenge. What I felt was clarity. I sat back in my chair, sipped my coffee, and waited for the noise to start. It didn't take long. By 9:17 a.m., the first ping came in a direct Teams message from the VP's assistant. "Hi, Rachel. The VP would like to speak with you immediately. Can you join the call?" I joined. 5 faces were already there. VP of Ops, Legal, the Chief People Officer, and 2 compliance managers. Their expressions weren't confused. They were focused. "Rachel," the VP said, "we've reviewed the document you sent. I'll be honest, this is one of the most thorough internal reports I've seen in my 20 years here." Then came the question that mattered. "How long has this been going on?" I told them everything. Calmly, factually. Without anger or embellishment. They listened, really listened, for the first time in months. And when I finished, Legal leaned forward and said, "We'll be initiating a formal investigation immediately. Do not communicate this to anyone, including Mr. Price." I muted my mic for a second because I didn't trust myself not to laugh. It wasn't joy, it was relief. Months of self-doubt, gaslighting, and psychological warfare had built up into this quiet, beautiful payback moment. By noon, the company grapevine was buzzing. You could almost feel it through Slack. Random messages like, "Did you see what just happened?" and Ethan's account is locked, started trickling into private chats. By 2 p.m., his name vanished from our internal org chart. By 3 p.m., people noticed his desk had been cleared, suspended, pending investigation. And just like that, the king of manipulation had been pulled off the chessboard not by rumor or emotion, but by evidence. It wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. The next morning, Ethan broke his silence. He posted a long, defensive Slack message to the team, claiming he'd been targeted by internal politics and that a certain employee, G, wonder who, had misinterpreted collaboration as criticism. It was a masterclass in self-pity long enough to sound professional, bitter enough to sound guilty. Within minutes, screenshots of that message were being passed around. People weren't buying it anymore. He underestimated how much people had noticed. How many of them had seen him erase credits, shift deadlines, and humiliate people in meetings? He thought he'd built loyalty through charm. What he'd really built was quiet resentment. His rant only confirmed everything I'd written. That night, legal called to update me. Rachel, we've completed the initial phase. Your documentation matched independent server logs. Mr. Price has been found in violation of multiple internal codes of conduct, including falsification of records and professional misconduct. He wasn't just suspended anymore. He was done. HR tried to play cleanup after the fact, of course. They sent me a neutral-sounding message. We appreciate you coming forward. Please rest assured your concerns are being handled appropriately. There's no need to involve external channels. That's when I smiled because they still didn't get it. I didn't need them anymore. So politely, I forwarded the entire report plus HR's dismissal emails from months ago to the board of directors. My cover letter was 1 page long. To the board, this document outlines not only one individual's pattern of manipulation, but also a systemic failure by HR to address psychological harassment. I am submitting this for transparency, not vengeance. Because if a company allows gaslighting to replace accountability, it loses not only its people, but its integrity. I hit send at 11:42 a.m. By 3 p.m., the chief people officer requested a private meeting. By 5 p.m., HR was officially under audit. And for the first time since I joined Kinetic Labs, I felt like the truth wasn't just being heard, it was doing something. A week later, Ethan's termination notice went public. Following an internal review, Ethan Price is no longer employed at Kinetic Labs. We wish him well in his future endeavors. That was corporate speak for. We caught him, and we can't say how badly he screwed up. People whispered, of course. Some congratulated me privately. Others avoided me, unsure how to act around the woman who'd taken down a boss. I didn't blame them. In offices like ours, people are trained to survive, not to challenge power. But something shifted in that silence. It wasn't fear anymore. It was respect. Then came the meeting that would change everything. The VP of operations called me into his office, smiling in that careful way people do when they're about to give good news with corporate caution. Rachel, he said, we owe you an apology both personally and institutionally. What happened was unacceptable. You not only showed courage, but professionalism. The board has approved a new initiative around workplace accountability, and we'd like you to lead it. Lead it? I repeated. Yes. We're creating a mentorship and advocacy program focused on psychological safety, transparency, and protecting employees from the kind of behavior you experience. We want you to shape it. And that's how I became senior project director and founder of Project Compass, Kinetic Lab's first mentorship network for women navigating toxic work environments. The launch day of Project Compass was quiet, but meaningful. We held a small event in the same conference room where Ethan once lectured me about controlling emotions. Now, that room was filled with women and allies engineers, designers, analysts who shared stories of microaggressions, silencing, and slow, subtle gaslighting that mirrored my own. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. Every time one of them said, I thought it was just me, I felt that invisible bruise inside me fade a little more. We created workshops, partnered with HR, new HR, not the old guard, and started a reporting system where patterns of psychological manipulation could be documented and reviewed by multiple parties, not buried in bureaucracy. It became something bigger than me, a system for others to be believed before they broke down. And then, one day, months later, I saw Ethan again, not in person on LinkedIn. He'd updated his title to Independent Consultant Leadership Organizational Development. I laughed. Of course he did. There was something poetic about it. The man who once tried to rewrite reality, now branding himself as a leadership coach. I didn't message him, didn't comment, didn't need to, because somewhere, in a private legal folder at Kinetic Labs, my 68-page report still existed, timestamped, verified, permanent, and that was enough. People often ask if I forgave him. I don't think forgiveness is the right word. I just stopped letting him take up space in my head. He tried to define me by doubt to convince me my emotions, my instincts, and my memory couldn't be trusted. But what he really did was teach me precision. He forced me to learn how to fight smarter, quieter, sharper. He turned me into someone who knows exactly how gaslighters work and how to dismantle them piece by piece. That's not trauma. That's transformation. And if anyone reading this is in that kind of situation, if someone at work is making you question your sanity, listen closely. You're not too emotional. You're not overreacting. You are seeing something they want hidden. Document everything. Stay calm. Play long. And when the time comes, hit send. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's a 68-page PDF in an executive inbox that changes everything. He tried to make me doubt myself, but instead, he reminded me who I really am and what happens when you try to gaslight the wrong woman. Story 4. I built a startup from zero and outsmarted the people who doubted me. You know that weird silence that hangs in the air when people don't believe in you but are too polite to say it? Yeah, that's been the soundtrack of my life for most of my 20s. My name's Ryan Carter. I'm 32 now, but this story starts when I was 24, stuck in a small town in Ohio, working at a retail electronics store that smelled like burnt dust and broken dreams. My life was basically an endless loop of ringing up phone cases and convincing people they didn't need to buy the extended warranty. Every day I clock in, toss my backpack in the back room, and tell myself, this is temporary. But temporary had turned into years. When I wasn't at work, I'd sit in my sister's basement, my apartment, hunched over a half-broken laptop that wheezed louder than the store's air conditioner. That laptop held my dream, an idea I called Nexora, a digital platform that could bring all your work messages, documents, tasks into one unified space. Not just another chat app, something smarter, something alive. Everyone I talked to about it thought I was crazy. Melissa, my ex-girlfriend, told me, Ryan, you're not Steve Jobs. You don't even have a degree. Tyler, my old college roommate, laughed when I showed him my mock-ups. Dude, this looks like something a freshman made in a group project. Get a real job. Even Professor Klein, the one who taught entrepreneurship, 101, told me after class, ideas are cheap, Ryan. Execution requires discipline, and I don't think you have that yet. That line burned more than I'd admit, because he was right back then. I didn't. But here's the thing about being underestimated for too long. It either crushes you or it sets you on fire. My shifts ran from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sometimes later, if someone called in sick, I'd plaster on a fake smile for customers. While inside, my mind was somewhere else sketching UI layouts, thinking about how to build APIs, wondering if I could scrape together enough to pay for a domain name. One night, I remember closing up the store after a 12-hour day. It was snowing hard outside, that kind of icy Ohio snow that hits your face like tiny knives. My manager, Jeff, tossed me the keys and said, make sure the alarm's on. Corporate's checking logs this week. I nodded, locked up, and walked to my rusted-out Honda Civic, the one that coughed every time I started it. I sat there in the dark, watching the snow fall across the windshield, and thought about how I was wasting my time. 24 years old, and I was living like someone waiting for permission to begin. That night, I made myself a deal. 1 year. I'd give Nexora one real shot. If it failed, I'd move on. My sister Laura tried to be supportive. She was older, married, had a stable job at the local hospital. Ryan, she said one night while handing me leftovers, you can stay here as long as you need. Just don't forget to live. She didn't get it. I was living, just not in the way most people understood. My days were at the store. My nights belonged to Nexora. I learned to code by watching free tutorials on YouTube, reading documentation until 3 a.m., and sketching flowcharts on napkins. My desk lamp was dim, the paint on the basement walls was peeling, and there was a slow leak near the furnace that left the floor cold even in summer. But I didn't care. Some nights, I'd talk to myself. Okay, Ryan, this is the button layout. That connects to the message API. Yeah, clean, functional. There was a weird satisfaction in seeing something slowly take shape on the screen. It wasn't much just lines of code and placeholder boxes, but it was mine. Then came the day Melissa visited. She showed up unannounced, wearing that same smirk she had when she dumped me 2 years before. Wow, she said, looking around the basement. So, this is where the magic happens? I didn't even turn around. Something like that? I heard you're still doing that app thing, she said, crossing her arms. What was it called? Next something? Nexora, I said quietly. Right. You know Tyler just got promoted at Lumatech? He's leading a new project. Real salary, health benefits. I kept typing, pretending not to care, but every word felt like a punch to the ribs. That's great for him, I muttered. She leaned on the stair railing. Ryan, you're a smart guy, but come on, it's been years. You could be working somewhere decent instead of this. I finally looked at her. Melissa, I'm building something. It's not just an app. She sighed. You always say that, but people who make it, they already made it by now. That one hit deeper than I expected. After she left, I sat there, staring at my screen until the sun came up. And that's when I wrote down 3 words on a sticky note and taped it above my monitor. Proved them wrong. A few months later, I scraped together $75 to attend a local networking event in Columbus, full of small business owners and tech wannabes. I wore my one decent blazer and carried printouts of Nexora's concept slides like they were golden tickets. That's where I saw Tyler. He was surrounded by people, laughing, confident, sipping from a champagne glass like he belonged there. He spotted me almost immediately. Ryan Carter? Holy crap, man, you're still around? Yeah, I said, working on something big. Nexora. He laughed. Actually laughed. Oh my god, you're still doing that? I thought that idea died in college. A few people turned to look. I guess not, I said, trying to sound composed. Tyler grinned. That smug kind of grin only successful people have when they see someone they've outpaced. Listen, man, the app world's brutal. You need funding, traction, a team. You've got, what, a laptop and dreams? Some guy next to him chuckled. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Yeah, I said, but sometimes that's all you need. Tyler clapped me on the shoulder like I was a little kid. Sure, bro. Good luck with that. That night, I drove home in silence. No music, no thoughts, just humiliation looping in my head. I almost quit after that, almost. I remember sitting in the parking lot outside a diner, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I screamed, full on screamed until my throat burned. Years of frustration poured out all at once. When I finally calmed down, I looked up and saw the neon sign's reflection on my windshield, open 24 hours. And something about that hit me. The world doesn't stop for anyone. Not for me. Not for Tyler. If I wanted a different life, I'd have to take it. So I doubled down. Around that time, I reconnected with one of my old professors, not Klein, but Mr. Alvarez. He'd moved on to teaching at a community college nearby. I emailed him out of the blue, just asking if he'd look at my concept. To my surprise, he replied the next morning, "Come by my office, let's talk." When I showed him Nexora, he didn't laugh. He didn't sugarcoat either. "It's rough," he said. "Your UX flow is messy. Your backend isn't scalable," but he leaned back, studying the screen. "You have something here, Ryan, something most people don't. Persistence." That word stuck with me. As I got up to leave, he said, "You don't need validation, Ryan. You need conviction. The world rewards those who act like they belong before anyone else believes they do." I didn't fully understand it then, but that conversation rewired something in me. Weeks turned into months. My savings vanished. My job hours got cut. Bills piled up. One night, I stared at my paycheck, $417 after taxes. My rent to my sister was overdue. My car insurance was due in 2 days, and I had maybe $800 left in total savings. That's when it hit me. If I stayed, I'd drown slowly. If I left, I might crash instantly, but at least it'd be my crash. I grabbed a notebook and wrote one sentence. "If you don't bet on yourself now, no one ever will." The next morning, I quit my job. Jeff thought I was kidding. "You're quitting? For what? That app thing?" "Yeah," I said, "for that app thing." He shook his head, laughed, and handed me my last check. "Good luck, man. Just don't end up back here in a year." I smiled. "Don't worry, I won't." Packing up my sister's basement was strangely emotional. Every little object, the desk, the mug with dried coffee rings, the stack of napkins with sketches felt like a chapter closing. Laura stood by the door, arms crossed. "So, California?" she said. "California. With how much money?" "About $800 and a refurbished laptop." She blinked. "Ryan, that's insane." "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. "So is giving up." She didn't argue after that. She just hugged me tight. "You'd better make it worth it." That drive from Ohio to California was a blur. Cornfields, truck stops, cheap motels, and playlists that alternated between motivation and melancholy. Somewhere in Nebraska, my car broke down. I spent 6 hours at a mechanic's shop using their waiting room Wi-Fi to tweak code. The mechanic asked what I was working on. "Trying to build something that changes how people work," I said. He chuckled. "Ain't that what everyone says?" "Yeah," I replied, "but I actually mean it." When I finally reached the California border, my phone battery was at 4%, my wallet held $216, and my heart was on fire. The sun was setting over the highway, and for the first time in years, I felt free. No bosses, no mockery, no basement walls, just me, my dream, and the open road. That night, I parked near the beach, rolled down the windows, and stared at the Pacific. The wind smelled like salt and possibility. And for the first time, I whispered to myself, "They're going to remember my name." California didn't welcome me with open arms. It greeted me with overpriced gas, rent I couldn't afford, and a kind of loneliness I didn't know existed. When I first arrived in Los Angeles, I didn't have an apartment hell. I didn't even have a proper plan. I parked my beat-up Civic behind a 24-hour gym and told myself it was temporary. That word again. The same one I'd used back in Ohio. Except this time, there was no backup plan, no sister's basement, no steady paycheck, no safety net. Just me, my laptop, and a dream too stubborn to die. I'd wake up every morning to the sound of gym goers slamming weights or car alarms going off nearby. My morning routine was showering at the gym, changing in the locker room, and grabbing a black coffee from a gas station. Then I'd drive to public libraries, cafes, anywhere that offered free Wi-Fi and a wall outlet. That's where I lived, in the space between exhaustion and obsession. One afternoon, I stumbled into a small cafe in downtown Pasadena. The sign outside said Bean There Cafe. It wasn't fancy mismatched chairs, chalkboard menus, jazz music humming in the background, but it had two things I needed: strong Wi-Fi and cheap coffee refills. I ordered the smallest coffee they had and took a corner table near an outlet. My laptop was running on borrowed time. It overheated if I opened more than 3 browser tabs. As I was sketching Nexora's new dashboard layout, a voice interrupted me. "Is that Figma?" I looked up. A woman stood beside my table, holding a tray with empty mugs. Early 20s, hair tied back in a messy bun, a smudge of coffee foam on her apron. Her name tag read, Ava. "Yeah," I said, surprised. "You know design software?" She smiled faintly. "I'm a graphic designer, or I was, before I started making lattes for people who don't know what kerning is." I chuckled. "Well, if it helps, I actually do know what kerning is." That made her grin. "Then you're already better than 90% of my customers." That's how it started, a small conversation over coffee and mutual burnout. Over the next few weeks, I kept coming back, not just for the Wi-Fi, but because Ava would check in, curious about my progress. "So, still building the next big thing?" She'd tease. "Trying to," I'd reply. "Need a designer who works for tips and leftover muffins?" I thought she was joking at first, but she wasn't. Ava became my first collaborator unofficially at first. She'd sit with me after her shifts, sketching mock-ups for Nexora's interface on napkins. She had an eye for simplicity, the kind that made my clunky prototypes feel suddenly real. "You keep thinking like a coder," she'd say. "Users don't care how it works. They care how it feels." She was right. In return, I taught her basic front-end coding. We became a weird duo, me in thrift store hoodies, her in coffee-stained aprons, turning caffeine and frustration into late-night progress. Our workspace was a corner table in that cafe, long after closing hours. The owner eventually stopped kicking us out, probably because Ava promised to clean up afterward. The hum of the espresso machine became our soundtrack. The next few months were a blur of exhaustion and small victories. I took freelance coding gigs, off Craigslist fixing websites, debugging WordPress themes, building cheap landing pages. The pay was terrible, but it kept my car fueled and my stomach fed. At night, I'd watch free business lectures on YouTube. I didn't have an MBA, so I treated the internet like my university. I'd listen to people like Gary Vee, Simon Sinek, random TED Talks, anyone who could teach me how to turn code into cash flow. Ava would tease me sometimes. Another motivational video, "What's today's quote?" I'd grin. "Work until your idols become your rivals." She'd roll her eyes. Cheesy, but effective. I sent out pitch emails to every angel investor I could find. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Most never replied. The ones who did weren't kind. One investor actually wrote back, "You're not building a product, Ryan. You're building a fantasy. Silicon Valley's full of dreamers who think an app will change the world. Be realistic." I reread that email at least 10 times, each word carved a little deeper. But then Ava looked at me across our cluttered cafe table and said, "You know what that means, right?" "What?" "He looked long enough to care to insult you. That means he saw something." It was a twisted kind of encouragement, but it worked. Then came the night everything almost ended. I parked near a gym, like usual, planning to crash for a few hours before coding again. I left my laptop bag in the back seat, stupid, I know, and went inside. When I came back, the passenger window was shattered. My laptop was gone. All of it. Months of work, code, designs, prototypes, everything Ava and I had built. I stood there under the dim parking lot light, holding a handful of glass shards, trying to process it. My throat tightened. I didn't even have the energy to scream this time. I drove to the cafe and just sat outside, staring through the window at the table where we always worked. Ava found me there the next morning. "Ryan," she said softly, kneeling beside the car. I just shook my head. "It's gone." "Everything?" "Everything." She didn't try to comfort me with fake optimism. She just sat there quietly, her breath fogging up the window. "Finally," she said, "then we start over." Those 4 words pulled me back from the edge. We spent weeks rebuilding Nexora from scratch. Ava worked double shifts to afford a used laptop for me. I paid her back by freelancing nonstop, coding until my hands cramped. It wasn't perfect, but this time we knew what not to do. We were faster, smarter, more intentional. We turned the loss into a reboot. Our first real break came out of nowhere. Ava's cousin worked at a small university in Santa Cruz. They needed an internal communication platform for remote research groups. Ava pitched Nexora as a trial project unpaid at first. We spent nights polishing the demo until sunrise. I remember pushing the first build live at 4:37 a.m., watching the loading bar crawl across the screen. When it hit 100%, I whispered, "Please work." It did. A week later, the university's IT head emailed, "This is the cleanest interface we've seen in years. Tell your team good job." I laughed out loud. "Team," I said. "That's us, Ava." She raised her coffee mug like a toast. "To the team." That email became our first case study, our first validation. After that, things started moving not fast, but steady. We built a small website. Ava designed a sleek logo, a minimalist infinity symbol merged with an N. She said it represented connection without limits. We started getting inquiries, small startups asking about our platform, freelancers wanting access. Most didn't lead anywhere, but every new conversation was proof we were visible. Then came the tweet that changed everything. One of the university's professors tweeted a screenshot of Nexora's interface with the caption, "Whoever built this deserves funding. This is smoother than half the apps I use daily." That post got shared hundreds of times. Our website traffic exploded overnight. I refreshed the analytics so much my browser froze. For the first time, I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy after all. A week later, an email landed in our inbox. Subject: Startup Showcase San Francisco Invitation. It was from a small tech incubator hosting a demo day for emerging startups. They'd seen the tweet and wanted Nexora to participate. I remember staring at the screen, reading it over and over. "Ava," I whispered, "we got invited." "Invited to what?" "To prove ourselves." She laughed. "We don't even have funding. Doesn't matter. We don't even have matching shirts. Still doesn't matter." She smiled, shaking her head. "You're impossible." "Exactly," I said. "That's why we're going to make it." The night before the showcase, we stayed up in the cafe, polishing the final demo. It was nearly 2 a.m., the place empty except for the soft buzz of the refrigerator. Ava leaned back, rubbing her temples. "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it, all of this?" I looked at her, exhausted but certain. "Every damn second." She smiled faintly. "You really believe in this, don't you?" "I have to, because if I don't, no one will." She nodded slowly. then I'll believe in it too. I don't think I slept that night. My heart wouldn't let me. For the first time since leaving Ohio, I felt like everything. The humiliation, the rejections, the nights in my car was leading here. Tomorrow, Nexora would step into the light. And even if no one clapped, even if everyone laughed again, they'd have to look me in the eye this time. Because this wasn't just an idea anymore. It was real. It was alive. And I was ready. When I walked into that San Francisco showcase, I felt like an imposter wearing a thrift store blazer that didn't quite fit. My laptop bag was fraying, my shoes scuffed, and my demo version of Nexora was barely holding together with lines of duct-taped code and caffeine-fueled patches. But man, I'd never felt prouder of anything in my life. Ava and I had stayed up 3 nights straight in the Airbnb we were splitting with 2 other broke founders. The place smelled like ramen and ambition. When I saw the small Nexora banner she designed hanging behind our table, clean white background, minimalist logo tagline, work smarter, not scattered, I felt a weird spark of validation. This was it. My idea, born from humiliation in a small town basement, was finally here. And for once, I wasn't just some retail dropout with big talk and no backing. The event was chaos. Rows of booths lined up in a hotel ballroom, filled with tech chatter, buzzwords flying like drones. AI powered this, blockchain integrated that. Investors with manicured smiles floated around with cold brew in one hand and checklists in the other. Ava nudged me. "Don't forget to breathe, Carter. You look like you're about to pass out." I laughed nervously. "If I faint, just drag me near the free Wi-Fi and tell people I'm running a stress test." She rolled her eyes. "You joke too much when you're nervous. Just be you. You built something amazing. Own it." I didn't feel amazing. I felt like every imposter syndrome meme had manifested into my bloodstream. Still, when the first curious person stopped by our booth, a grad student who'd been struggling to coordinate remote research teams, I flipped open the laptop and started the demo. Nexora's dashboard loaded smoothly for once, and the student leaned in. "Whoa, this actually looks intuitive," he said. "It's like Notion and Slack had a baby." Ava grinned. "Exactly what we were going for." That small comment was enough to make all those sleepless nights worth it. We started getting more traffic. A few tech bloggers snapped photos, and one local reporter asked for a quote. For a few blissful hours, I forgot every failure that had led me here. Nexora wasn't just a dream anymore. It was alive, breathing, clicking, syncing, connecting. Then I heard that laugh, that unmistakable, cocky laugh that used to echo through my old dorm hall. "Ryan Carter? No freaking way." I froze before I even turned. Tyler McConnell, my old roommate from Ohio State. The guy who'd once told me I was too naive to survive in tech. The guy who mocked my prototype in front of everyone and called it a glorified group chat. And now he was here, wearing a $1,000 blazer, a badge that said Senior Product Lead, Collab Space, and a grin that could curdle milk. He spread his arms like we were old pals. "Dude, it's been forever. I heard you moved out west but figured you'd end up flipping burgers, not pitching software. Holy crap. Look at you." Every instinct screamed to walk away, but he was blocking the booth and people were watching. "Yeah," I said evenly. "Still working on Nexora? It's come a long way." He leaned over my laptop, scrolling through the demo with mock fascination. "Nice interface, clean, but collaboration tools, team messaging, cloud integration? You sure this hasn't been done already?" Ava's jaw tightened. "It's not just another tool," she said coolly. "It's an ecosystem. Seamless sync across devices with adaptive task routing." Tyler smirked at her. "Wow, big words for a... What are you? The intern?" Ava didn't flinch. "Co-founder." For a brief moment, his smirk faltered. Then he chuckled. "Didn't mean to offend. You two are adorable. Listen, no hard feelings, right? You should stop by our booth later. Collab Space is doing something similar. Maybe we can swap notes." He clapped me on the shoulder and strolled off, leaving a trail of expensive cologne and bad memories. Ava muttered, "Who was that jerk?" "Someone who used to think he was smarter than everyone," I said. "And honestly, he probably still does." We worked the rest of the day like machines. Every time I started to feel drained, I'd glance at Ava sketching on her tablet, pitching to investors, smiling through exhaustion, and it'd reignite my focus. That night, as the event wound down, Tyler showed up again. This time, his tone was different, polished, almost friendly. "Ryan," he said, "I checked out your product more carefully. You've got something solid here. I was too harsh earlier, old habits. Listen, Collab Space is expanding. We've got investor backing from Dire Capital. Maybe we could collaborate? I'd love to see your back-end architecture." Ava immediately looked suspicious, but I, like an idiot, felt flattered. This was the same investor group that had ghosted me last year. If Tyler had their ear, maybe I could get Nexora noticed. "Sure," I said cautiously. "I can send you a sandbox demo build. Just the front end, though." He smiled. "Perfect. Let's stay in touch." A week later, Nexora's world came crashing down. I woke up to a flurry of notifications, texts from Ava, Twitter mentions, emails from users. "Ryan, check this. Now." Collab Space had just launched Collab Sync, a new integrated productivity platform. Their promo video looked exactly like Nexora's, same layout, same workflow animation, even the same slogan phrasing. I sat frozen, my coffee going cold. They'd stolen it, all of it. I clicked through their features tab and felt sick. They'd copied entire UI patterns from my sandbox demo. Even the color gradients were the same. Ava called, her voice trembling with rage. "That snake ripped you off. I told you not to trust him." "I didn't send him source code," I muttered weakly. Just the demo build. Maybe it's coincidence. Coincidence my ass, she snapped. He cloned your idea and got his investors to back it. You've been robbed. And just like that, the air went out of Nexora. Investors who had been circling us went silent. Our pitch follow-ups were ghosted. Users drifted to Collab Sync's shinier, well-funded version. Within a week, Nexora was a sinking ship. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think. All I saw was Tyler's smug grin every time I closed my eyes. When Ava stopped by the co-working space, I was staring blankly at my codebase. Ryan, you need to eat something, she said softly. What's the point? I muttered. They won. We're done. She slammed her hand on the desk, startling me. No, they haven't. They have money. We have fire. I stared at her, tears threatening. Ava, no. Listen to me. She crouched down so we were eye level. They stole what we had, not who we are. You built Nexora because you believed in something bigger than a paycheck. So stop letting some corporate douchebag define your worth. That broke something inside me in the best way. The next morning, I woke up to chaos on Twitter. Users were complaining that Collab Sync was glitching out. Tasks weren't saving, chats were disappearing. Someone posted screenshots comparing Nexora and Collab Sync side by side, captioned, "Looks like Collab Space stole their homework and forgot to proofread." That post went viral. Within 48 hours, Reddit had exploded with threads dissecting the Collab Sync scandal. Developers, UI designers, and even journalists started calling them out for theft. Someone even tagged me directly, at @RyanCarter_dev. Is this your original project? I hesitated for hours before replying. Finally, I just wrote, yes, we built Nexora long before Collab Sync. We were small, they were big, but code doesn't lie. That tweet got 40,000 likes. Suddenly, we were the underdog heroes. The small team crushed by greedy giants but still fighting. Ava looked at me that night, eyes shining. You realize the internet just sided with you, right? I nodded slowly. Then let's give them a reason to keep rooting for us. We went nuclear. Every ounce anger, humiliation, and betrayal got poured into rebuilding Nexora faster, stronger, better. We called it Nexora 2.0. Ava redesigned the entire UI in a week, sleek and minimalist. I recoded the back-end architecture from scratch, cutting the bloat that had slowed us down before. We didn't sleep much. The city outside blurred into neon streaks through coffee-stained windows. But for the first time in months, I felt alive. When we relaunched, it wasn't quiet this time. Dozens of influencers, dev YouTubers, and even tech journalists posted about Nexora 2.0, built by the little guys who got robbed and came back stronger. Collab Space tried to save face, but their bug-riddled product was imploding. Customers migrated to Nexora in droves. Within a month, we hit 10,000 active users. One night, while watching the numbers climb, my inbox pinged. The sender name made my heart skip. Michael Dyer, Dyer Capital. Subject line. Let's talk about Nexora. I just sat there for a minute, staring at the screen. The same investor group that ghosted me that backed Tyler was now reaching out to me. Ava peeked over my shoulder. Is that who I think it is? I nodded slowly. Yeah, the same guys who said I wasn't building a product. She smirked. Guess they were wrong. I took a deep breath and typed back. Happy to chat. Just know, we're not the same people you ignored last year. I don't know what tomorrow holds. Maybe Dyer Capital's offer will be another trap. Maybe it'll be the door that finally opens. But I do know one thing. When Tyler tried to crush me, he didn't realize he was just compacting the pressure that forged me. Because when you've already been humiliated, starved, and stolen from what's left to fear, I'm not the nobody they laughed at anymore. I'm Ryan Carter, and I'm just getting started. When I walked into the Dyer Capital office, it wasn't with a laptop full of desperate ideas or a resume begging for validation. It was with proof. Proof that every sleepless night, every rejection, every humiliating smirk from the people who told me I'd never make it had built something real, something undeniable. And honestly, it felt surreal. The glass doors parted like a movie scene. I was wearing a tailored navy suit, not flashy, but fitted, clean, confident. Ava had picked it out, saying, if you're going to make them eat their words, at least look delicious while doing it. I couldn't argue. The receptionist smiled and offered me a coffee. Mr. Dyer will see you shortly, Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter. I still wasn't used to people calling me that. A year ago, I was sleeping in my car outside a 24-hour gym, washing up in the locker room and coding on a dying laptop. Now, I was sitting in one of San Francisco's top venture capital firms, waiting to discuss a potential 8-figure deal. The conference room was sleek walnut table, panoramic city view, abstract art that probably cost more than my first car. Ava sat beside me, calm as always, her hair tied in a neat bun. She caught my nervous glance and whispered, they need us more than we need them. Remember that. Before I could respond, the door opened. Michael Dyer himself walked in gray suit, calm energy, that effortless authority that only comes from decades of turning small ideas into empires. Ryan Carter, he said, shaking my hand. Quite the story you've built. Thanks, I replied. It's been a journey, he chuckled. That's one way to put it. I've seen a lot of founders. Not many rise from public humiliation to market relevance in under 2 years. You've got resilience, investors like that, Ava smirked slightly, and users like Nexora. Dyer leaned back in his chair. Let's talk numbers. The next 2 hours felt like a blur of questions, metrics, projections, and deep dives. I'd practiced every answer for week's retention rate, growth curve, revenue trajectory, but more than that, I spoke from something no spreadsheet could capture: conviction. When Dyer asked what made Nexora different, I didn't talk about features. I talked about purpose. I built Nexora for people like me, I said. People who work harder than anyone notices, who juggle side hustles, deadlines, families, and still feel behind because communication is broken. Nexora isn't just software, it's structure for the chaos. There was a long silence. Dyer tapped his pen thoughtfully, then finally smiled. I like founders who bleed their mission, he said. You remind me of the early Slack guys. Hungry, focused, and too stubborn to quit. He stood, extended his hand again. Let's make it official. 10 million, Series A. For a moment, I didn't move. $10 million. My hands trembled as I shook his. Ava squeezed my arm under the table, whispering, "We did it, Ryan. We did." After years of being laughed at, ghosted, and robbed, we'd finally been seen. The months that followed felt like living inside a movie montage. Nexora exploded. We opened offices in San Francisco, Austin, and London. Ava officially became my co-founder and chief design officer. Our team grew from 2 overworked dreamers to 50 brilliant minds. I stopped coding every line myself, which felt strange at first, but I learned to lead, to trust, to delegate. Journalists started calling us the underdog story of the decade. One even wrote, Nexora didn't just compete with the big players, it rewrote the playbook. I still remembered what it felt like to be dismissed though. Every success, every new milestone, I carried that memory with me like armor. A year later, I stood backstage at the Global Tech Summit in Las Vegas, about to give the keynote speech. I was 30 years old, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was chasing anyone. I was the standard. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Nexora, the company redefining productivity, Mr. Ryan Carter. Applause thundered as I walked on stage under the glare of 100 spotlights. The crowd stretched into infinity: developers, founders, investors, media. My hands didn't shake, my heart didn't race, because I'd already faced worse than 1,000 eyes. I looked out over the crowd, took a breath, and began. When I started Nexora, I was living in my sister's basement in Ohio. I didn't have funding, connections, or a fancy degree. I had a laptop that overheated every hour and a dream everyone laughed at. A ripple of laughter, sympathetic, knowing. They told me I wasn't smart enough, rich enough, or connected enough, and for a while, I believed them, until I realized being underestimated was my superpower. That line hit. People leaned forward, cameras flashed. I talked about failure, betrayal, resilience, not as buzzwords, but as real scars. I told them about the long nights coding in parking lots, about losing my laptop in a break-in, about how Ava kept me from quitting when everything fell apart. I ended with, success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right. The room erupted. I didn't smile right away. I just looked out and let it sink in. That sound, the applause, it wasn't noise. It was the echo of every moment I'd almost given up. And then, in the middle of that roaring sea of faces, I saw him, Tyler, sitting near the back, slouched, unshaven, eyes tired. For a split second, the memories flashed his mockery, his betrayal, his stolen code. But this time there was no anger, just closure. After the speech, I saw him standing awkwardly by the exit as people crowded around me for handshakes and photos. He didn't approach, just nodded once, like a silent acknowledgement that the tables had turned. And maybe that was enough. Later that evening, during the after party, I stepped out onto the hotel balcony to breathe. The desert skyline shimmered in the distance. A familiar voice behind me said, Ryan Carter, the tech world's favorite redemption story. I turned. Melissa, the ex who'd once told me, you should get a real job before you embarrass yourself further. She looked exactly like I remembered, perfectly composed, confident, still wearing that self-satisfied smile. Wow, she said, taking a sip of her champagne. You really made it. Nexora's everywhere. Yeah, I said calmly. It's been a wild ride. She hesitated, then added softly, I was wrong about you, you know. I thought you were chasing a fantasy. Guess I just couldn't see what you saw. I smiled politely. You weren't supposed to. It wasn't your vision. There was a long pause. Then she said, almost wistfully, maybe we should catch up sometime. Dinner, just as friends. For a moment, the younger version of me, the one who'd been dumped and humiliated, might have jumped at the chance. But that guy didn't exist anymore. I smiled faintly. Thanks, Melissa, but I've got a lot on my plate. I turned and walked away before she could reply. That was my real victory. Not money, not fame, just peace. A few months later, Nexora hit $1 billion valuation. We celebrated in our new San Francisco headquarters, glass walls, rooftop view, the kind of place I used to dream about while coding in basements. Ava raised a glass of champagne. To the basement kid who refused to quit, I laughed. To the designer who kept him sane. We toasted, laughing, knowing how far we'd come from sharing one beat-up laptop and cups of cold coffee to running an empire. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I went up to the penthouse balcony, the one overlooking the bay, where the city lights shimmered like constellations of ambition. I thought about everyone who doubted me. Tyler, Melissa, my old professor, every investor who said no. But I didn't feel anger, just gratitude. Because if they hadn't underestimated me, I wouldn't have learned how to build myself. I didn't build Nexora to prove them wrong. I built it to prove I was right about myself. And in the quiet hum of the city, I realized something: revenge isn't loud. It's silent. It's walking past your past without needing to look back. These days, I run a scholarship fund under a pseudonym, helping kids from small towns who have big dreams but no means. Sometimes I scroll through the applications and see pieces of myself in their essays, the doubt, the hunger, the spark. I never tell them who I am. I just fund them and whisper under my breath, "Go prove yourself right." And that's how the story ends, not with fireworks, not with vengeance, but with peace. Because the truth is, the best revenge isn't success itself. It's becoming the person they never thought you could be and realizing you never needed their approval in the first place. Story 5. Going viral ruined my life, but I found a way to fight back. Hey Reddit, I don't even know why I'm typing this. Maybe because I can't sleep again. Maybe because the silence feels like it's choking me and the only place left that doesn't already hate me is an anonymous forum full of strangers. My name's Tasha Rivera. I'm 24. I live, or I used to live, in a tiny studio apartment in Los Angeles that always smelled faintly of burnt coffee and lavender spray. Until 6 months ago, I was a freelance video editor and a small-time YouTuber. You probably wouldn't have known my name then, but now you might have seen me. Maybe you remember the headline, "Crazy ex-girlfriend freaks out on camera." Yeah, that was me. The internet made sure I couldn't forget it even if I wanted to. It was a Tuesday morning when my phone started buzzing nonstop. I thought maybe one of my clients needed a last-minute cut done, because that's the kind of life I had. Coffee, editing, and deadlines that blurred days together. But when I unlocked my phone, I saw hundreds of notifications, texts, mentions, DMs, missed calls. At first I didn't understand. The first message that caught my eye was from my friend Leah. "Tash, are you okay? Don't look at Twitter." So of course I looked. And there it was, a 30-second clip of me screaming through tears. "You think you can just play with people's emotions like this? You're sick, Jason." Then a cut. My face twisted, mascara running, voice cracking. Caption, "When the crazy ex can't let go." It already had 1.8 million views. I can still remember the exact sound my body made when I dropped the phone, somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might actually be having a panic attack, because that clip wasn't from a vlog or a live stream or anything public. It was from a recorded therapy session. Private, confidential. Jason and I had been doing couples therapy before we broke up. We agreed to record sessions so we could rewatch them and track progress. I kept copies on an external drive, locked behind a password. I thought he deleted his. Apparently not. Seeing it online, stripped of context, edited to make me look like a psychotic drama queen, it felt like watching my own execution go viral. Within hours, my email was flooded with messages. Half of them called me names I won't repeat. The other half wanted interviews or reaction videos. The meltdown girl, the toxic girlfriend, the perfect example of emotional abuse. People analyzed my tone, my posture, my breathing. Strangers decided what kind of person I was based on 30 seconds. By that evening, 3 of my ongoing editing clients canceled contracts due to brand image concerns. My YouTube collab partners stopped replying to texts. Even my landlord called asking if everything was okay because some folks from TMZ were outside. I sat on the kitchen floor, knees to my chest, phone face down, and stared at the little crack in the tile by the fridge. I don't know how long, maybe hours, maybe the whole night. When I finally opened my phone again, the clip had hit 12 million views. There were remixes, memes, slow-mo versions with dramatic music. One account even sold merch with my face and the quote, "You're sick, Jason," printed in neon pink. Do you know what it feels like to have your worst moment become someone's favorite punchline? It's like watching pieces of your life sold for laughs, except you don't even get a share of the profits. For a week, I barely ate. I shut every blind, muted every notification. I thought about leaving LA, maybe moving back in with my mom in Nevada. But she called and said, "Sweetheart, maybe you thought you should just stay offline for a while." She didn't understand. Offline didn't exist anymore, not when your face was everywhere. The only person I wanted to talk to was Jason. I needed to hear him say it wasn't him, that it was a hack, a mistake, anything. So I called. He picked up on the third ring, sounding half asleep and half annoyed. "Tasha, what do you want? You posted it, didn't you? What are you talking about?" "The clip, Jason. That was our therapy video. It's all over the internet." "How the hell?" Whoa, slow down. I didn't post anything. Why would I?" His voice was calm, too calm. "Then who had access, Jason?" "I deleted those months ago." "Bullshit. It had your watermark in the corner. The file name even had your initials." There was silence. Then, "Tasha, I think you need help. Don't call me again." Click. I stared at the screen until it went dark. For the next few days, I tried to report the video everywhere. But you can't kill something that's already gone viral. Every time a platform took it down, 5 copies popped up somewhere else. Reaction YouTubers debated whether I was mentally ill or manipulative. TikTok turned my voice into a sound trend. I learned the internet loves an easy villain, especially one who cries pretty. Then one night, about 2 weeks after it all started, I saw something that made my stomach drop even further. Harper Lane, the influencer queen of pastel aesthetics and boss babe quotes, had uploaded a video titled, "My Thoughts on the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Situation." I used to admire Harper. I'd even edited a short reel for her months earlier, unpaid, just for exposure. She had 10 million followers and a reputation for being authentic. In the video, she spoke softly, pity in her eyes. "Guys, mental health is important. I don't condone what Tasha did, but let's send her compassion. Then she smiled. Anyway, if you've ever dealt with a toxic ex, my new merch line just dropped. That was when something clicked. Harper had somehow gotten the clip before most of the public had. I remembered seeing her username among the first commenters on the viral post, right before it exploded, and Jason had done multiple collaborations with her in the past. I started connecting dots that didn't want to be connected. The more I looked, the worse it got. Harper's PR manager followed Jason on Instagram. A gossip page that first posted the clip tagged both of them in another story days later, laughing about free promo. Coincidence? Maybe. But my gut said otherwise. I called Dylan, my old friend from college, the guy who once built a whole app to track plagiarism in video projects. I hadn't spoken to him in almost a year. Dill, I need help, I said. My voice was shaking. You sound awful, Tash. What happened? Someone leaked a private video. I think it's Jason and Harper. Can you trace an upload? He hesitated. Maybe. Send me everything you've got. That was the first sliver of hope I'd felt in weeks. While Dylan started digging, I tried to salvage what was left of my life. But you can't rebuild when every Google search of your name spits back hate compilations. One coffee shop I used to edit at asked me not to come in anymore because some customers recognized you and felt uncomfortable. I felt radioactive. At night, I'd scroll through my DMs, half expecting an apology that never came. Instead, there were threats. Creepy men offering forgiveness in exchange for nudes. One message just said, "You deserve every bit of this." I thought about deleting everything, every account, every trace of Tasha Rivera, but the damage was already fossilized on the internet. Then Dylan called back. I found something. Tell me it's good. The first upload of that clip wasn't random. The metadata points to a PR distribution firm called Maple Media. Who the hell are they? Harper Lane's representation. My stomach turned. He sent screenshots. The file name matched Jason's old folder naming style. He always used his initials plus the date. And Maple Media's internal timestamps showed they received the clip a week before it went public. So Harper's team had it before anyone else, before I even knew. That night, I opened a blank document trying to write an explanation post, something to tell the world the truth. But halfway through, I stopped, because I knew they wouldn't believe me. No one ever believed the villain's version. Instead, I watched Harper post another brand deal, smiling into the same camera that had probably captured my ruin. Jason liked it within seconds. I realized this wasn't some misunderstanding. It was deliberate. Someone wanted me gone, erased, humiliated, maybe even replaced. And I wasn't going to let them win. But that part, the fight that came later. For now, this is where it began. The morning a 30-second clip turned my life into public property. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to go viral for the wrong reason, it's like dying, but your ghost has Wi-Fi. Everyone talks to it, everyone mocks it, and it can read every comment, but it can't touch anything real anymore. That's what I became. A ghost with an internet connection. And somewhere out there, the people who did this to me were laughing, counting their clicks. I didn't know it yet, but that clip wasn't just a scandal. It was step one in a plan to destroy me. And soon, I was going to find out just how deep that plan went. It's 2:47 a.m. again. The glow of my laptop screen feels like interrogation lighting. I keep scrolling through the same folders, the same screenshots, as if one more look will make the truth hurt less. After Dylan told me about Harper's PR firm, I couldn't stop shaking. It wasn't relief. It was rage that felt too big for my skin. Someone had turned my pain into content, sold it like an ad slot, and they were probably sipping champagne over the engagement numbers. The next morning, I dragged myself to Dylan's apartment downtown. He's the kind of guy who lives in organized chaos. Half-finished hardware projects everywhere, coffee cups with wires sticking out of them. When I walked in, he pushed aside a monitor and said quietly, "Tasha, you need to see this." On his screen was an internal email thread between Maple Media staff. Subject line, "Potential viral asset emotional X breakdown." The sender, Mara Collins, Harper Lane's PR manager. They were talking about me like I was a file to be exploited. We can spin this into a narrative about female emotional volatility. Good engagement from both sides. Jason Reed has agreed to provide context if needed. Let's coordinate with Harper for reaction content next week. I remember whispering, they coordinated it. Dylan nodded grimly. They planned it like a campaign. Over the next days, Dylan kept digging. Every new discovery was another knife. Bank transfers between Jason and Maple Media labeled as consulting fees. A shared Dropbox containing raw clips from multiple leaks. They weren't just ruining me. They'd done this before. There was a girl named Celeste Nguyen whose drunken rant video had blown up last year. Turns out it came from the same firm. She'd vanished from social media 2 months later. Another small creator, an artist who supposedly scammed fans. Same firm, same patterns. Maple Media didn't just manage influencers. They manufactured villains for them. Harper's whole brand was built on relatable reactions to drama. They made the chaos. She capitalized on cleaning it up. The more I learned, the more paranoid I became. My inbox filled with anonymous messages. "Stop digging. You think you're the first? We own your name now." Then my Google Drive got locked for suspicious activity. 2 of my past clients messaged that someone claiming to be me sent them viruses. My phone glitched whenever I typed Jason's name. It felt like being haunted by a digital ghost that always stayed one step ahead. Dylan set up a secure system, encrypted drives, burner emails, but even he looked spooked. "You're poking a bear, Tash," he said. "That bear ruined my life," I snapped. "Yeah, but this bear hires lawyers." He wasn't wrong. 2 days later, I received a cease and desist letter from Maple Media accusing me of defamation. They claimed I was spreading false information about Harper Lane. It was pure intimidation, but it worked. My chest ached every time I opened my email. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I could barely afford rent. Still, I couldn't stop, because underneath the fear was something sharper: clarity. They had turned me into a caricature to keep their empire running. And if I stayed silent, I'd just become another ghost in their archive. I decided to see them face to face. Jason posted that he'd be speaking on a panel for ethical influence. The irony made me laugh out loud. I waited until the event ended, then followed him to the parking garage. He jumped when he saw me. "Tasha, you leaked it," I said. "You're still on that?" "I have proof now," he scoffed, eyes flicking toward the elevator cameras. "You shouldn't be here." "Why? Scared your new friends might see the monster you built?" For a second, guilt flickered behind his expression, then vanished. "You did this to yourself," he said. "They paid you, Jason. There's a receipt." He froze. Then quietly, "You don't understand how this world works." Before I could respond, a woman's voice echoed through the garage. "Jason, everything okay?" Harper Lane. Perfect hair, designer trench, fake concern painted on. When she saw me, her smile barely faltered. "Oh, Tasha, I hoped you were getting help." "You mean legal help? Because I might need it. For you." Her lips curved. A predator's amusement. "You really think anyone would believe you?" I held up my phone recording. "Maybe not yet, but they will." I walked away shaking. The video wasn't a smoking gun, but it was enough to prove they'd spoken. Dylan helped clean the audio, amplify Harper's whisper to Jason, make sure she doesn't talk to anyone. That line became my lifeline. But I also knew releasing it now would backfire. The internet still saw me as unstable. If I dropped evidence without context, they'd twist it again. I needed to understand the whole machine before I exposed it. So I kept watching. I created burner accounts, followed Harper's circles, joined influencer discords, pretending to be an aspiring content manager. What I found made me sick. They traded scandals like currency. Leaking a minor controversy could boost engagement by 300%. PR teams collaborated to script fake breakups, rehab arcs, apologies. Real people's lives were collateral damage. Harper wasn't the only one doing it. She was just the most polished face of it. And behind every polished face was Mara Collins, the quiet operator who pulled strings and sent NDAs to keep mouths shut. I managed to get into one of her Zoom webinars. Fake identity, fake company. She spoke with chilling calm. Perception is reality. Control the narrative, and you control the market. That was when I realized they didn't just make me look like a monster. They believed monsters sold better. One night, as I reviewed another archive Dylan decrypted, I noticed something different. An unreleased document labeled Project Echo. Inside were screenshots of my DMs with friends, private conversations I'd never shared publicly. They'd hacked me months before the leak. They'd been watching, waiting for the perfect emotional eruption to record. I felt physically sick. All those late night talks, every vulnerable message had been bait. When I told Dylan, he clenched his fist. "We can nail them with this." "Not yet," I said. "If I go public now, they'll spin it. Then what? We play their game, we make them feed themselves." He looked confused. I didn't even fully understand what I meant yet, but I knew the internet's hunger. It devoured villains, but it worshipped redemption arcs even more. The next few weeks were a blur of anxiety and planning. I moved to a sublet under another name after someone started following me home from the grocery store. My credit card kept flagging suspicious purchases I hadn't made. Every night, I'd type half a confession post, then delete it, because the truth wasn't ready. I needed proof that couldn't be twisted. And then, out of nowhere, an opportunity dropped into my lap. Harper posted an Insta story about her upcoming brand collab dinner. Private event, limited guest list. The location tag was visible for just 2 minutes before she deleted it. I knew that restaurant. Dylan lived 5 blocks away. I borrowed one of his old lavalier mics, dressed like a catering assistant, and walked in like I belonged. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the tray I carried. From behind a floral arrangement, I saw Harper and Jason laughing at a corner table. Mara Collins sat beside them, her phone on the table recording behind-the-scenes content. Then I heard Harper say, "Honestly, the Tasha thing was perfect timing. Jason played the pity card, I did the empathy angle. Numbers went crazy." Jason laughed. "People love a good meltdown." It's sad, but true. Every word recorded. My heart raced. I kept still until the dinner ended, then slipped out before anyone noticed. In my pocket, the raw confession that would finally burn them. When I played the audio for Dylan, he exhaled sharply. "This is it. You could ruin them." "Not yet," I said again. Because I understood something horrifying and empowering at once. If I just exposed them, it would become another piece of content. Another viral scandal they'd twist into sympathy for themselves. If I wanted justice, I had to turn the whole system inside out, to make the machine choke on its own algorithms. I wasn't the monster they created, but maybe I could become the monster they feared. And that's when the idea started forming, the one that would change everything. It's weird how silence can feel louder than any hate comment. After everything that happened, being branded the crazy ex, watching my career die, realizing Harper and Jason had practically built their fame off my humiliation. You'd think I'd have screamed, posted, gone nuclear. But I didn't. For weeks, I just stopped. I'd stare at my laptop screen, open Twitter, and then close it. Scroll through YouTube and watch the same stupid reaction videos of influencers pretending to feel sorry for me. The irony? They were making ad money off the video that destroyed me. Every click fed the machine. Every meme about my meltdown paid someone's rent, and I was broke. I didn't even recognize the person in the mirror anymore. Puffy eyes, greasy hair, dark circles from nights spent reading hate threads. I kept wondering, why did people enjoy this? Why did turning someone's pain into content feel like entertainment? Then I realized something. Maybe they didn't enjoy it. Maybe they were addicted to it. That thought hit me harder than anything else, because addiction, clicks, outrage, dopamine, is exactly what people like Harper fed on. They didn't ruin lives by accident. They designed chaos. And if I ever wanted to fight back, I had to understand the system that ate me alive. I started studying. Like, obsessively. I watched videos about YouTube's algorithm, TikTok's engagement cycles, PR crisis management, social media psychology, everything. My nights blurred into mornings. I filled notebooks with patterns, best upload times, audience retention curves, emotional triggers. It was disturbing how predictable humans were online. If you made someone angry, they'd comment. If they commented, engagement rose. If engagement rose, reach exploded. The more chaotic, the more profitable. I wasn't just a victim of cancel culture. I was an investment. Once that sunk in, I stopped crying, because that meant if I could manipulate emotions the same way, I could rebuild myself, and maybe even destroy the people who built empires off my pain. So I created a new identity. Not Tasha, the crazy ex, not the sad YouTuber with tearful apology videos. I became Ghost Frame. It was the kind of name that felt edgy enough to trend but vague enough to stay hidden. The profile picture was an abstract glitch face. No voice, no gender, no hint of me. My first video was titled, "The Secret Business of Viral Scandals. You're the Product." It opened with a distorted voiceover and quick cut edits, clips of fake influencer apologies, paparazzi moments, tweet threads. I explained how outrage sells, how entire PR firms manufactured leaks to boost engagement, and how victim narratives are planned months in advance. It wasn't personal yet, but it blew up. Within a week, I hit 400,000 views. By the end of the month, 2 million. Comment sections flooded with people saying things like, "Finally, someone's exposing this BS. Wait, is this about Harper Lane? The way this person edits is too good to be random." That last one almost made me laugh. Of course the editing was good. It was me. I didn't stop there. Every video went deeper. The algorithm doesn't care about you. The anatomy of a scandal. How apologies are scripted. Each episode was structured like a thriller. Cliffhanger intros, receipts, and conclusions that left people hungry for more. I wasn't just telling stories. I was training the beast to listen to me. Within 3 months, Ghost Frame was everywhere. Reaction channels analyzed my tone. Podcasts debated if I was an insider. Some said I was a PR manager gone rogue. Others thought I was a disgruntled influencer. No one guessed it was Tasha, the broken girl from the viral meltdown clip. The irony? Harper's channel started declining around the same time. Every time she uploaded, the comments were flooded with people referencing my videos. "This feels staged. This looks like what Ghost Frame talked about. Y'all remember the Crazy X video? What if it was fake too?" I didn't even have to accuse her directly. The audience connected the dots for me. Jason too. His fitness influencer brand took hits when someone leaked that his sponsorships were fake. That someone was me, by the way. Dylan helped me trace the affiliate accounts. Watching them squirm online was cathartic, but it was also terrifying because I was becoming everything I hated. Strategic, manipulative, performative. I knew exactly when to drop a video to maximize outrage. I'd schedule tweets to bait curiosity. I'd even reply under fake accounts to push debates. I was feeding the same addiction that ruined me, and people couldn't get enough. Then one night, Dylan messaged me. "You might want to see this." He sent a screenshot from an influencer group chat leak. Harper's PR firm was panicking. They suspected Ghost Frame was someone with insider info. They were offering money, real money, to find out who. $20K reward for anyone who identifies Ghost Frame. I stared at that number for a long time. It wasn't fear that hit me first, it was satisfaction that they were scared of me. But fear crept in right after. Because if they were willing to pay that much, it meant they'd dig into anything. Old accounts, IPs, friends, emails. So I took extra precautions. Encrypted everything. Used VPNs, voice modulators, burner accounts. Dylan helped me route uploads through proxies across 3 countries. For the first time in my life, I was living like a hacker. Then came the night everything almost fell apart. I was editing my biggest video yet. The influence industry, how they manufacture fame. It was my magnum opus. Proof, receipts, voice memos, everything connecting Harper's PR firm to scandal manipulation. And then I got an email from Harper Lane herself. Subject: "We need to talk, Tasha." My blood went cold. I hadn't used my real name anywhere on the Ghost Frame account. Not one trace. I called Dylan immediately. "She knows. How the hell does she know?" He ran traces, checked for leaks. Nothing. "She's bluffing," he said. "There's no way she can link you unless someone told her." That word, someone, stuck in my throat. The next day, my Twitter DMs exploded. Harper had posted something vague. It's funny how people pretend to be moral when they're just bitter exes in disguise. Her followers went feral. They started speculating who she was talking about. Some even brought up me. It was like watching a bomb slowly tick toward detonation. I should have stopped, any sane person would have, but instead I decided to detonate it myself. That night I uploaded the video. The influence industry, how they manufacture fame. I didn't hold back. I used redacted documents, voice clips, data trails, everything I had collected. The editing was sharp, eerie, and cinematic. The final frame read, "The people who control your outrage control your world." Within an hour, it hit 1 million views. By morning, 5 million. The internet exploded. Hash influence gate trended on Twitter. Reddit was filled with theories. News outlets started picking it up, but so did Harper's lawyers. I got 3 cease and desist emails within 48 hours, then a copyright claim that temporarily took the video down. It didn't matter. The damage was done. The internet had already downloaded it, re-uploaded it, mirrored it, clipped it. The story was everywhere. Harper and Jason were in full panic mode. Harper posted a 15-minute addressing the lies video, crying on camera, claiming she was being cyberbullied by an anonymous hate account. It backfired spectacularly. People compared her speech to clips from my earlier videos about fake apologies. It was almost too poetic. But behind the chaos, I wasn't celebrating. Because while the world was laughing at Harper, I started getting real threats. Anonymous accounts DMing me my old address. Emails from untraceable domains. "We know who you are. Watch your back. You'll pay for this." Even Dylan got doxxed. His old workplace number leaked on forums. That's when it hit me. I had stirred a hornet's nest way bigger than just Harper Lane. Her PR firm wasn't just manipulating influencers. They were controlling political narratives, brand wars, even social justice campaigns for profit. And now, I had pissed off the wrong people. For days, I barely slept. I kept my curtains closed, laptop cameras covered, phone on airplane mode. I didn't even tell Dylan where I was staying. But in that isolation, something inside me solidified. If they were going to come for me, they'd have to drag me out publicly. So I decided to do something insane. I was going to reveal myself as Ghostframe. Not as revenge, not as a stunt, but because I realized people needed to know the truth, and they wouldn't believe it unless they saw me. The same crazy ex they destroyed, the girl they turned into a meme. If I wanted to destroy the machine, I had to show the world who it had eaten. So I set up my camera, adjusted the lighting, took a deep breath, and hit record. "My name is Tasha Rowe," I said. "You probably know me as the girl from that viral meltdown clip, but you've also been watching me this whole time as Ghostframe." And as soon as I said it, I knew there was no going back. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was feeding the beast one last time, on my own terms. When I hit upload, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely feel the keys. The progress bar crawled, like it was mocking me. 12%, 25%, 61%. My heart pounded in my throat the whole time. And then it was done. I had uploaded the most dangerous video of my life. The one that tied everything together, the therapy leak, Harper's PR web, Jason's betrayal, and the entire machine that fed on my pain. The title was simple: How They Destroyed Me and Why I Fought Back. No flashy edits, no distortion, no voice modulator. Just me. Raw, unfiltered, real. The first few minutes after posting were eerily quiet. I sat staring at the screen, refreshing over and over. 20 views, then 70, then 200, and then it exploded. Comments started flooding in faster than I could read. "Is this for real? Wait, that's the girl from the meltdown video? Oh my god, she was framed? Someone get this woman a lawyer." By the time I blinked, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube notifications, even old friends I hadn't heard from in years were messaging me. Some apologized, some asked for interviews, some just said, "I always knew something was off about that clip." The video hit 1 million views in 3 hours, and by dawn, it was trending #1 across the entire platform. For the first time in 2 years, people were seeing the truth. I watched in disbelief as journalists broke down my video in real time. Reaction channels that once roasted me were now defending me. They paused every frame, analyzed every screenshot. They showed how Harper's firm manipulated social sentiment using outrage as a currency. Someone even found public records tying her PR company to a fake scandal around another influencer months before mine. Receipts. Proof. Everything was unraveling. By noon, brands started pulling their sponsorships from Harper. Fashion houses, energy drink deals, her podcast network gone within hours. Jason posted a shaky apology video, pretending he had no idea what Harper's firm did, but I had included clips of him laughing in that meeting. The one I secretly recorded. He couldn't deny it. His brand deals vanished overnight. Fitness companies cut ties. His apology video got ratioed into oblivion. For once, the internet turned its outrage on the right people. But as everything burned, I didn't feel joy. I just felt empty. I kept waiting for the adrenaline to hit, that rush of victory, that sense of justice finally served. But all I felt was this strange quiet, like the world had gone still after a storm. Then came the interview requests. CNN, Vice, the New York Times. Everyone wanted the girl who fought back. I ignored them all. Because it hit me, my face, my trauma, my entire existence was public property again. Only this time, people weren't hating me. They were adoring me. And somehow, that was worse. The same people who called me a psycho 2 years ago were now calling me brave. They were making edits, fan art, even t-shirts with my quote, "You can't stop the storm, but you can teach it your name." I never even said it to sound poetic. It was something I mumbled at the end of my video, half delirious from exhaustion. But now it was a movement. Teach it your name was trending. The irony was unbearable. I'd become viral again. Only this time, for being a victim of virality. It was like the snake had swallowed its own tail. Every talk show, every commentary channel, every trending hashtag, they were all dissecting me. And yet, for once, I wasn't running from it, because this time I had control. A week later, Harper disappeared from the internet. Her PR firm released a statement blaming internal mismanagement. Jason's channel went dark too. No uploads, no stories, nothing. Dylan texted me, "You did it." I wanted to believe that justice had been served, that I'd somehow evened the scales, but a part of me knew there's no such thing as justice online. There's only the next trend. Still, when the lawyers from Harper's company reached out with settlement offers, I refused. I didn't want hush money. I wanted accountability. So I went public again. This time with something constructive. I announced the Mirror Foundation. It started small, just a GoFundMe and a mission to help victims of online defamation rebuild their lives and reputations. I use my channel now, verified ironically, to talk about digital abuse, doxing, manipulation. Within days, thousands donated, other creators joined, even the platforms began to take notice. A week later, I was invited to a digital ethics summit to speak about my story. Standing on that stage in front of hundreds of people, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. When I got home that night, I sat in front of my computer and rewatched the original clip, the one that started it all. It was still online, of course, it always would be. I watched myself scream through tears, my voice shaking, my hands trembling. And for the first time, I didn't hate that girl. I understood her. She wasn't crazy, she was hurt. She wasn't overreacting, she was betrayed. That clip had killed my career, but maybe it also killed the version of me that needed everyone to like her. People always say the internet never forgets. They're right. But what they don't tell you is it also never stops watching. And if you're smart enough, if you're patient enough, you can make it remember the truth. Now, when someone searches my name, they don't see crazy ex-girlfriend freaks out. They see Tasha Rowe, digital justice advocate. The same internet that destroyed me once now amplifies my message. Not because it suddenly grew a conscience, but because I learned how to make the storm dance. Sometimes I still wake up at night, heart pounding, thinking I've gone viral again for the wrong reason. But then I see the messages. People thanking me for helping them fight back against smear campaigns, fake leaks, revenge porn. And I realized something powerful. I didn't just survive the storm, I became it. So yeah, maybe going viral did ruin my life, but it also forced me to rebuild it piece by piece until it became something stronger. They tried to turn me into a villain, but all they really did was teach me how to tell my own story. And if you've ever been chewed up by the internet, if you've ever watched strangers rip your name apart for sport, just know this. You can't make them forget, but you can make them remember who you really are. And sometimes, that's enough. Story 6. My golden child sister demanded I give her my wedding venue, and my parents actually agreed. So I, 27F, have a younger sister, Moon, 25F, who has been the golden child of our family since the day she was born. And before anyone asks, yes, her name is actually Moon. My mom says she named her that because she lights up every room. Ironic, considering she spent her whole life sucking all the oxygen out of mine. Growing up with Moon was like living in a movie where the main character keeps winning even when she burns a set down. And I'm just the background extra holding the props. She was the pretty one, the funny one, the gifted one. Every time she sneezed, my mom would rush in like she just cured cancer. Meanwhile, I could get straight A's, make honor roll, win the science fair, and my mom would barely look up from Moon's Instagram feed. When we were kids, it was small things. Moon would break a vase. Anna, you should have watched your sister better. Moon borrowed my new dress and spilled grape juice on it. Well, Anna, you shouldn't be so possessive. Sharing is caring. Moon forgot to feed our cat for 3 days. Anna, you know your sister gets distracted easily. Why didn't you remind her? I was the designated scapegoat, the emotional babysitter, and the family doormat. If she cried, it was my fault. If she succeeded, it was because of her natural talent. The first time I realized how deep the favoritism ran was at my 10th birthday party. I'd been begging for a cake shaped like a paint palette because I loved art back then. But when I walked into the living room, there it was, a giant cake with unicorns and glitter and a huge fondant M on top. I looked at it, confused. "Oh, honey," my mom said. "They didn't have enough time to make yours, so we just used the one Moon wanted for her half birthday last month." Yeah, my mom reused my sister's leftover birthday cake theme for my birthday. Fast forward to high school, I worked 2 part-time jobs to buy my first car. Moon, on the other hand, got handed a brand new one for her 16th birthday because she needs to drive safely. By college, I'd stopped trying to compete. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, got my degree in event management, and eventually started my own small but successful event planning business. I learned to set boundaries, or at least try to. Moon went to some content creation academy in LA. whatever that means, dropped out after a semester and came back home to be a full-time influencer. I'm not kidding. She calls herself a lifestyle goddess. Her feed is all morning matcha lattes, gym mirror selfies, and captions like, radiate confidence like your aura depends on it. But despite all that, I still tried to maintain peace. You know, the older sister guilt, the keep the family together instinct. I thought maybe as adults we'd finally outgrow the drama. Spoiler, we didn't. Fast forward to about a year ago, I got engaged to Ethan, 29M, the most grounded, supportive, and calm man I've ever met. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party, and the irony still makes me laugh. While everyone else was arguing over floral arrangements, Ethan was the guy refilling everyone's glasses and asking if they were doing okay. He's that kind of person. We'd been dating for 3 years when he proposed. He did it in the most Ethan way possible, quiet, thoughtful, and personal. Just the two of us, by the lake at sunset. No cameras, no audience, no spectacle. Just love. I was over the moon, pun not intended. Planning the wedding was my dream project. As an event planner, I'd been designing other people's dream weddings for years. Now it was my turn. I found the perfect venue, a serene lakeside spot in Austin called Willow Ridge Estate. Rustic barn, twinkling fairy lights, panoramic sunset view. It was pure magic. I booked it almost a year in advance. Every detail was planned, floral palette, table settings, music, catering, everything. I wanted something timeless and warm, not flashy or Instagram perfect. Everything was going smoothly until about 3 months ago. That's when Moon dropped her bombshell. We were all at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. I was setting the table because somehow, even at 27, I'm still the family's unpaid waitress, when Moon walked in wearing a diamond the size of a Skittle on her finger. "I'm engaged," she squealed, flashing her hand so hard I thought she might slap me with it. My mom screamed like she'd just won the lottery. "Oh my God, sweetheart, this is amazing." My dad clapped awkwardly, clearly confused but going along with the show. And me? I smiled and said, "Wow, congrats, Moon. When did this happen?" "Last week," she said, flipping her hair like a shampoo commercial. "Chase proposed on our trip to Tulum. It was so romantic." Chase, by the way, is her fiance, a guy who looks like he was grown in a gym lab. Big arms, tiny attention span. He's nice enough, but he has the personality of a protein shake. I hugged her. I really did try to be happy for her, but then she said the words that made me choke on my salad. "So, Anna," she said, smiling sweetly, "since you're like already an event planner and all, I figured we could do a double wedding vibe. Like, maybe use your venue since it fits my aesthetic better." I blinked. "Sorry, what?" She laughed, like she was joking, except she wasn't. "You know your venue? That Willow Ridge place? It's so me. The lakeside, the rustic chic vibe, the wood tones, that's literally my brand. I've already talked to my photographer about it." I just stared at her. "Moon, I've been planning that for a year. My deposit's paid. Everything's booked." She waved her hand. "Right, but you're not married yet, so it's not like it's locked in. You can find another venue. You're creative. You'll make it work." I thought she was joking again. I laughed. "Yeah, no, I'm not changing my entire wedding because you like my venue." Her smile dropped. My mom's didn't. "Anna," my mom said, setting down the serving spoon dramatically, "be reasonable. Moon's wedding will probably have more guests, more coverage, and she's under time pressure. You could move yours back a few months." Coverage, that word told me everything. My mom didn't care about the wedding. She cared about the optics. Moon's influencer friends would post about it, maybe tag her, maybe some local magazine would feature the Miller sisters' love stories. I looked at my mom, stunned. "You're seriously suggesting I give up the venue I paid for because Moon's followers will get better pictures there?" "Sweetheart, it's not about that," she said in that patronizing tone she always uses when gaslighting me. "It's just, Moon's engagement is big news. She has over 200,000 followers. People will expect something beautiful. You could be flexible just this once." Just this once? Like the last 27 years hadn't been one long just this once. I looked at my dad for backup, but he just shrugged. "Maybe your mom's right, Anna. It's just a venue." "Just a venue?" I snapped. "Dad, this isn't a cake flavor or a centerpiece. It's the place I've dreamed of since I was 20. I've spent months planning every detail. And she wants to just take it?" Moon crossed her arms. "You're being dramatic? You always do this, make everything about you." That's when I laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh I didn't even recognize. "Moon, you're literally asking me to give up my wedding venue for your wedding. How exactly am I making this about me?" She rolled her eyes. "You're so selfish sometimes." I wanted to throw the salad bowl at her. That night, Ethan and I sat in our apartment, both still fuming. He listened quietly as I replayed the whole dinner. He shook his head. "That's insane. She can't just take your venue." "Apparently she can," I said. "My mom's already guilt-tripping me about family harmony." He took my hand. "You don't have to give in this time, Anna." And that's when I realized I've been giving in my whole life. Every single time. When Moon cried, I comforted her. When she broke things, I apologized. When she took credit, I smiled. When she crossed lines, I pretended it was fine. But this time, it wasn't just about a dress or a party. This was my wedding, my happiness, my boundary. And I could feel something inside me shift like a light bulb finally burning out after years of flickering. So I looked at Ethan and said, "You're right. I'm not giving in this time." He smiled softly. "Good. because if you did, I might have to marry you in secret just to keep your family out. I laughed for the first time that day. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Moon never takes no for an answer. And my parents, they've made it their life's mission to make sure she never has to. Still, for the first time in years, I didn't feel scared or small. I felt done. Done playing the nice sister. Done being the family's emotional punching bag. Done letting other people rewrite my story. Because this time, the wedding thief was about to learn something new when you spend your whole life taking from people. Eventually, someone takes everything back, and that someone was going to be me. So, after the Willow Ridge incident, as I've now started calling it in my head, I thought I'd at least get a little peace. I was wrong. You know that saying about how once you tell a golden child no, the world conspires against you? Yeah, it's accurate. Within 24 hours of our Sunday showdown, Moon had gone full PR campaign mode. I logged into Instagram, just minding my own business when I saw it. A perfectly curated story carousel of her engagement celebration. The caption read, "Feeling so blessed that my sweet, amazing sister Anna offered me her wedding venue. Can't wait to marry the love of my life in the most magical place ever. #sisters, goals, #family love." I blinked again, then stared at my phone like it might explode. She posted that I offered her my venue? I called Ethan immediately. "You're kidding," he said after reading my screenshot. "Nope," I said, my hands trembling. "She literally told everyone online that I voluntarily offered to let her steal my wedding." Ethan groaned. "That's actually evil genius levels of manipulation." And it didn't stop there. By the next morning, I started getting texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months congratulating me for being so generous and supportive. One even added, "It's so sweet that you're letting Moon have her dream wedding. You're the best sister ever." I stared at my phone like it had betrayed me. Generous? I've been gaslit into public sainthood while my wedding is being hijacked by my own sister. Then the calls started. Mom, of course, was the ringmaster. "Anna, sweetheart," she said, her voice syrupy but sharp as a scalpel. "We're all so proud of how selfless you're being. Moon is thrilled and really it's just a venue. Why make a fuss?" "Because it's my wedding, Mom," I said, my patience finally evaporating. "I spent a year planning this. Every single detail. I'm not changing it." "Oh, honey," she said, cooing like she was lecturing a toddler. "You're so dramatic. You've always had to be right about everything. Can't you just make a small sacrifice for the family?" I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and counted to 100. That's the only thing that kept me from screaming. And that's when the full force of the Gaslight Gatekeep Golden Child strategy hit me. Moon started calling our extended family and friends, spinning this narrative that I had offered the venue. She was charming, naturally, and everyone was eating it up. Cousins who had never even met Ethan sent me passive-aggressive texts about how grateful they were for me, assuming I was being generous. And yes, she even posted Instagram stories where she subtly implied that I was doing all of this for her happiness. Stories of her posing with champagne flutes, captions like, "Can't believe my sister Anna is letting me have her beautiful wedding spot. Such a kind soul, #blessed sister vibes." Meanwhile, my blood pressure hit new heights daily. I couldn't even log into my own social media without seeing another post twisting the story to make me look like the villain or worse, the saint. Ethan and my best friend Tessa were my only saving graces. Tessa, bless her soul, kept sending me texts like, "Anna, ignore the drama llama. You literally can't control other people's stupidity. Plot twist, you get the last laugh." Ethan, on the other hand, was quietly supportive in his calm Ethan way. He kept telling me, "Don't worry, we'll handle this. You're not giving up your wedding. Trust me." But my parents? Oh, they doubled down like it was a competitive sport. "You know, Anna," Mom said one evening, "we could always just, reconsider financial support for your wedding if this keeps up. You've been so independent, maybe you don't need us anyway." I swear to God, my heart skipped a beat, threatening to withdraw financial help, my parents' favorite manipulative tool, like it was some kind of sword dangling over my head. "Are you actually saying you'd punish me for not giving Moon my venue?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Sweetheart, we just want what's best for everyone," Dad chimed in, nodding meekly, clearly terrified of Mom. Think about it, a little flexibility goes a long way. Flexibility. Translation? Surrender your entire wedding to her, or we make your life miserable. I spent that night lying awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like a caged animal. My dream wedding, the place I'd imagined forever, the lakeside sunsets, the string lights, the intimate setting with my favorite people was suddenly under siege. And the worst part? My parents had always favored Moon, so I knew they'd back her up no matter what. I wanted to scream, to rage, to run away and never come back. But then I thought of Ethan's hand in mine. Tessa's sarcastic pep talks, and all the times I'd bent over backward for Moon, only to be ignored or erased, and something inside me snapped. I realized that if I played along, even for a second, I'd be handing over my life's moment to someone who never cared about my happiness. And let's be honest, they'd probably spin it on social media as Anna's selfless act. So I made a decision. I was going to say, yes, I'd let Moon have the venue. But, and here's the kicker, it wouldn't be the way she expected. The next morning, I called the venue manager. "Hi, yes, I need to make some adjustments to the booking for Willow Ridge Estate," I said, sounding calm but internally screaming. The manager, sweet and professional, asked a few clarifying questions. I nodded along, pretending to be cooperative while mentally mapping out my plan. Moon had no idea that the contract was actually under my business name. She thought she was paying for decorations, catering, and planning, but in reality, the money she was throwing around wasn't giving her access to anything except a glorified photo op. Meanwhile, Moon and my parents were doing their usual PR campaign. They had called cousins, neighbors, anyone who would listen, claiming Anna was the world's kindest sister. The texts, the posts, the calls, it was relentless, and it made me angrier with every single one. Because I wasn't just fighting for a venue anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my boundaries, and honestly, my sanity. By the middle of the week, Moon was posting daily about finalizing details at my sister's venue. She tagged me in every post too, like a badge of honor. The amount of fake positivity and charm she was broadcasting was nauseating. Tessa and Ethan were my only escapes. We sat together late at night, going over every possible scenario. "We can turn this to our advantage," Ethan said calmly. "She thinks she's won, but we're smarter. Always remember, she underestimates you because you're quiet and patient. That's her biggest mistake." And that's when I started to smile. Not a little smile, a full-on, slightly sinister, I have a plan smile. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew that letting Moon think she was winning would give me the perfect opportunity to play my hand. So, while they were busy spinning their narrative, while Moon was posting fake stories and counting followers, I was quietly reworking my wedding plans. Every detail, every vendor, every guest list, I started seeing it like a chessboard. She thought she'd cornered me, but really, she was moving straight into my trap. The flowers, the catering, the music, the seating arrangements all carefully planned. I even started looking at a backup venue, something equally gorgeous and with a twist that Moon would never see coming. I won't lie, part of me was giddy. The adrenaline, the anticipation, the secret strategy, it felt good to finally stop being the victim. By the end of the week, I had a plan that was so meticulously cruel in the best way possible that I couldn't help but grin. Moon thought she was winning. My parents thought they were clever, and I had the upper hand. Quietly, invisibly, perfectly. And as I looked over my notes, my contracts, and the empty spot on my calendar marked real wedding, I whispered to Ethan and Tessa, both of whom were in on it, "Let's see how the golden child handles reality when the game's actually over." And for the first time in years, I felt free. So after surviving the initial barrage of gaslighting, social media manipulation, and parental guilt trips, I realized it was time to stop reacting and start acting. The key to surviving Moon's golden child tyranny was not confrontation, it was strategy. And trust me, I've been planning weddings long enough to turn a disaster into a masterstroke. Moon, oblivious to everything, was already in full PR mode. She was posting daily Instagram stories about finalizing her dream wedding at Anna's venue, which, yes, she still thought I had graciously offered. She even had her friends over staging little shoots with bouquets, champagne, and bridesmaid dresses. The captions were absurd. "Feeling so blessed to have the sweetest sister ever letting me use her gorgeous venue hash. Dream come true." I like to tell you I was angry. I was. But I also laughed. Quietly, darkly. Because she had no idea the game had just flipped. Step 1. The legal transfer. As an event planner, I'd always booked venues under my business name. It's cleaner, easier for contracts, and it gives me leverage in situations exactly like this. So when Moon insisted on taking over Willow Ridge Estate, I played along. I contacted the manager under the guise of making some administrative updates to the booking. "Of course, Anna," the manager said. "We can make that work. Are you transferring full rights to the new client?" "Exactly," I said, casually. "Just making it official for Moon Miller." On paper, Moon now had the venue. She'd paid her deposit and all sorts of extra fees for decorations, influencer-themed add-ons, lighting, floral upgrades totaling thousands of dollars. All hers. Or so she thought. She didn't know that, because the contract was in my business's name, I retained control over access, timing, and execution. I could essentially turn the key on her plans at any moment, legally. And boy, was I about to. Meanwhile, I secretly started booking my real wedding at a second venue even better than Willow Ridge. I found a secluded estate a few miles outside Austin. Private lake, panoramic sunset, rustic modern barn, and a lush garden terrace. It had everything I wanted and none of the social media circus Moon was creating. This would be the wedding I'd actually remember, with the people who mattered. Ethan and Tessa were my co-conspirators. Ethan's calm, logical brain and Tessa's over-the-top sarcasm were perfect for keeping me sane and plotting the switch. We coordinated timelines, double-checked vendor availability, and even scheduled decoy meetings to make Moon think she was winning. Every time Moon posted a story showing her new venue, I nodded politely in front of my parents while smirking privately. Speaking of my parents, they started to sense something was off. They were used to me being compliant, and now I was suddenly distant, uninterested in their frantic calls and guilt trips. "You seem different, Anna," Mom said one evening, frowning. "I'm tired," I said, smiling thinly. "Planning 2 weddings is exhausting. Moon's demands are intense." "Oh, I know," she replied. "But remember, she's your sister. Try to make her happy. We don't want drama before her big day." Drama, huh. They had no idea that by making her happy, I was actually orchestrating her total meltdown. Moon, of course, continued to rub it in everyone's faces. "Can you believe Anna is letting me do this?" she said to her friends while I was busy at home. "I mean, look at this gorgeous space. I'm literally living my best life." I smiled politely when she called me to ask advice on color palettes. "Moon, you're doing amazing," I said, carefully measured, dripping with fake sincerity. "Oh, thanks, Anna. You're the sweetest. I can't believe you'd help me like this." And then she hung up, leaving me to quietly laugh like a villain in a rom-com. While Moon threw money at the fake venue, I coordinated every single detail for my actual wedding. Florists, lighting, caterers, sound systems, all top-tier vendors who had no idea there was a fake wedding being staged elsewhere. Ethan helped with the logistics, negotiating times and deliveries so nothing would overlap or raise suspicion. Tessa was a master of decoys, posting fake progress reports, sending me pictures of venue tours she pretended Moon and I were taking together. It was exhausting, honestly, but incredibly satisfying. The next phase was psychological. I started dropping subtle hints to my parents and Moon about unexpected conflicts at Willow Ridge. "Oh, the caterer can't make it on that date unless we rearrange the table setup," I said casually in front of Moon. Okay, we can handle that," she said, completely unaware she was rearranging chairs that would never even be used. Or when she asked me about music vendors, I casually mentioned, "Oh, the sound system at Willow Ridge is a little tricky, you might need to hire someone specialized." She freaked out and hired an expensive DJ from LA who had no idea the booking was technically under my business. Money spent, panic brewing, and no control over the actual day. It felt poetic. Moon's friends started commenting online about how incredible I was, praising me for being selfless. Little did they know, they were applauding the architect of their own friend's disaster. Every comment, every like, every emoji of heart eyes fuel for my quiet satisfaction. Meanwhile, my parents continued their unhelpful commentary. "Don't forget, Anna, family is about compromise," Mom said during one particularly tense dinner. "Yes, compromise," I said sweetly, "which is why I'm letting Moon have the venue." They smiled, thinking I'd finally caved. Little did they know, the venue she had now wasn't the venue I'd be marrying in. The real fun began when Moon tried to confirm final details, decor, seating, lighting, and started calling me daily. "Anna, can you believe the centerpiece prices?" she wailed. "Oh, it's just numbers, Moon," I said, yawning over the phone. "I know you'll handle it." I could hear the panic in her voice as she realized every suggestion I had made subtly forced her into costly, unnecessary decisions. And the best part? She thought it was all her idea. Ethan and Tessa and I would meet late at night, laughing quietly over the chaos. "You're evil," Tessa said, grinning. "I'm strategic," I corrected. "Same thing," she said, waving her hands. And that's when it hit me. I'd reached the perfect balance of letting Moon think she had control while secretly orchestrating the exact opposite. By the end of the week, everything was in place. Moon had poured money, effort, and social media attention into a wedding that only existed on paper. My parents were thrilled, still praising me for my kindness, completely unaware that I held the ultimate power over the day. And me? I had a real breathtaking venue booked, all vendors confirmed, and a perfectly intimate guest list. The wedding I dreamed of since I was a kid was finally within reach. I leaned back in my chair, holding a cup of tea, and whispered to Ethan and Tessa, who were both grinning like conspirators. "I gave her the venue," I said, my tone casual, almost innocent. "I just didn't say which one she'd actually get." They both laughed quietly because they knew this was the kind of payoff you only see in movies. The golden child had been outsmarted, and for once, Anna, the long-suffering older sister, was in total control. For the first time in my life, I felt untouchable. The best part? Moon had no idea. She thought she had won. She thought she was shining in the spotlight, while in reality she was stepping into the trap I had meticulously prepared. And I was finally smiling for myself, not for anyone else. Not my parents, not Moon, not even social media. For the first time, it was my victory, quiet and perfect. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's invisible, calculated, and devastatingly effective. And mine? It was about to be spectacular. The morning of the big day arrived with the kind of quiet tension that makes your stomach knot for hours. I woke up early, slipping into my dress with a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in years. Outside, the sun was shining on Austin like it had been waiting for this moment. But inside my chest, there was something heavier: excitement, anticipation, and just the tiniest trace of vindictive glee. Moon's wedding was scheduled for the same day, or at least, that's what she thought. I sipped my coffee, glancing at my phone. Dozens of posts were flooding in from Moon, her friends, even some extended family. Countdown to the most magical day ever. Anna is such a saint for letting me have her venue. I took a deep breath. Let them think they were winning. That's step one in every good plan. Make the opponent completely overconfident. Meanwhile, Ethan and Tessa were buzzing around, making sure my real wedding was set perfectly. The venue, a hidden gem I had found months earlier, looked like something out of a dream. Soft string lights over the lake, flower arrangements weeping in gentle shades of blush and ivory. The barn doors open to the golden morning sun. Guests started arriving quietly, all people who actually cared about us, not the optics of social media. The irony of it all hit me. Moon had spent thousands of dollars thinking she was going to have a spectacular day. Meanwhile, she was walking into Nothing. At Willow Ridge, her big day began like any other morning. Florists, decorators, and caterers she had hired were there, all under the assumption that she had a confirmed booking. Except the truth? I had legally canceled the contract weeks ago. The manager had politely explained that the venue was no longer available and the keys, security, and access were all revoked. When Moon and her friends showed up, ready for a morning full of Instagrammable moments, they were met with locked gates and a note taped to the entrance. We regret to inform you that Willow Ridge Estate is no longer available. Please contact management for further details. According to multiple witnesses, mostly her friends filming every reaction for TikTok, Moon went pale. Her initial confusion quickly turned to panic, then to outrage. She screamed. She shouted. She tried calling me, texting me, posting online, but all of it fell flat because the venue manager calmly confirmed that the booking had never been valid under her name. Every deposit, every fee she had thrown at decorators and extras was non-refundable. And the best part, I wasn't there. I was across town, surrounded by people who actually loved me, ready to walk down the aisle with Ethan. The ceremony began quietly. Guests arrived, everyone greeting me with smiles and hugs. There was no chaos, no screaming, no manipulative glares, just love. The soft breeze moved through the trees, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens. The lake reflected the sun in a way that made the whole scene feel surreal, like a movie set. I held Ethan's hand and I felt peace. Then the shouting started. Moon had somehow managed to find her way to my venue mid-ceremony. She stormed in, heels clacking across the wooden deck, arms flailing, hair a mess. "Anna, how could you do this?" she screamed. "This is my day. You promised me the venue. You're a liar. You're evil." For a moment, the room went silent. Guests turned to see the golden child, usually so poised, completely unraveling in front of everyone. I took a deep breath and looked at Ethan. He nodded once, calm, collected, everything I loved about him. He stepped forward. "Everyone," he said, voice steady, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Anna didn't lie. The venue Moon booked was never hers to begin with. The contract is in Anna's business name, which means she had every legal right to reserve it for her wedding. Moon and her parents have been spinning a story to make it look like Anna gave her the venue." There was a murmur in the crowd. People were starting to connect the dots. My parents, of course, immediately sided with Moon. "She's lying. This is ridiculous," my mom shouted. "Anna, how could you do this to your sister?" "She tricked me," Moon wailed, pointing at me like I'd personally set a trap to ruin her life. "Everything I've planned, all the vendors, all the decorations gone." But then extended family started whispering among themselves. They looked around at my calm demeanor, at Ethan, at Tessa, and at the evidence stacking up against my parents' favoritism. One cousin, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "Wait a second, aren't they the same people who let Moon get away with everything growing up? Anna's been planning her wedding for months and she's the one getting gaslit." And then the truth came out in waves. Other relatives started chiming in. How Moon always got first dibs, how my parents turned a blind eye to years of favoritism, how I was the one who always sacrificed myself, while Moon got whatever she wanted. The room turned into chaos for my parents. Moon was still screaming, but it was no longer at me. The crowd was seeing her entitlement for what it was. Through it all, I stayed calm. I smiled quietly, holding Ethan's hand. I didn't need to shout or justify myself. The evidence was everywhere. The locked venue, the timeline, the social media posts, the contracts, and the people who mattered, friends, co-workers, and family who had actually seen my side over the years were finally on my side. Moon's fury turned to despair. She tried to post online, but by now, my friends and guests had already started sharing the story of the real wedding, the beautiful, intimate, perfectly executed event where Anna was the bride in control of her own happiness. Her golden child glow dimmed with every passing minute. My parents, predictably, were furious. "This is unfair," my dad shouted, looking like he wanted to melt into the floor. "No, this isn't right," Mom added, glaring at me like I'd personally orchestrated world chaos. "We raised you better than this, Anna. You should have compromised." But by now, extended family had had enough. Aunt Carol, my mom's sister, who had witnessed Moon being coddled for years, finally snapped. "Enough," she shouted. "Anna spent her entire life being the scapegoat here, and now she finally gets to live for herself. Maybe it's time you two realize how toxic you've been." Others nodded, murmurs of agreement spreading through the crowd. I could feel the energy shift. Justice wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. The ceremony continued, beautifully and perfectly, as if nothing had happened. I walked down the aisle, holding Ethan's hand, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, who had supported me through years of manipulation. The lake glistened, the lights twinkled, and for the first time it felt like my life was truly mine. Moon, eventually, gave up screaming. She stood at the edge of the lawn, fuming, humiliated and powerless. My parents tried to intervene, but nobody was listening anymore. For once, their golden child tactics didn't work, not with the truth staring everyone in the face. By the time we took our first dance, the room was filled with laughter, tears, and genuine joy. I glanced around at my friends, my family who had supported me, and Ethan and I realized something incredible. I was free. truly free. Later that night, after the reception, someone shared a photo of me standing in the golden sunset, Ethan in my arms, smiles everywhere. The caption, "When you stop being the scapegoat and start living for yourself." It went viral, shared across Instagram, Twitter, and even Reddit, with thousands of people commenting about how empowering it was. I wasn't just celebrating my wedding, I was celebrating finally taking my life back. Moon's posts, of course, continued, but nobody cared. Her influencer wedding had collapsed, her golden child narrative shattered, and my parents, they had no choice but to watch me thrive while realizing, too late, that their favoritism had finally backfired. I didn't gloat. Not really. I just smiled quietly, sipping my champagne. I had my wedding, my happiness, and my freedom. And that was enough. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't humiliation or confrontation. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living your life beautifully while they watch. And that day, I did exactly that. The golden child had been dethroned. The scapegoat had finally risen. And I couldn't have been prouder. Story 7. My thieving sister-in-law stole my family heirloom earrings, then assaulted me. So I had her arrested and pressed charges. My entire family sided with her, and my brother started fabricating evidence to try prove that she was innocent. I never thought I'd be the kind of person whose family turns against her, but here I am, typing this out with my hands still shaking, wondering how everything I trusted could unravel in one afternoon. My name is Bethany. I'm 26, and I live in the United States. My life used to be fairly ordinary. Busy, sure, but ordinary. I had my small apartment, my job in marketing, and a family I thought I could rely on. But apparently, reliability is a luxury, and mine has a shelf life shorter than I ever realized. Let me start with the family dynamics because that's crucial. My brother, Samuel, is 32. He's always been a little protective, bordering on controlling. Not in a bad way, usually just... he likes things orderly, predictable, and he likes people in his life to stay in their assigned boxes. Then there's Mariah, my sister-in-law, who's 29. She's beautiful, sure, but that's only part of her weaponry. She's smart, charismatic, and knows exactly how to manipulate a situation to make herself look like the victim or the queen. And that's exactly what makes this story worse. Because when she stepped into my life, I didn't know she was about to step on me. It all started with a family gathering at my parents' house. These gatherings were usually harmless, a little awkward, a lot of chatter, maybe someone spilling wine on the carpet, but nothing catastrophic. My parents love tradition, and one of those traditions is showing off the family heirlooms. Every holiday, there's a small heritage showcase where my grandmother's jewelry, silverware, and antique trinkets get displayed under glass cases in the living room. And that's where it happened. Among these treasures was the heirloom in question, a pair of delicate gold earrings with tiny sapphire drops passed down through generations on my mother's side. They were priceless, at least sentimentally, if not monetarily. I've worn them on special occasions, carefully polished them, and never let anyone touch them without my supervision. On the day of the gathering, I had placed them back in their usual little velvet box, safely in the display case after showing them to my nieces. I thought they were secure. I thought wrong. The house was packed. Sam and Mariah arrived fashionably late, of course, because punctuality was apparently beneath them. Mariah gave me that bright, saccharine smile, the one that looks like sunshine but carries a storm inside, and immediately asked where I had hidden the earrings. I laughed, thinking she was teasing, because, come on, she couldn't actually want to touch them, could she? I told her, "They're safe, Mariah. Don't worry, I've got them locked up." For a while, everything seemed fine. We ate, we joked, someone spilled cranberry sauce on the floor, the usual chaos. But when it was time to clear the dining table, I noticed something odd. The little velvet box. It was gone. My stomach dropped. My first thought was that maybe my mom had moved it, or maybe one of my cousins had picked it up by mistake. But when I asked, everyone shook their heads. No one had seen the earrings. That's when I saw Mariah leaning against the hallway wall with that stupid, smug smile. She was fiddling with her phone, scrolling like she had nothing to hide, and yet my gut screamed something sinister. My chest tightened, my pulse picked up, and for the first time that day, I felt real anger. "Mariah," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, though it came out sharper than intended. "Have you seen my grandmother's earrings?" She looked up slowly, her smile widening, eyes gleaming with a mischief I didn't want to acknowledge. "Earrings? Oh, Bethany, you're always so dramatic. I haven't seen them. Are you sure you didn't misplace them?" "Misplace them? Misplace them?" I felt my blood boil. "I didn't misplace them, Mariah. They were in the velvet box in the display case, and now they're gone." She tilted her head, that innocent puppy dog tilt that makes half the family sigh sympathetically. "Well, maybe someone took them by accident, or maybe..." She paused, leaning in closer than necessary, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Maybe you're overreacting." I swear, at that moment, something snapped inside me. Her tone, her smug face, the way she acted like she was the only sane person in a room full of witnesses. It was infuriating. "Overreacting?" I said, louder this time. "Mariah, these earrings belong to my family. They're not yours to play with or lose." She laughed softly, a sound that could have been charming if it weren't so dripping with contempt. "Bethany, calm down. You're making a scene." I took a step closer, my voice trembling with fury. I'm not making a scene. I'm confronting a thief. The word hung in the air. You could literally hear the air freeze in the living room. Cousins exchanged nervous glances. My mother gasped. My father's face went pale. And Mariah's eyes narrowed, her smile fading into something sharp and dangerous. You think I stole from you? She snapped. Her voice was ice now, not the playful tone from before. Bethany, watch your mouth. Don't you dare accuse me of something I didn't do. I remember my hands shaking, my heart hammering, but I stood my ground. I know what I saw, and I know when someone is lying. I saw you near the display case when no one else was looking, and now the earrings are gone. You need to give them back. Mariah laughed. This time, there was no warmth, just pure venom. She stepped toward me, invading my space, and in a movement that still makes me flinch when I think about it, she shoved me hard. I stumbled back, nearly hitting the edge of the coffee table. The room went silent. My parents' faces were frozen in shock. My own brother, was looking at me with a mix of confusion and, I don't even know, relief? Anger? I couldn't tell. Mariah didn't stop. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so that it was almost a whisper meant only for me. You're going to regret this, Bethany. Everyone will think you're crazy. And then she struck again. Not hard enough to leave bruises. Not yet, but the intention was clear. She shoved me again, this time gripping my arm roughly, and my knees buckled. My vision blurred for a moment. I could feel the heat in my face, the rush of adrenaline and fear. Everyone was staring, some horrified, some frozen, some just silent. I knew right then that I couldn't rely on anyone in the room to defend me. My heart was pounding, and all I could think was, this isn't just theft, this is assault, and I'm not going to stay silent. I yanked my arm free, my voice shaking but loud. I'm calling the police. You assaulted me. Mariah smirked like she was expecting this and took a step back, raising her hands in mock surrender. Fine, call them, see where that gets you. I didn't wait. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911, feeling a mix of terror and adrenaline, and as I did, the room seemed to tilt. My family, my own blood, looked at me as though I was the intruder in a movie I had no script for. Some were whispering, others avoiding eye contact, and Mariah, she just smiled. That smile that said, I've already won. I remember feeling the sting of betrayal long before the officers arrived. Not because of the assault, that was scary enough, but because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about the earrings. This was about the people I thought I could trust, and now it was very clear they weren't on my side. Mariah leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, looking like a queen surveying a kingdom she had conquered. And me? I was the one who had just been dethroned in my own family living room. When the police finally arrived, I knew this was the beginning of something much bigger than a family argument. Something that would test every bit of patience, every ounce of strength I had. And the kicker? My biggest obstacle wouldn't just be Mariah. It would be my own brother and the family I thought would stand with me. By the time they started asking questions, Mariah had already spun her story, her charm kicking into overdrive. I could see some relatives nodding along, faces sympathetic to her version of events. My stomach sank. I had walked into a war, and I didn't even know the full battlefield yet. And that's how it all began. The theft, the assault, and the family I thought I knew turning into strangers in front of me. The earrings weren't just jewelry. They were the first casualty in a war that had only just begun. I still remember the way my hands shook as I waited for the police to arrive. My chest was tight, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, and yet there was a strange, cold clarity settling in me. I had made the decision. I was going to press charges. I couldn't let what Mariah did slide, and for the first time, I wasn't willing to compromise just because of family ties. I called 911, my voice trembling at first, then firm as the dispatcher asked for details. I explained everything, the theft of the heirloom earrings, Mariah shoving me, the witnesses who had seen it. They told me officers would be dispatched immediately. I hung up, my hands still quivering, and turned to see my family watching me like I was a criminal rather than a victim. I caught my mother's eyes, searching for some sign of support, some indication that she would believe me. But there was none. Instead, there was hesitation, a quiet disapproval I couldn't decipher. My father, usually stoic but reliable in these matters, looked tense, unsure. And then there was Samuel, standing a few feet away, his arms crossed, face tight, almost unreadable. When the police arrived, everything sped up. I explained again, showing them where the incident had taken place, pointing out Mariah, who now had this composed, almost practiced expression, like she had anticipated every word I would say. The officers looked at her, asked for her side, and she didn't miss a beat. Calm, articulate, smooth. She told her story convincingly, that I had overreacted, that I was aggressive, that I had somehow provoked her. Her version sounded plausible, at least to anyone who didn't know the truth. And here's the worst part. Some of my family seemed to buy it. Cousins whispered among themselves, my aunts and uncles exchanged worried glances, and I could feel the tension in the room shift. Suddenly, I was the one under scrutiny. Suddenly, the victim felt like the villain. The officers spoke privately with Mariah, then came back to me. They told me that given the witnesses, the theft, and the assault, they could proceed with arresting her. Relief mixed with terror in my chest. Relief that justice could begin, terror for what would come after. When Mariah was handcuffed, I expected some vindication, some relief. But instead, the room erupted in shock and outrage, and not at Mariah, for me. "What are you doing?" my mother exclaimed, her voice breaking. "Bethany, this is family. You can't just call the police on your sister-in-law." I froze. Family? I had just been shoved, assaulted, and had my grandmother's heirloom stolen. And suddenly, my actions were wrong because they were family? "She assaulted me, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She stole from me. I didn't have a choice." "You should have talked to Sam first," my father interjected, shaking his head. "This isn't how families handle things. You've humiliated everyone." Humiliated. Me, the victim. My mind reeled. I had spent my life protecting my family's values, honoring traditions, and somehow, that meant nothing. I was the problem for demanding accountability. Samuel stepped forward then, his expression carefully neutral, though there was something calculating behind his eyes I didn't catch at first. "Bethany, I know you feel hurt, but maybe this is an overreaction. You've always had a dramatic streak. Let's just try to resolve this quietly." I stared at him, incredulous. Overreaction? My brother, the one person I thought would be on my side, was telling me I was overreacting after being physically attacked. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him. Instead, I felt the first real pang of betrayal settle deep in my chest. What? Mariah, for her part, walked out of the house with a calm that made my blood boil. She didn't look worried, didn't look afraid. She smiled, waved to some of the relatives who were backing her silently, and slipped into the police car as if she had just done nothing wrong. And in that moment, I understood. She had everyone wrapped around her finger. Everyone except me. The aftermath at the house was surreal. People whispered behind my back, asking why I had involved the police, why I couldn't have handled it like a family. Every glance I caught was sharp with judgment or pity, and it felt like I was suddenly on trial in my own living room. I could feel the eyes of the family I grew up with sizing me up, deciding that I was the one out of line. I tried to talk to Samuel privately later that evening. "Why aren't you supporting me?" I asked, my voice low but shaking. "Why aren't you angry at her for what she did?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Bethany, this isn't about right or wrong. It's about perception. You know how people are. She's going to spin this story and everyone will believe her. We have to be careful. You don't want to destroy family relationships over something like this." Destroy family relationships? I wanted to slap him. I wanted to shake him until he understood that the earrings weren't just earrings. They were history, legacy, a piece of our family soul. And more than that, it wasn't just about the jewelry. It was about Mariah crossing the line, assaulting me, and the family that should have protected me silently, letting it happen. I left the house that night feeling hollow. The sense of security I had always felt with my family, knowing they would back me up in a crisis, was gone. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. Even Sam's earlier calmness now felt sinister. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just naivete on his part. It was intentional. Over the next few days, I tried to keep a semblance of normalcy. I went to work, tried to distract myself with projects, but every notification, every ping, every family message felt like a reminder of my isolation. My phone buzzed constantly, but it wasn't with words of support. It was messages questioning me, subtly criticizing me, or worse, passing along Mariah's version of events. I started thinking about the concept of family, how it's supposed to be a haven, a network of people who have your back no matter what. And here I was, learning that family could be just as toxic, manipulative, and cruel as any stranger on the street. My sense of betrayal intensified each day as more relatives weighed in, mostly siding with Mariah, echoing her narrative of my supposed overreaction, my supposed instability. I remember sitting on my apartment couch late one night, staring at the wall, feeling tears burn at the corners of my eyes. I wanted to scream, to run back to my parents' house and demand they acknowledge the truth, but I knew it would do nothing. The room had tilted against me, and there was no turning it back. And that's when I started questioning everything. My place in my family, my relationship with Samuel, the person I thought I could trust. If the people who were supposed to have my back could turn so quickly, what did that say about me? Was I imagining things? Was I truly the villain in their eyes? It was a terrifying, sickening feeling. Being right, being truthful, and still being completely isolated. I knew that pressing charges was the right move, that Mariah deserved accountability, but even as justice began its slow, uncertain process, I felt smaller, weaker, and more alone than I ever had before. And through it all, Mariah had this smug, untouchable composure. It was like she was daring me to fight, daring me to try and prove her wrong, daring me to stand alone while she rallied everyone else. And for a brief, horrible moment, I wondered if I should give up, if I should let her win and reclaim my place in the family by swallowing my pride. But deep down, I knew I couldn't, because the earrings were more than metal and stones. They were history, they were memories, they were mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Mariah or the people who refuse to see the truth, take that from me. I just didn't yet realize how much I would have to fight, not just against her, but against the people I had always called my own. After the chaos of the arrest, I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. The fight hadn't just shifted, it had escalated in a way I didn't anticipate. Mariah wasn't just going to sit back and let the truth come out, and apparently neither was my brother. Samuel, the person I once trusted more than anyone, had begun orchestrating a subtle, insidious campaign to turn the family against me, and I only started noticing it in bits and pieces. It began with small things, offhand comments during family calls, little concerns that Samuel would mention in passing. Bethany, are you sure you're remembering everything correctly? Or, I just worry that maybe this is blown out of proportion. Innocuous sounding, almost reasonable, except that the timing was deliberate and the target was me. Every question, every comment was designed to plant doubt, to make me question my own memory, my own judgment, and worse, to make everyone else question it too. I noticed it first with my cousin Lara. She was always friendly toward me, someone I could talk to about anything, but one evening she pulled me aside, eyes wide with something between concern and doubt. Bethany, I don't know. Sam said some things about the day of the gathering, about how maybe Mariah didn't mean to. She hesitated. Maybe you misinterpreted things? My blood ran cold. Misinterpreted things? I clenched my fist, forcing myself to stay calm. Lara, I said, voice tight, do you remember Mariah shoving me? Do you remember the earrings? She looked down, shifting uncomfortably. Well, yeah, but Sam said, he said maybe you were too harsh with her, and that's when it hit me. My own brother was systematically undermining me, planting seeds of doubt so deeply that even the people who had witnessed what happened began to question their own perceptions. I felt a surge of betrayal so intense I couldn't even speak. I confronted Samuel that night. I went to his apartment, determined to get answers. Sam, what are you doing? I demanded as soon as he opened the door. He looked startled, then composed himself, his face that familiar mask of calm and reason. Bethany, it's not what you think. I'm just trying to protect everyone. Calm things down. You have to understand, Mariah's delicate, and people are worried about the family image. I laughed bitterly, incredulous. Protecting the family image? By lying? By manipulating everyone to think I'm crazy? By defending someone who assaulted me? He raised his hands, placating, as if my anger was a storm to weather rather than a legitimate response. Bethany, you're overreacting. I'm just making sure things don't spiral out of control. Everyone's under a lot of stress. Can't you see that? No, Sam, I said, voice shaking but loud, firm. I see exactly what you're doing. You're helping her. You're helping Mariah lie, cover her tracks, and make me the problem. And I won't stand for it. He didn't respond, didn't argue, just stared at me. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just fighting Mariah anymore. I was fighting my own brother, the person I thought would have my back no matter what. It didn't stop there. Mariah was in full swing, spinning stories, whispering to relatives, sending texts that painted me as the over-dramatic, unstable one. Even neutral family members began giving me cold, calculating looks as if I were the one in the wrong. Are you sure you're remembering everything correctly? Was asked so many times that I started to question my own recollection. I knew the truth. I remembered every shove, every word, every manipulative grin, but doubt was being seeded everywhere, and I could feel it creeping in like smoke. One particularly cruel moment came when my Aunt Nancy, usually a steadfast supporter, called me to her side at a small family brunch. Bethany, she said softly, almost pityingly, I don't know, maybe you should just let it go. Sam and Mariah are worried. You have to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture. According to them, the bigger picture was keeping Mariah's reputation clean while making me the unstable, unreasonable one. I wanted to scream, to throw the nearest plate across the room, but I didn't. Instead, I bit my tongue, feeling the burn of betrayal settle into my chest. I knew I had to act. If I let this manipulation go unchecked, I would lose more than just the earrings. I would lose credibility, my sanity, and the trust of anyone who might still believe me. So I started paying attention, documenting everything, notes in my phone, screenshots of messages, timelines of events, every whispered doubt, every suspicious glance, every suspiciously convenient reminder from Samuel or Mariah. It was painstaking, tedious work, and emotionally draining, but slowly patterns emerged. I noticed inconsistencies in Mariah's stories, the timing, the details of where she claimed to have been, who she claimed was with her. And then I started noticing the emails Sam had forwarded to relatives, seemingly innocent but carefully phrased to cast doubt on me. He had altered certain details subtly, making it look like my own recollection was flawed. The more I dug, the more furious I became. This wasn't just manipulation, this was active sabotage, and it was working. My family, who I had assumed would naturally support me, were starting to see me as unreliable. And then, as I went through security footage from my parents' home, the footage that should have been harmless family memories, I noticed something crucial. In the hall, where the display case was located, Mariah lingered longer than anyone realized. She glanced around, ensuring no one was watching, and then there it was. Her hand brushing the velvet box, tucking something under her sleeve ever so slightly. My stomach sank. The footage was grainy, but the motion was unmistakable. I stared at the screen, a mix of triumph and fear. I finally had proof. Finally, a piece of evidence that could not be disputed. Or at least it should not be. But even as I felt that surge of hope, I realized the danger. Confronting her now, even with evidence, could escalate everything. My brother might step in, Mariah could lash out, the family could fracture further. I was walking a tightrope, and any misstep could destroy what little leverage I had. But I couldn't back down. I couldn't let the lies continue, couldn't let Mariah's manipulations go unchecked. I had to act, and carefully. Every interaction would need to be precise, calculated. Every witness I approached would need to be solid. Every bit of proof had to be airtight. And so I began to plan, quietly, meticulously, knowing that the next steps I took could make or break me. I knew I was risking escalation, risking more betrayal, and risking a family that was already fraying at the edges. But I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. Because now I had the proof. And with proof comes power. If I could survive the storm long enough to use it. I never realized just how isolating it could feel to be surrounded by the people you thought you could trust. After the arrest, the whispers, the sideways glances, and the constant undercurrent of doubt from my family made me feel like I was living in some kind of invisible cage. Every interaction, every phone call, every concerned question from a relative felt like a tiny shove, pushing me toward the edge of frustration and despair. The hardest part wasn't even Mariah's manipulations, though they were excruciatingly calculated. It was the way Samuel and everyone else were complicit in letting her shape the narrative. You know that sickening feeling when the people who are supposed to protect you choose to believe the person who hurt you instead? That was my reality. I started questioning myself at times, wondering if maybe somehow I was exaggerating, if maybe my anger was clouding my judgment. But the memory of her shove, the cold glint in her eyes as she smirked while I stumbled, reminded me that no, I wasn't imagining it. And yet, I couldn't rely on my family to see that truth. Not fully, not without evidence. So I began documenting everything meticulously. Every call, every text, every casual comment, every suspicious behavior I noticed from Mariah or Samuel went into a digital log on my laptop. I created spreadsheets, notes, screenshots, even timelines. I needed something concrete, something unshakable, because feelings weren't enough in a battlefield like this, especially when your brother was orchestrating lies behind the scenes. I also began my own quiet investigation. I spent hours going through the security footage from my parents' home, the living room, the hallway, anywhere the display case could be seen. I meticulously noted times, positions, and body language. Mariah was careful, but not perfect. The footage, though grainy at some angles, showed subtle movements, the way she lingered near the display case longer than necessary, the way she adjusted her clothing as if hiding something. It was enough to make my pulse race every time I replayed it. Then came the witness statements. I reached out to cousins, aunts, uncles, anyone who had been present that day. Carefully, I phrased my questions in a way that was neutral, so as not to trigger defensiveness, but still precise enough to get the details I needed. Do you remember seeing where the earrings were last? Did you notice anyone acting suspiciously near the display case? Little by little, the pieces began to fall together, but it was exhausting. Every conversation felt like walking on a tightrope. One wrong word, one suggestion that Mariah might be lying, and the whole narrative could come crashing down, with me as the accused manipulator instead of the victim. And the gaslighting didn't stop. Mariah, with her polished smile and practiced calm, continued to weave her web, spreading subtle rumors that made even neutral relatives doubt me. Bethany has always been a little dramatic, she would say in a casual, almost affectionate tone. Or, I just worry that Bethany might be misremembering. You know how stressful that day was. Samuel, too, didn't miss a beat. He would interject in family discussions, adding his own layers of doubt. We all want to be fair, he'd say, but Bethany tends to be emotional. Let's not jump to conclusions. It was infuriating. Every word they spoke chipped away at my credibility. I was starting to feel like I was fighting a war in which everyone had been given better weapons than me. And then the legal reality hit me. I had called the police, I had filed a report, I had pressed charges, but as I started speaking with my attorney, I realized just how precarious my position was. Samuel's fabrications, Mariah's charm, even the whispers of doubt from relatives could be woven into a narrative strong enough to sway the legal system. If she presented a convincing story, if witnesses were influenced by subtle manipulations, if the evidence Samuel was fabricating was accepted, then all my meticulous documentation, all my careful planning could be dismissed as overreaction, paranoia, or embellishment. It was a harsh, bitter reality. The legal system wasn't infallible. It could be swayed by perception, by character assassination, by subtle lies dressed as concern. And suddenly, the stakes weren't just my family, my pride, or my heirlooms, they were my chance at justice. And justice, I realized, would require precision, patience, and courage. I started making lists not just of what had happened, but of what could go wrong. How Samuel could twist statements, how Mariah could charm the wrong person, how the court could be manipulated if I didn't move carefully. I began creating backup plans, redundant copies of everything, a network of evidence so thorough that even the most skilled liar would struggle to dismantle it. The isolation I felt became almost physical. I spent nights in my apartment, going over timelines, replaying footage, rereading messages, and marking inconsistencies. I spoke to my closest friends sparingly, careful not to risk gossip spreading to the wrong ears. Every interaction with family felt like navigating a minefield. One wrong glance, one misinterpreted tone, and I could be accused of exaggerating or lying. And yet, amidst all this, there was a strange clarity. I realized that my emotional isolation was also my advantage. I wasn't entangled in their web. I was watching, documenting, learning. I could observe their strategies from the outside, anticipate their moves, and counteract them. The loneliness, while painful, sharpened me. It wasn't easy. I felt the weight of betrayal pressing down every day. Every time I received a message from a relative questioning my motives, every time I saw Samuel casually reinforcing doubt, I felt my resolve waver. But I kept going, because giving up wasn't an option. Not if I wanted to reclaim what was stolen from me, not just the earrings, but my dignity, my credibility, and my right to be treated fairly. And then came a breakthrough. I noticed something in the footage I hadn't before. A subtle interaction between Mariah and one of my cousins. A slight hand gesture, a whisper that didn't register at first. It was faint, almost insignificant, but it suggested coordination, collusion, or at the very least, premeditation. My heart pounded as I watched it over and over. This was the kind of tangible proof I needed. But with it came the realization that confronting her, or even revealing this too soon, could escalate everything. Samuel could intercept, Mariah could retaliate, and the family could fracture even further. Every move had to be precise, deliberate. Every step forward was a risk, a potential trigger for an even more toxic response. I sat back in my chair, exhausted but focused, realizing something critical. This was no longer just about family, no longer just about stolen heirlooms or personal pride. This was a strategic battle. Every document, every statement, every captured moment on tape was a weapon. And if I was careful, meticulous, and patient, I could wield them to not only prove the truth, but to dismantle the lies systematically. I made a vow to myself that night, as the city lights glimmered outside my apartment window. I would not let Mariah's manipulation succeed. I would not let Samuel's duplicity undermine me. I would navigate the treacherous maze of family loyalty, lies, and legal peril, and I would emerge with my dignity, my truth, and my rightful legacy intact. Isolation had sharpened me. Betrayal had steeled me. And now, armed with meticulous documentation, careful observation, and the first threads of evidence, I was ready to start weaving a strategy that would expose the truth, one calculated step at a time. Because if I didn't, no one else would. I never thought I would feel this combination of fear and adrenaline, but as I approached Samuel's apartment that evening, my chest tightened and my hands refused to stop shaking. This wasn't just a casual discussion anymore. It was a confrontation, one that had the potential to either unravel everything or finally tip the scales in my favor. I had spent weeks meticulously documenting every lie, every fabricated email, every subtle manipulation Samuel had orchestrated. I had evidence now, solid, undeniable evidence, and I was going to use it. When I rang his doorbell, he opened the door with that same practiced neutrality, that expression that made him look calm and reasonable while secretly calculating his next move. "Bethany," he said, feigning surprise. "What brings you here?" I stepped inside without answering. My voice was steadier than I felt, clipped and purposeful. "Sam, we need to talk. Now." He raised an eyebrow. "Talk? About what?" I held up my laptop. "About everything. About how you've been lying to our family, manipulating their perceptions, and fabricating evidence to protect Mariah and discredit me." For a split second, I saw the flash, the recognition, the panic, but it was masked instantly by his neutral expression. "Bethany, that's a serious accusation. Are you sure about this?" I opened the laptop and pulled up the spreadsheets, screenshots, and timelines I had compiled over the past few weeks. I walked him through every single entry, showing emails he had altered, messages he had forwarded with subtle misrepresentations, and discrepancies he had tried to hide. Each piece was methodically organized, time-stamped, and clearly documented. "Do you see this, Sam?" I said, my voice trembling slightly from the adrenaline but growing firmer with each word. "You have been deliberately manipulating everyone. My family, my relatives, spreading lies to make me look unstable. And I have proof. Every single thing you've done is here." He froze, just for a fraction of a second, long enough to confirm my observation. Then he leaned back, crossed his arms, and let out a slow, measured sigh. "Bethany, you're overreacting again. I'm just trying to keep the peace." "No, Sam," I said, my tone sharper now. "This isn't peace. This is sabotage. This is collusion to protect a thief and assault victimizer. Do you have any idea what you're doing? How far this could go?" He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "I'm done letting you manipulate this family and me. I'm done being silent. And if you don't come clean, if you continue trying to cover her tracks, I will make sure every piece of evidence is in the hands of the authorities and lawyers." For a long moment, Samuel didn't speak. And then he tried to charm. tried to placate, tried to make it sound like I was imagining things. But it was too late. I had the upper hand, and I could see the tension behind his composed mask. That night, I left his apartment with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the confrontation had rattled him. The real battle, however, was about to happen at the family level. Once my relatives saw the proof, once they realized how deep the manipulation ran, the narrative that had been carefully built by Mariah and Samuel would start to crumble. I didn't have to wait long. I began sharing my documentation with family members one by one, carefully choosing those who had been neutral or silently supportive of Mariah. Some were skeptical at first, hesitant to believe that their trusted son and daughter-in-law could be manipulating the situation so thoroughly, but the evidence was clear, undeniable, and methodical. Cousins who had whispered doubts about me started to question Mariah's innocence. Aunts who had been placating Sam and Mariah began asking pointed questions about the inconsistencies. Slowly, the tides began to shift. Whispers that had been critical of me were now turning against Mariah. Bethany might have been right, one relative muttered. Maybe we should have looked closer before siding with her. The legal showdown, which had been simmering in the background, intensified. My attorney, armed with the documentation and witness statements I had painstakingly gathered, began incorporating it into our case. Suddenly, what had seemed like an uphill battle, where Mariah's charm and Sam's fabrications might sway judges and juries, became a fight where I had real leverage. Mariah, of course, didn't take the shift lying down. Once she realized that I was gaining traction, that my evidence was being circulated, she became more desperate and aggressive. Her texts were sharper, her voice colder during conversations, and she started showing up unannounced, trying to intimidate me into backing down. "You're making a huge mistake, Bethany," she hissed, one evening outside my apartment, leaning against the wall with that dangerous smirk. "You think your little collection of screenshots can hurt me? Think again. You don't want to go down this road." I didn't flinch. I stared back, my chest tight with adrenaline, my heart pounding, but my resolve solid. "I'm not going to let you get away with what you did. Not to me, not to this family, and not to anyone else who could be next." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, just enough to see her startle. "You don't know what you're doing," she said, voice sharp, but I could see the desperation behind it. That moment was a turning point. I realized then that my bravery, my determination to confront the lies head on, was starting to work. Mariah's carefully constructed world was showing cracks. Samuel's manipulations were losing their effectiveness as the family began seeing patterns, discrepancies, and inconsistencies they could no longer ignore. But the fight was far from over. The family drama exploded as more members started questioning Mariah's innocence. Arguments flared, loyalties shifted, and the dining rooms, living rooms, and group chats I had previously avoided became battlegrounds for the truth. My family, once so quick to dismiss me, now had to grapple with the reality that I hadn't been lying, exaggerating, or imagining things. And yet, through all this chaos, Mariah's aggression escalated. Her intimidation tactics grew bolder, her words sharper, her presence more suffocating. She tried everything, from subtle threats disguised as concern to overt displays meant to frighten me. But I refused to back down. Every day, I reminded myself why I had started this fight. The stolen earrings, the assault, the betrayal, and the lies. But more than that, I reminded myself that this wasn't just about justice. It was about taking my power back, reclaiming my credibility, and showing my family that manipulation and intimidation wouldn't go unchallenged. By the end of this week, the landscape had begun to shift. I could see it in the hesitant glances, the whispered conversations, and the subtle questioning of Mariah's story. Samuel, who had seemed untouchable, was visibly unsettled. And Mariah, who had smiled so confidently at my initial isolation, was starting to realize that her control over the narrative was slipping. I knew this was just the beginning of the final showdown. Legal battles would rage, family tensions would erupt further, and Mariah's desperation would escalate. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the tide turning. For the first time, I could see a path where the truth, not lies, manipulation, or intimidation, would prevail. And I wasn't going to stop until it did. The courtroom smelled of polished wood, legal paper, and tension so thick I felt like I could cut it with a knife. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded over the laptop that contained every scrap of evidence I had spent weeks collecting. Emails, texts, surveillance footage, witness statements. My attorney had walked me through the final presentation a dozen times, and yet the knots in my stomach refused to loosen. This was it. Everything I had been fighting for, every sleepless night, every moment of isolation, every pang of betrayal, had led to this courtroom. Mariah sat across the room, her expression carefully controlled but brittle, the edges of it already starting to crack. Samuel, seated next to her, tried to maintain his composed mask, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the sub twitch in his jaw. For weeks, they had spun lies, manipulated my family, and tried to intimidate me. And now, for the first time, the full weight of my preparation was about to hit them. The judge called the session to order. I swallowed hard, reminding myself to breathe. I had rehearsed my words, my timeline, and my evidence, but nothing could quite prepare me for the intensity of seeing the people who had betrayed me sitting there, watching me, waiting for me to stumble. My attorney began presenting the evidence methodically. The emails Samuel had altered, carefully highlighted to show his modifications. The surveillance footage of Mariah lingering near the heirloom display. The subtle hand movements that no one could misinterpret once slowed down and annotated. Witness statements cross-referenced with timestamps. Every detail meticulously documented. Every inconsistency in Mariah's previous statements exposed. I watched Mariah's face as the evidence was revealed. The polished confidence faltered first in her eyes, a micro-expression of panic that she couldn't hide. Then, as more footage played, more inconsistencies appeared, more contradictions were highlighted. Her smile disappeared entirely. Samuel shifted in his seat, his attempts at calm failing as the fabrications he had orchestrated were laid bare. I remember the moment a hush fell over the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, scrutinizing the evidence, occasionally jotting notes. The credibility of both Mariah and Samuel was crumbling in real time. My heart pounded, not just from the adrenaline, but from the vindication. Every fear, every moment of isolation, every doubt I had endured was crystallizing into undeniable truth. Then came the pivotal moment. My attorney called me forward, asking me to testify. My voice shook initially, but as I spoke, recounting the events, the assault, the theft, the manipulation, and the weeks of emotional turmoil, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just testimony. This was reclamation. I was reclaiming my narrative, my dignity, and my place as the person telling the truth. Every word rang with clarity and resolve. Mariah tried to interrupt, tried to inject doubt with carefully chosen words, but the courtroom no longer afforded her the subtlety she relied on. Each interruption was countered by the irrefutable evidence I'd gathered. Her lies, once persuasive in whispered family conversations, now appeared transparent and hollow under the weight of documentation and witnesses. Samuel's attempts at justification sounded absurd, even comical, compared to the methodical precision of my case. By the time closing arguments came, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had done everything I could. The rest was out of my hands, but I knew that the scales were finally tipping in my favor. When the judge began delivering the verdict, I held my breath. After reviewing the evidence, testimonies, and documentation presented, it is the court's decision that the plaintiff, Bethany, has provided sufficient and compelling evidence to substantiate her claims. The defendant, Mariah, is found guilty of theft and assault. Additionally, Samuel is found to have knowingly fabricated evidence and is held accountable for obstruction and manipulation of witness testimony. I felt the world shift beneath me. Relief, triumph, and validation flooded me in waves. I had done it. Against manipulation, against family betrayal, against intimidation, I had stood my ground and emerged victorious. Mariah's face went pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. Samuel lowered his head, unable to meet my gaze. The courtroom was quiet, the weight of the truth settling heavily over everyone present. I looked around, and while some family members were silent with shock, others avoided eye contact entirely. The fractures in my family were visible, undeniable, but I didn't care. My truth had been recognized, my justice served. The heirloom earrings were returned to me that afternoon. Holding them in my hands, feeling their weight, their history, and the memory of my grandmother's stories, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. These earrings weren't just jewelry. They were symbols of legacy, love, and resilience. And now, they were back where they belonged. In the days that followed, I began the painstaking process of rebuilding my life independently. Some family members withdrew entirely. Others tried to reconcile, but I had learned a painful truth. Loyalty, once broken, couldn't always be restored. I focused on myself, my career, and the life I wanted to create outside the shadow of betrayal. The isolation that had once felt suffocating became a source of strength, a reminder that I could survive, thrive, and assert my worth on my own terms. I reflected on everything I had endured, the assault, the theft, the manipulation, and the betrayal, and through it all, I realized something profound. Betrayal is devastating, but resilience is transformative. Standing up for yourself, even when the world seems aligned against you, is the ultimate reclamation of power. My self-worth was not determined by Mariah's lies, Samuel's schemes, or even my family's initial disbelief. It was defined by my courage, my persistence, and my refusal to be silenced. As I sat in my apartment that evening, the earrings resting safely in a velvet box on my dresser, I felt a quiet sense of pride. I had been tested in ways I hadn't imagined, but I had emerged not just intact, but stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever. I had faced betrayal and manipulation, and I had reclaimed what was mine, not just the earrings, but my dignity, my voice, and my sense of self. I didn't know what the future held. Some relationships might never be repaired. Some wounds would take time to heal. But I knew one thing. I was no longer a passive participant in my own story. I was the author, the protagonist, and the one who would decide how my life moved forward. And for the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt truly free.